Hey friends, hope you're all doing well. We're doing okay too, just really tired since we've been working non-stop. We wanted to answer a question many of you ask: how does our publishing process work? Most of our audiobooks are first posted on Patreon as paid content. They stay behind a paywall for a few months. After that, they become free to access on Patreon forever. Then, a few weeks later, we upload them to other platforms like YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, X. Lately, our community hasn't been growing much, and we could really use your help. Please share our site in your Facebook groups, Discord servers, Reddit threads, Twitter, X, or with any friends who might be interested. Every little bit helps and we really appreciate it. Thanks a lot for being with us and supporting what we do. Turning on his heel, Yamato sprinted forward, his mind filled with a sense of urgency. I must return to Hidden Leaf Village and report without delay. I hope Hinata-chan and Kiba-kun survive the way back. As for the Aburame boy, it is not my place to decide. However, the information he divulged regarding Denzo must be promptly reported to the Go Dame. In the bustling corridors of the Hidden Leaf Village Hospital, just outside the surgical room, a matured female ninja stood with an air of concern. Her long brown hair was tied in a ponytail, with two locks framing her face, each adorned with a red fang-like tattoo. Leaning against a wall, she anxiously awaited the opening of the surgical room's door. As it finally swung open, her body straightened, and she offered a slight bow. "Tsunade-sama, how is Kiba?" Tsunade paused for a moment, her expression grave as she carefully chose her words. His life, much like that of the Hyuga princess, is no longer in immediate danger, but you should prepare yourself, Hana. Hana in Yuzuka's face grew solemn as she inquired, her voice filled with anticipation. "Is there no chance for a full recovery?" Shaking her head, Tsunade replied with a heavy sigh, "I did everything in my power, but I underestimated the skill of that Aburame brat in medical ninjutsu. He severed your brother's tendons with precision, shattering vital bones necessary for strength, and even caused extensive damage to his chakra pathways. Not only that, he also implanted a strange bug into your brother's brain, causing some neural damage which may affect his neural reflexes. I naturally resolved these issues, but although your brother may recover and have no trouble in a normal daily life, I don't want to say this, however, it would be best for you to persuade him to abandon the life of a ninja." Hana bowed her head, her fists clenched tightly as she responded resolutely, "Thank you, Tsunade-sama. I will heed your words. Indeed, that is for the best. I entrust him to you." Tsunade nodded before striding forward, where Shizune and Tantan awaited her, leaving Hana alone in the hallway, her gaze fixed upon the unconscious form of Kiba being transported by other medical ninjas. As Tsunade made her way through the corridors, swiftly changing her attire with Shizune's assistance, she inquired about recent events. "Did anything occur while I was in the surgical room?" Shizune nodded, her tone filled with concern. "I closely monitored Hinata Hyuga, and there were no complications after Tsunade-sama stabilized her condition. However, not long ago, an Anbu operative reported that both the Anbu headquarters and the Hokage residence were attacked." Furrowing her brow, Tsunade inquired with a troubled face, "How are the casualties?" Shizune shook her head, providing a small measure of relief. There weren't many Anbu present at the time due to being deployed to track Shino Aburame, and most of those who remained sustained minor injuries before being incapacitated. Personnel-wise, there were no significant losses. However, a number of technique scrolls, intelligence scrolls, and archived corpses were stolen from the Anbu quarters, while the scroll of seals was taken from the Hokage residence. "Well, that's a relief," Tsunade sighed, though her expression remained guarded. Waving her hand dismissively, she continued, "Lost techniques can be replaced, and the tracking methods hidden on Scroll of Seals will allow us to track it, regardless of where they may hide. We are already stretched thin, so as long as we don't lose too many of our ninjas, it can be considered a small victory." Tsunade's words trailed off as her gaze shifted back down the corridor. She shook her head slightly, a hint of concern crossing her features. Although the Hyuga girl's injuries seemed severe, the Aburame boy deliberately avoided her vital points, so the strike wasn't fatal. On the other hand, I can't comprehend what grudge the Aburame boy holds against the Yuzuka brat, but it appears he was the only one that truly suffered this time. Shizune glanced back as well, her confusion evident in her voice. "They're on the same team, and there haven't been any reports of any conflicts." Tsunade turned around, her hand waving dismissively. "The younger generation. Who knows what goes on in their heads? Let it be, but this Aburame brat has truly outdone himself this time. We cannot let him off so easily." Tsunade's words trailed off as she noticed a transparent bug perched on the wall nearby. "TSK." With a disapproving click of her tongue, she continued forward, her voice firm with command. "Shizune, issue a long-term mission to exterminate bugs within Hidden Leaf Village." Through the lens of his bugs, Shino watched Tsunoda and Shizune leave the hospital, making their way toward the Hokage building, ready to confront the storm that lay ahead. It seems our intelligence network in Hidden Leaf Village will take a significant blow in the coming days. But with the rapid breeding rate of our bugs, it matters not. At most, we'll need to waste some time in redeploying them. Shifting his attention away from the holographic screens, Shino's gaze settled on Karina, her face flushed after a deep inspection. She raised her head, her mouth opening to display the results of the inspection before swallowing, her unwavering gaze fixed on her still excited subject. The inspection is complete, and there are no issues. However, it would be wise to double-check every detail to ensure there are no problems in other aspects. Nodding in agreement, Shino's eyes turned to another screen displaying his clone returning to Hidden Leaf Village with his unsuspecting team, still oblivious to his betrayal. Indeed, we must continue the play on that side as well. After all, we cannot openly stand against the protagonist just yet. Karina nodded, her fingers fidgeting and rubbing against the subject of interest before bringing them up to her lips, where she sucked on them thoughtfully. And while my dear tends to that, as punishment for her dereliction of duty, failing to fulfill the criteria of detaching her previous patient's obsession, my assistant nurse will lead you to the bathroom before our long journey to our new home. Shino arched an eyebrow, surveying the cramped and fleshy interior of the Overlord. But there is no bathroom in here. Releasing her grasp over her toy, Karina's hand gently cupped Shino's face, guiding his gaze toward Kurenai, whose red eyes bore a hint of shame. Her body trembled slightly, as if battling against an unseen force. Yet, her struggles were futile as she slowly straddled Shino's lap, creating space within the crowded interior. As the black locks of Kurina's hair tickled his skin, her arms wrapped around his neck, and a warm sensation brushed against his sensitive spot as Karina's seductive whisper caressed his ears. Kurenai Yui is in charge of toilet duty. My dear can ask for her any time during our journey. And with this unexpected twist, Shino was fully prepared to carry out the remainder of his elaborate act. Chapter 130, Finishing touch. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting an orange glow upon the dense forest surrounding Naruto, Ino, Shino, and Anko as they made their way back to Hidden Leaf Village. His hand casually crossed behind his head, Naruto exuded a carefree aura that seemed to defy any imminent danger as his boisterous voice reverberated through the trees, his steps filled with energy and excitement. Yasha. We're going to be back to Hidden Leaf Village soon. With a mission reward, I will definitely go to Asun's place for some ramen, Dappeo. Ino, walking beside Shino, rolled her eyes at Naruto's cheerfulness. Her blonde bangs swished with emotion as she shot him a glare. Ramen, is that all that goes through your head? Seriously, and I thought Sakura was exaggerating it when she told me. Anko, trailing behind them, let out a hearty laugh, her eyes twinkling with mischief. Ha ha ha. Eating more is a good thing, Ino. It'll help you grow, in many ways. It's always good to eat more, and it doesn't matter what you eat. Then, her voice took on a dangerous edge as a devious smile curved her lips, as long it's not my dango. A drop of sweat rolled down Naruto's face, a fleeting memory flashing before his eyes. He mumbled, it was just one time. Didn't have to be so stingy. Suddenly, Naruto froze in his tracks. Anko had appeared behind him, a gleaming kunai held close to his face. She licked her lips playfully, her gaze filled with threat. Ah. Are you talking back now? Sorry. Forgive me, Naruto muttered softly, his body tensing under the threat of Anko's blade. Ino, standing next to Shino, observed the scene with a mix of fright and concern. She leaned closer to Shino, her voice a hushed whisper. Seriously, Sensei is dangerous. You think so too, Shino? Shino adjusted his glasses, his eyes glinting with hidden amusement, but just as Shino was about to elaborate, Anko's urgent shout tore through the forest. Shino, watch out! Shino's eyes sharpened, a sly smile curling beneath his collar. In one swift motion, he moved towards Ino, encircling her in his protective embrace. With a graceful leap, he evaded a barrage of shuriken and a kunai with an explosive tag that had been aimed at their previous location. Boom. 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 The deafening sound of the explosion shattered the peaceful atmosphere, sending a shockwave through the forest. After stabilizing herself, Anko instinctively assumed a combat stance, her senses heightened as she vigilantly scanned their surroundings. Her gaze locked onto the enemies who had appeared, their black attire unmistakably familiar. Anbu? Anko muttered, a frown etching across her face. The appearance of Hidden Leaf Village's elite Covertops unit could only mean trouble. Naruto snapped out of his momentary daze, his features hardening with determination. He pointed at the assailants, his voice dripping with anger. Who are you guys? Why are you attacking us? The enemy ninjas remained silent, their movements coordinated and precise. They divided into two groups, one engaging Anko and Naruto, while the other set their sights on Shino and Ino. Anko's brow furrowed in concentration as she skillfully blocked the onslaught of attacks coming from multiple enemies, kunai clutched tightly in each hand. Her piercing gaze flickered towards Shino, a hint of concern clouding her features. TCH. Did they come for him? Or? Her eyes shifted, scanning the chaotic battlefield, where Naruto's clones fought fiercely. A moment of hesitation gripped her heart. Should she abandon her position to support Shino? But if this was merely a diversion and her true aim was the powerful Night Tails within Naruto, the consequences for Hidden Leaf Village would be dire. Anko couldn't afford to let such a valuable asset fall into the wrong hands, at least. Not when she had to take the blame. Unsure of the enemy's true intentions, a whirlwind of thoughts swirled through Anko's mind. Could these assailants really be from within Hidden Leaf Village? And if so, what possible reason could there be to brazenly attack their own comrades? Or could they be imposters? Either way, since they are now enemy, she didn't have to hold back. This time, she wouldn't allow herself to conveniently lose consciousness, as she had during the mission. On the other side of the battlefield, Ino's heart raced as she clung tightly to Shino, her mind racing to make sense of the sudden attack. Shino, what's happening? Who are these people? Are they really from Hidden Leaf Village? Shino's gaze turned fierce, his eyes gleaming with resolve. I don't know, Ino, but we can't let our guard down. Stay close to me. Despite being outnumbered, Shino's calm demeanor belied the intensity of the situation. He deftly blocked another enemy's attack, his leg sweeping out to send him hurtling backward. Then, with a blur of motion, he shifted behind Ino, using his kunai to shield her from a subsequent strike. Clang! Ino let out a relieved sigh, her hand still cupped as she aimed at an enemy. Mind destruction jutsu. A brief moment of silence hung in the air before panic flashed across Ino's face. Her voice trembled with shock as she made a startling realization. They don't have consciousness? No. There's someone else controlling them, and I can't take over. Another member of the Yamanaka clan? But that's impossible. Anko's eyes darted around, searching for any signs of a controller amidst the chaos, but her efforts proved futile. Frustration crept into her voice as she fought off her opponents. DCK. Where are they hiding? Suddenly, Naruto's voice rang out from behind Anko, his words filled with determination. Ha! Rasengan. Naruto's spinning ball of chakra collided with the enemy. And it was unknown if it was simply a stroke of luck or if it was Naruto's combat instincts, but the attack struck perfectly against the abdomen of the enemy, destroying a critical point, and undoing a transformation. However, the enemy seemed prepared. As its transformation dispelled, before the smoke cleared, a smoke bomb was thrown out, momentarily obscuring Naruto's vision. Through the smoke, Naruto looked up, a mixture of anticipation and concern etched across his face. However, before he could make out the appearance of the enemy before him fully, Anko's keen senses detected imminent danger. Instinctively, she lunged forward, dragging Naruto away as she shielded Naruto from an impending threat. Danger! An ear-splitting explosion erupted, shaking the nearby trees. Debris filled the air, momentarily obscuring their vision. When the dust settled, the enemy had vanished, leaving behind only remnants of destruction. Anko lay unconscious atop Naruto, whose features contorted with frustration. Damn it! So close! Sensei! Naruto! Ino exclaimed, her voice filled with alarm as she saw the fumes of the explosion obscuring Naruto and Anko. Her momentary distraction proved costly, as an enemy blade almost found its mark, but Shino's quick reflexes saved her. He pulled her into his protective embrace, intercepting the blow meant for her. A spray of blood painted the air as Shino retaliated, forcing the enemy back. Shino! Ino's voice trembled with worry, her eyes welling up with tears as she witnessed the gash on Shino's back. A sense of helplessness washed over her, threatening to engulf her spirit. But Shino's voice rang out, resolute and unwavering. Don't worry, Ino. I'll do my best to protect you. Standing in front of Ino, Shino prepared to face off against the encroaching enemies. They encircled the pair, a momentary pause in their assault as reinforcements from Anko's side joined their ranks. Ino couldn't comprehend the reason for their sudden focused assault on them, her mind spinning with questions. But before she could delve deeper into her thoughts, Anko's urgent scream pierced through the chaos. Danger! Shino! Ino! Run! Ino's eyes widened as realization struck like a bolt of lightning. Time seemed to stretch into eternity as her gaze locked onto the enemies surrounding them. The adversaries' bodies swelled with an ominous glow, fiery streaks of flames bursting forth from within. The explosive power within them threatened to consume everything in a cataclysmic inferno. Despair gripped Ino's heart, the crushing weight of impending doom pressing down upon her. Is this truly the end? Is she fated to be swallowed by the flames along with her enemies? Yet, in that moment of despair, Ino felt a strong arm encircle her body, a sensation all too familiar but fleeting. Before she could fully register what was happening, she was propelled into the air, ripped from the encirclement by an unknown force. Time snapped back into motion as Ino soared through the air, her body propelled away from the impending destruction. But her wide eyes remained fixed on the scene unfolding below, forever etching it into her memory. Shino, her steadfast protector, still stood in the midst of the encirclement. And in the next moment, he was engulfed by a raging sea of flames. Shino oh! Ino's anguished cry tore through the air, carrying her heart-wrenching sorrow. As her head knocked against a tree, the world seemed to fade away, replaced only by the searing pain in her chest and the overwhelming grief that consumed her. Boom! 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 Explosions reverberated through the forest, shattering the tranquility and engulfing the area in flames. Naruto was thrown across the ground, tumbling uncontrollably. The scorching heat and billowing smoke enveloped the scene, distorting reality itself. Anko, her determination unwavering, gritted her teeth as she defied the force of the blast. With lightning reflexes, she leaped into the air, intercepting the unconscious Ino, and cradling her unconscious form protectively in her arms to prevent her from falling into the flaming inferno below. Riding the currents of the explosion, she soared outward, crashing into the safety of the forest. A grimace etched across her face as she expelled a mouthful of blood. As the echoes of the explosion faded, the aftermath revealed a charred landscape. Lingering embers danced among the ruins, casting an eerie glow on the scene. Naruto, struggling to his feet, stared blankly at the devastation before him. Disbelief etched deeply onto his face. He muttered in disbelief, "No. It's impossible. Shino is strong, Dappeo. There's no way." Fiery red-orange chakra began to leak from Naruto's trembling body, an ominous aura seeping outwards. However, before his rage could consume him entirely, a hand settled upon his shoulder. Anko appeared in front of him, shielding his vision with Ino held in her arms. Her voice cut through the chaos, commanding him with a solemn face, "Naruto, calm down." Naruto's fierce gaze bore into Anko's, his whiskers elongating as he clenched his teeth. "Sensei. How can you tell me to calm down? Shino just right in front of me. I will kill them all. I will." Slap. Naruto's head snapped to the side, his face fixed in shock. Slowly, his gaze returned to Anko, his confusion apparent. Why had she struck him? "Get yourself together, brat." Anko's voice dripped with intensity, her expression dark and dangerous. A palpable atmosphere emanated from her. "Look around. They're already gone. And don't worry, Shino should have been a clone." "A clone?" Naruto's voice wavered, his daze gradually dissipating. The torrent of Nine-Tails chakra ceased its leak. Anko breathed a sigh of relief, a sliver of hope piercing through her own doubts. She circled around Naruto, her tone growing more confident. "There's a high chance that it was. You know Shino, he's strong and wouldn't die so easily." However, doubt gnawed at Anko's core. She couldn't entirely convince herself of her own conjecture. Yet, as their Jonin leader, she had to stabilize Naruto's emotions and ensure his safe return to Hidden Leaf Village, even if it meant telling a lie. "The enemy is already gone, but we can't rule out the possibility of others lurking in the shadows," Anko declared, her voice laced with urgency. "We don't have time to linger here. Our priority is to return to Hidden Leaf Village, report what happened, and get prompt medical treatment for Ino. Everything else can wait until you've calmed down. Maybe Shino will be waiting for us at Hidden Leaf Village." Naruto bowed his head, his clenched fists trembling with a mixture of anger and sorrow. He struggled to fully accept Anko's reassurances. Nevertheless, with one final glance at the destruction surrounding them, he turned resolutely, determined to chase after Anko. The journey back to Hidden Leaf Village was cloaked in an eerie silence, each step carrying the weight of their unspoken fears. Their pace, however, remained resolute, driven by a sense of urgency. But just as they approached the forest of their beloved village, a squad of ninja clad in Anbu attire materialized before them, halting their progress. Swish. Swish. The sight of the Anbu triggered a primal ferocity within Naruto. His body surged forward, instinctively ready to confront the perceived threat. "Damn you!" A firm hand latched onto Naruto's collar, yanking him back forcefully. Naruto's furious gaze locked onto Anko, demanding an explanation. "Why stop me, sensei?" "There," he growled, accusatory finger pointing towards the Anbu. "Calm down, Naruto. They are from Hidden Leaf Village. You can't attack them," Anko replied in a soft yet commanding tone. "Let me handle this." She positioned herself protectively in front of Naruto, her eyes locked onto the Anbu with vigilance. Her voice carried a solemn weight as she questioned the Anbu. "What is the Anbu doing here?" Behind Anko, Naruto's fierce glare caused the Anbu to exchange uneasy glances, their cold demeanor failing to mask a flicker of discomfort. With a voice devoid of warmth, one of them responded, "We are here for Shino Ibrahim." Anko furrowed her brow, a mix of confusion and concern etched across her face. You's looking for Shino. But why? There was a brief pause, tension hanging heavily in the air, before the Anbu revealed their startling proclamation. Just a couple of hours ago, the Hokage declared that Shino Aburame has betrayed Hidden Leaf Village. Impossible. Naruto recoiled in shock, disbelief painting his features. His voice trembled with a mixture of denial and desperation. No. I have to go see Tsunoda-Oba-chan. There must be a mistake. Wait. Naruto-sk. As Naruto darted away, driven by a determination to seek the truth, Anko's gaze followed him, a chill creeping down her spine. Her mind spun with confusion and doubt, unable to fully grasp the implications of the news, as even she couldn't believe the news after all she had witnessed during the mission. Just what in the hell is going on? Chapter 131, S-Class. Straighter inside the Hokage office, Tsunoda sat at her desk, a serene expression on her face as she gently stroked the slumbering Tonton in her lap. Entering the office, Shizune placed a cup of tea on the desk, her gaze falling upon the tranquil Tsunoda. She spoke in a soft voice, tinged with uncertainty. Tsunoda-sama? Tsunoda looked up, curiosity gleaming in her eyes. What's the matter? Shizune hesitated for a moment before continuing. It's just that Tsunoda-sama seems unusually calm. Considering the danger posed by Shino Aburame, I thought you would be more concerned. Tsunoda lifted the cup of tea, taking a sip in a composed manner before responding. You know me well, Shizune. Yes, I am worried, but it is during times like these that I must maintain my composure. Allowing emotions to cloud my judgment at these moments could be the straw on the camel's back. The office lapsed into silence as Shizune retreated to the side, creating space for Tsunoda to contemplate in solitude. They had recently received Tenzo's report, confirming Shino Aburame's betrayal and his subsequent escape, along with undisclosed secrets involving Denzo. Although Tenzo's report contained valuable information, it failed to provide conclusive evidence of the extent of Shino Aburame's danger. In fact, the report hinted at Shino secretly alerting them to the perils posed by Denzo. It could even be seen as a retaliatory strike against Denzo, but for them, it was potentially beneficial in some sense. However, Tenzo couldn't confirm the precise threat of Shino's Ganjutsu ability. After all, he wasn't a specialist in that field. Their most skilled Ganjutsu master in the village was gone, leaving them dependent on the return of the special Jonin with resistance against some Ganjutsu. The anticipation weighed heavily in the air as they awaited his arrival. Not long later, a knock echoed through the room. It's Kakashi Hatake, came the voice from outside. Enter, commanded Tsunoda, her posture straightening as she set down her tea and clasped her fists, prepared to receive the report. Tell me your assessment of his abilities. Kakashi stepped into the room, his gaze focused yet troubled. He began his report, providing detailed accounts of their encounters and summarizing his thoughts without divulging too many personal details. Despite the careful delivery, his analysis shed light on the situation for Tsunoda. After a moment of silence, Tsunoda summarized, So, you're saying that the Aburame boy possesses a Ganjutsu ability capable of unknowingly ensnaring numerous ninjas within a designated area. Its limits remain undetermined due to the brief contact, but this Ganjutsu is so convincing that even your Sharingan can't discern it. However, it doesn't inflict any harm on the victims? Yes, nodded Kakashi, emphasizing, but I must correct you, go dame. It's not that the Ganjutsu is devoid of harm, it simply doesn't cause physical injuries. Instead, it inflicts a more insidious type of danger, mental trauma. Tsunoda studied Kakashi silently, her eyebrows arching in curiosity. Mental trauma? You mean? Kakashi let out a sigh, pausing momentarily before responding. It delves into the depths of the victim's darkest memories, manipulating and confusing them. This Ganjutsu targets the very essence of one's being, the human heart. The heart, huh? Tsunoda mused, her thoughts drifting to unpleasant memories. She pressed on, seeking further elucidation. Can you provide more details? I'd rather not, Kakashi bowed his head, his refusal evident. Those words conveyed the gravity of the situation to Tsunoda. Her frown deepened, and she clenched her fists tightly, her narrowed eyes displaying determination. It appears that the danger posed by Shino Aburame far surpasses our initial expectations. Initially, due to his retained bonds despite his betrayal, I had only planned to designate him as a knee-rank traitor for his theft of confidential Anbu secrets. But with his ability alone. Tsunoda's gaze turned fierce as she swept her gaze towards Shizune, issuing a commanding order. Shizune, issue a notice. Raise his bounty and declare Shino Aburame as an S-rank rogue ninja. Hi, Tsunoda-sama. Shizune replied firmly, nodding to Kakashi before hastening out to carry out Tsunoda's directive. Kakashi scratched his mask thoughtfully, his gaze drifting to the window. Then, I'll take my leave, go dame. Tsunoda nodded, offering a final reminder as she watched Kakashi depart. If you encounter any problems related to this matter, do not hesitate to come to me. You know my area of expertise. Kakashi paused briefly, then waved his hand as he continued walking. I will. Suddenly, panicked cries from Shizune resounded from outside. Bam! The door swung open forcefully as an orange blur rushed into the room, colliding with Kakashi and tumbling onto the floor. Kakashi looked down blankly at his fallen student. Naruto, what are you doing here? Kakashi-sensei? No, wait, I don't have time to talk to you, Tsunade Oba-chan. You've made a mistake. Shino can't be MMFPHH. Naruto's angry protest was abruptly silenced as Kakashi covered his mouth, his arm wrapping around Naruto's neck. Raising his hand, Kakashi used his eye to display a smiling face to Tsunade as he spoke. Go dame, I'll handle Naruto. Please attend to your duties, we won't disturb you further. With that, Kakashi dragged the struggling Naruto out of the Hokage's office, leaving Tsunade to helplessly rub her forehead and shake her head. First, with the Uchiha kid, and now. TCH, had I known, I wouldn't have made a bet on that bug brat. Now, Naruto will be difficult to handle. Only Jiraiya knows how to handle this noisy brat, but he's currently smack. With a resounding smack, Tsunade's voice was abruptly silenced. In the cramped darkness of the Overlord, Shino observed the holographic display before him, now void of sound. His gaze shifted to a nearby monitor, where Karina had just pulled up footage of an Anbu removing the sound bug from the outer walls of the Hokage building. Soon, even the video feed of the Hokage building vanished. Its last footage was the sight of a young, audacious ninja brat crushing the bug with his bare hands. Shino shook his head in mild disappointment. It seems Hidden Leaf Village can be quite efficient when they put their minds to it. We may need to devise new methods for gathering intelligence from Hidden Leaf Village, especially since my foreknowledge of the plot may no longer be reliable. Seated beside Shino, clinging to his arm, Karina surveyed the scene before her, exhaling softly before speaking. My dear, it's uncommon for you to go to such extremes. Are you certain your actions aren't a bit drastic this time? As Shino cast his eyes upon his meticulously crafted masterpiece, held captive in the air by his adamantine chains, he sneered. Not even close. This can only be considered a mere appetizer. The way I intend to play in the future will become even more drastic. If there truly is a world consciousness set on targeting me, then I want to ensure that it becomes so busy with repairing the world line due to my disruptive actions that it has no time to deal with me directly. In that case, Shino, wouldn't it be more effective to eliminate someone significant, like Hinata? Karina teased, a mischievous smile playing on her lips as she observed the disoriented Kurenai, hanging upside down, her movements momentarily halted by the weight of their conversation. Kurenai, awakened from her daze by the mention of Hinata's name and troubled by their discussion, paused her rhythmic motions, trembling slightly as she sought to interject. As his anger had reached its crescendo, Shino forcefully gripped Kurenai's head, guiding her towards him as he sought to comfort her through his actions and words. Yes, I originally intended to do so, but at that last moment, my instincts warned me of a lethal danger, as if the gaze of an entity capable of posing a deadly threat to my life was fixated on me. I knew I couldn't continue, so I altered the trajectory at the last moment, resorting to our backup plan. Once I made that decision, I felt the threatening sensation fade away, and even after all the information I divulged regarding the other villains afterwards, that sensation did not return. Karina clutched her own body, seeking solace and safety within herself, her tone laced with concern as she ventured to ask, so? It truly exists. But what could it be? The world itself? The Six-Path Sage? Or someone akin to an author of a story? Shino's response was curt and tinged with uncertainty. I don't know. But whatever it is, it's evident that this entity won't concern itself with the petty tricks I employ against others, as long as I refrain from eliminating crucial characters. Pressing onward, Shino continued to drive his point home, revealing his dissatisfaction and a sense of helplessness. Unless I am strong enough to confront this enemy head-on, I will remain bound by these conditions. However, even within these constraints, there is a lot of room to work with. So, unless I am pushed into a dead end, I don't want to cast caution aside and break the jar because that will be the true end game. But in the meantime... A deep, satisfied groan escaped Shino's lips as his eyes gleamed with pleasure, his declaration resounding with a sense of newfound sovereignty. I held back before because the knowledge of the future plot was an advantage, but since it is confirmed that I am being targeted regardless whether I forbear or not, then screw the future. If it gets messed up, then so be it. As long as it can please me, I will play all sorts of tricks in order to get the benefits I want. Even without killing important plot characters, I can also let those behind the scene know that I wasn't any pushover, that if they mess with me, I will also cause them trouble. Karina's excited gasps reverberated through the confined space, her sultry voice flattering Shino. Haha. My dear, so manly. Don't utter such cringe lines, Shino retorted, finally releasing his hand from Kirina as he raised one hand to playfully tap Karina's head, a hypocritical gesture that betrayed his enjoyment of the flattery. His gaze then shifted towards Kirina, who did her best to contain his fury, soon opening her crimson lips, a sight that pleased Shino enough to reward her with gentle petting. He spoke softly. You see, if you had agreed to my method of subjecting Asuma to an endless loop where he would witness your death repeatedly, none of this would have been necessary. Alas, I let you handle Asuma, but the results was unsatisfactory. Nevertheless, it's good you're finally willing to learn. So, I will temporarily promote you to handle the relatively easier task of being a cleaner. As Kirina stepped foot on solid, fleshy ground once more, she swallowed as a mix of nervousness and excitement filling her before she obediently knelt down, her crimson gaze fixed on Shino. Then, her black hair began to sway gently as she conveyed her happiness over her promotion to him. Observing this scene and sensing the emergence of a new technique, Shino closed his eyes, delving into deep thought, his voice hoarse as he turned to Karina. Are we there yet? Karina, who leaned against Shino, looked up with a rosy hue on her face. She replied, soon. Haha. But if my dear hasn't had enough, I can slow down our flight. Shino shook his head, one hand running through Kirina's smooth black hair while the other tested Karina's patience. He declared, no need. We still have unfinished business. I haven't forgotten the true cause of our current predicament. Therefore, we must prepare a fitting return gift for the snitch, one that ensures he doesn't have the spare time to snitch on us again. Chapter 132, New Base. In the land between the Hidden Waterfall Village and the Hidden Sound Village, an ancient forest stretched out into the distance, its lush green canopy wrapping around the tall mountains that stood proudly in the area. Amidst the towering trees and the winding paths, one area of the forest stood out, shrouded in an air of mystery and ominous aura, with colossal titan-sized bones of long-extinct creatures littering the forest floor, creating an eerie landscape that sent shivers down the spine. It was a place that held the secrets of a forgotten time, where the remnants of ancient beings served as a reminder of the world's turbulent history. It was a haunting sight to behold. This unique stretch of the forest was known as the Mountain's Graveyard, a place where normal humans and ninjas dared not venture. Within this desolate expanse, hidden away from prying eyes, lay an abandoned mine. Its entrance was obscured by the shadows of the forest, and the remnants of rubble covered the dirt ground, giving it an appearance of desolation and abandonment. It was within this forgotten mine that a new visitor emerged from beneath the surface. A strange insect, with the distinct visage of a zergling, burrowed out from the depths, its sharp claws gripping the ground as it surveyed its surroundings. Its alien senses swept the area, ensuring the coast was clear before it fully emerged, revealing its otherworldly form. The zergling was soon joined by a multitude of its kind, as more zergs, a mix of zerglings and drones, emerged from the ground with an almost orchestrated precision. In a uniform manner, the drones opened their gaping maws, releasing swarms of insects that swiftly took flight, scouting the path ahead. Their tiny forms disappeared into the shadows, their mission clear. Behind them, the zerglings dispersed, their nimble bodies scurrying into the dark mine tunnels, their presence concealed by the depths. The zerglings navigated the winding tunnels of the abandoned mine with a practiced ease. Despite their small size in comparison to the vastness of the underground labyrinth, their sheer numbers allowed them to efficiently carpet search the area, leaving no stone unturned. Their relentless pursuit of their goal led them deeper into the mine's depths. Finally, their diligent efforts bore fruit as they uncovered a secret hideout nestled within the mine. The hideout, though small, held an air of foreboding. At its center stood a towering wooden statue, a grotesque monstrosity with numerous limbs that sprawled in all directions. Despite its nightmarish appearance, the statue seemed to slumber, oblivious to the intruders in its midst. The zergs and bugs, recognizing that their quarry lay elsewhere, paid no attention to the statue or its potential occupants. A swift sweep of the hideout confirmed that it was devoid of life, at least on the surface. But even if someone had been present, it would have mattered little to the invaders. Their goals lay beyond the confines of this hideout. With their scouting at the hideout complete, the zergs burrowed into the earth once more, their movements synchronized and cautious. They followed the network of roots that spread out from the wooden statue above, leading them deeper into the subterranean world below. As the zergs made their way through the dark tunnels, they soon arrived at a cavern where the roots intertwined with each other, plunging into a body of water. The cavern was cloaked in darkness, but the zergs were undeterred. Their controller had carefully handpicked zergs that could adapt to the expected situations, and the darkness posed no obstacle to their senses. One by one, the zergs poked their heads into the cavern, their senses scanning the scene before them. Soon, a horrifying sight was pieced together through their combined gaze, a lake filled with pale white bodies, resembling corpses floating in a lifeless pool of water. The sight would have reminded fans of the Inferi from a certain magical world, defense mechanisms set up by a certain evil Dark Lord. But this was the world of Naruto, and the owner of the Zergs recognized their target, White Zetsu. White Zetsu, the abominations that had brought destruction to Shino's home, were now the focus of his revenge. Shino lost his home, so now his mission was to steal the enemy's home in return. With their objective confirmed, the operation was set in motion. But Shino knew better than to disturb the water or the roots that connected to the demonic statue of Outer Path. So, they aimed for stealth, avoiding the notice of the slumbering White Zetsu below, for they knew that despite their dormant appearance, the White Zetsu were not actually asleep. With their objective confirmed, the Zergs retreated silently, their movements discreet as they moved on to the next phase of their plan. They burrowed through the earth, traversing the subterranean world below the underground cavern, digging deep below and began their diligent construction, laying the groundwork for Shino's nefarious scheme. At the outskirts of the Land of Fire, Shino stretched his arms as he planted his feet firmly on the ground, relishing the sensation of stability. He took in a deep breath of fresh air before wrapping his arms around Karina and Kurenai, leading them towards the edge of the cliff, two captivating beauties in tow. His gaze paused, fixating on the massive crater sprawled out before him. He admired the picturesque scene before his eyes settled on a village nestled within the crater. A faint smile graced his face. Ah, Hacho village, it's been a while. But I never expected to return here so soon. My dear, would you like to fulfill your previous promise? Our workers have already excavated our base below, and we can unleash havoc upon this village, using its inhabitants as fuel for the completion of our new stronghold, Karina suggested, her tone light as she licked her lips and cast venomous eyes upon the village below. Meanwhile, Kurenai stood in silence, her expression devoid of emotion, despite hearing the cruel means being discussed. As a ninja, she possessed a heart of steel, and under her new master's influence, her heart had grown even colder towards other forms of life. Perhaps she herself hadn't fully realized this transformation. To the astonishment of both women, Shino shook his head. No, there is no need. Though I do have the desire to raise this place to the ground, a clever rabbit doesn't devour the grass near its burrow. Our new base will be constructed underground here, and we don't want to draw unnecessary attention by obliterating an entire village. Oh, what a pity, Karina murmured, her arms coiling around Shino's as she rubbed her face against his, a hint of disappointment in her voice. I thought my dear had finally abandoned all restraints, but he remains cautious as ever. Shino's hand glided upward, slipping up her revealed navel and into Karina's loose lavender uniform. His touch playfully explored as he observed the faint blush rising on Karina's face. Rather than cautious, it's more like pulling back my fist to deliver a stronger blow when I am fully prepared. Our current focus is gathering the White Zetsu as resources for our new army. Then, we can set some of our grand plans in motion. After all, there are still countless resources we can plunder from this world. With a soft moan escaping her lips, Karina's body trembled, but she suppressed her desires, whispering into Shino's ear, Shino, let's go and establish our new base first. Afterward, I will allow my dear to fully indulge himself. A meaningful smile spread across Shino's face, his gaze sweeping over the village for a final time. Although the innocent can live, but we must give due retribution where needed, taking out the trash and replacing it with our own, and turn this village into our farm. I'll leave it to you, Karina. Then, Shino's thoughts conveyed a command. Moments later, a gaping maw emerged from the earth beneath them, swallowing the man and his two enchanting companions. Burrowing back into the ground, the transport drone journeyed towards its destination deep underground, where a cavern had already been meticulously carved out. Emerging from the mouth of the drone and stepping into the cavern, Shino was greeted by the comforting warmth within, a contrast to the heated temperature during the ride here. Shino's eyes surveyed the civilized structures that had already been erected, a testament to the construction made in this underground domain. He released Karina from his arm, allowing her to find her own footing, a silent command for her to begin. With calculated grace, her hips swaying seductively, Karina moved towards the center of the cavern, where there was a deliberate area empty of structures. As she planted her hand on the ground, it was as if she was summoning an otherworldly entity. Her gasps filled the cavern, akin to squeezing something out from deep within her. And with each gasp, a viscous purple substance oozed forth from her palms, corroding the rocky ground. It spread like a swarm of ants, gradually contaminating the entire section of the cavern, creating a creepy blanket of corruption. Soon, the eerie substance began to take shape, forming a rounded shell reminiscent of a biosphere, a shell of their former home. This was Karina's life-bound lair, a core completely under her control. And the simple shell wasn't the end. The creep extending from the biosphere actually began to spread to the rest of the cavern, its tendrils digging into the ground and merging with the pre-existing exterior creep layer. Meanwhile, Shino produced a scroll and unfurled it. In a puff of smoke, a small pile of corpses materialized, placed upon the spreading purple creep extending from Karina. As the fresh bodies encountered the creeping substance, it instinctively devoured them, causing the corpses to rapidly decompose and dissolve before their eyes, leading to the creep's hastened expansion. Shino handed the scroll to Kurenai, who accepted it calmly. With diligent movements, she silently released the corpses from the scroll, allowing the creeping substance to consume them, nourishing the biosphere and facilitating the spread of the creeping corruption throughout the cavern. That was a significant upgrade in size compared to their base. As the core biosphere shell reached completion, Shino stepped forward, finding an opening that formed specifically for him. Entering, he locked eyes with Karina, who stood within the shell. Strolling over, Shino coiled his arm around her waist, gently wiping away the sweat on her face with his hands as he said with a soft voice, "Karina, thank you for your hard work." Karina nodded as she leaned into his embrace, a serene smile on her exhausted face as she whispered, "I'm willing to work hard anytime for you, my dear." After a brief rest, Shino retrieved another scroll. From it, he extracted piles of construction materials. Soon, Zerg drones burrowed into the biosphere, commencing their construction work at the core of their base. Turning towards Karina, Shino offered his hand, "Let's go." Outside the biosphere, the creeping substance continued its relentless spread, encompassing the entire cavern and enveloping its structures. As the final corner was covered, Kurenai unloaded the last of the corpses, exhaling a sigh of relief. Her red eyes surveyed the squirming exterior of their outer base, then shifted to the constructed buildings. Temporary guest rooms, a small training ground, multi-story research labs, a garden, a pool, Zerg breeding areas, peculiar defense structures, and even a prison. The base was more comprehensive than ever, occupying a large area, confident in avoiding discovery. Deep underground, shielded from prying eyes, it existed amidst scorching temperatures that even prevented the creeping substance from spreading wantonly. Perhaps their life in this new sanctuary would be even more heated than before. No. What am I thinking? Kurenai muttered, shaking her head slightly as a faint blush tinted her face. Just as Kurenai attempted to banish those thoughts from her mind, Shino and Karina emerged from the central biosphere. Shino's gaze locked onto her, and his voice commanded, "Kurenai-sensei, let's go. Allow me to take you and Karina on a tour of our new home. We will thoroughly explore every aspect together while we await the completion of our main base." Understanding the hidden implications in Shino's words, Kurenai could already imagine the array of methods Shino would employ in the near future. A furious blush crept across her face as she bowed her head, squeezing her thighs together. Chapter 133, Caged Bird. Whoosh. 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 The swift and silent figures of root ninjas sliced through the dense forest, their movements like fleeting specters as they closed in on their target destination. With synchronized precision, they arrived at a discreet location near a secluded villa, their formation fanning out to maximize their vantage points, concealing themselves within the obscurity of the trees. Amidst the tranquility, their vigilant eyes scanned the surroundings, meticulously assessing any signs of activity. The air crackled with an anticipatory energy as the small squad exchanged silent glances, communicating through unspoken words. Completing their reconnaissance, they swiftly flickered forward, their forms blurring into a maelstrom of calculated motion as they breached the walls of the villa, determined to carry out their mission. Inside the once peaceful abode, time seemed to warp as horrified screams pierced the air, shattering the fragile illusion of serenity. Explosions reverberated through the walls, each detonation echoing the grim symphony of destruction. Yet, as swiftly as the chaos erupted, it dissipated into a haunting silence, leaving only an eerie stillness in its wake. The forest and villa were now rendered desolate, the life within snuffed out once more. Unknown to the fallen ninjas, their every move had been meticulously documented, captured within the lens of tiny unassuming insects, blending seamlessly with the natural environment surrounding the ill-fated dwelling. Tap. Shino gracefully landed on a wooden stake in his training field within the confines of their new base. Balancing on one foot, he watched the video displayed in his vision, shaking his head with a chuckle as he brushed away the distraction Karina had employed to obscure his vision. As expected of Denzo. He always manages to find the root of the problem so quickly. But when will he learn that I will never leave a loophole for him to exploit? Perhaps once he loses enough pawns, Karina replied, her footsteps steady as she swiftly glided over the array of wooden stakes. Approaching Shino's position, she swept her leg towards him with fierce intensity. Well, it's not like that evil old geezer is kind enough to care about the loss of his pawns anyway. Thud. Shino raised his hand, blocking the heavy strike with his arm. His hand then clamped down over Karina's leg like a claw, sliding upwards over the black stocking wrapping her legs. A moan escaped Karina's lips as his other fist fiercely punched out towards her while she was momentarily distracted. Bam. A hard carapace formed on Karina's belly, blocking the strike. She swiftly retaliated with a straight kick, utilizing the force from the attack to disengage. Gracefully flipping through the air, she landed back on another wooden stake at a distance. Shino. You're not playing fair. Karina pouted, adjusting her glasses as she rubbed her silky smooth thighs together. Shino rolled his eyes, and with a twist, his body left behind phantoms as he traversed the field of wooden stakes. Rapidly closing in on Karina from multiple directions, his voice echoed from various points to disorient her. All is fair in ninja battles. Witnessing his technique, Karina quickly braced herself. A carapace armor swiftly materialized over her body as strikes came at her from all four directions simultaneously. Bam. 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 Thud. Karina was knocked back by the Shino that appeared by her side, the other phantoms vanishing after their brief attacks on her carapace armor. Twisting through the air, Karina quickly regained her composure, preparing to find a stable footing upon landing. But before she could, her eyes widened with shock as multiple thin wires appeared around her, ensnaring her body. The leech-like anchors on the wires secured the wires tightly, forcing her to resort to brute force to break free. But she didn't have time, because in a matter of moments, the wires retracted, pulling Karina's trapped form rapidly toward Shino's approaching clenched fist. Shino's fist rapidly grew larger in Karina's vision as it came closer and closer. Just before his strike landed, Shino's fist unclenched into an open palm, snaking down and coiling around Karina's waist. Within moments, Karina found herself enveloped in Shino's embrace. His deep eyes stared down at her, a gentle smile playing on his lips. Why didn't you break free? Karina leaned in, giving him a quick peck on the lips before replying with a playful smile, because I know my dear can't bear to hit me. Hearing her words, Shino sighed helplessly as he unbound the wires that had restrained Karina. Well, I suppose that's enough training for today. Yeah. Let's go take a bath, my dear. I'll help you clean thoroughly. Karina's cheerful voice echoed across the training field as she wrapped her hands around Shino's neck. She then enticed him in a bewitching tone, you can also call for Kurenai if you desire, my dear. With his arm around Karina's waist, Shino leaped from wooden stake to wooden stake, swiftly reaching the edge before jumping down to solid ground. Letting his hand overlap Karina's, Shino led the way toward the pool. He responded to her offer in a light-hearted tone, I'm afraid it'll just be the two of us this time. After all, Kurenai is busy taking care of our new guest. Karina blinked playfully, her eyes scanning the area before landing on the prison. A profound smile graced her face as she followed Shino with a mischievous grin. Well, then, I'll have you all to myself. But don't worry, my dear. I'm sure Kurenai will agree to some special arrangements to provide our guest with better conditions. A sly smile appeared on Shino's lips as he unzipped his outfit, discarding it to the ground before stepping into the pool. Well, it seems Yakumo still has some use after all. Turning around, Shino's eyes gleamed as he watched Karina slowly slide down her short black shorts. Her bent body stood straight, revealing her beautiful form with only her long black stockings adorning her slender legs. Twisting her hips seductively, she joined Shino in the pool, her smooth skin brushing against his, guiding his hand to her stocking. Does my dear like what he sees? Of course. With those words, Shino and Karina delved into a deeper conversation, causing undulating waves to ripple through the pool. In the midst of their bathing, Shino suddenly noticed a pair of feet stopping beside the pool. His gaze traced up the slender legs and plump thighs, finally fixing on Kurenai's hesitant face, a faint blush gracing her serious features. What is it? Shino asked knowingly, his attention shifting back to Karina as their conversation continued, Karina suppressing her voice in consideration of their serious discussion. After a moment of hesitation, Kurenai didn't ask for the impossible but settled for a compromise. Can you let her out? A sly smile played on Shino's lips as he replied, are you sure you want to let her out? Perhaps you should take a look around and consider the situation first. Kurenai fell silent, her gaze sweeping the large cavern with a hint of confusion, before fixing her eyes on Shino, silently seeking an answer. Shino glanced at Kurenai with a playful look, his movements pausing as he pulled away to Karina's dissatisfaction. Swimming over to the steps of the underwater staircase in the pool, Shino waved his hand toward Kurenai, his tone overbearing as he commanded, get in, and we'll talk. Kurenai hesitated for a moment before obediently undressing, leaving her lingerie on. Shino relished the sight, while Karina swam over to sit next to him, her arms wrapped around his arm as she secretly pinched his waist to express her displeasure. Chuckling to himself, Shino watched Kurenai's slender, fair legs step into the pool and descend the steps. The water enveloped her bountiful assets as she made her way over, and soon she stood before him, the water soaking her lingerie, faintly revealing the assets hidden underneath. With a subtle gesture, Shino implied what Kurenai should do. Understanding his silent instruction, Kurenai bent her knees, her head dipping into the shallow water as she fulfilled her duties, all while keeping her red gaze fixed upon Shino, silently seeking an answer. Running his hand through her soaked wet hair, Shino delivered on his promise. "Have you noticed the temperature in this cavern?" Kurenai's rhythmic bobbing of her head responded, affirming her acknowledgement. Shino continued, his voice carrying a tone of intrigue, "Do you truly believe this temperature is suitable for survival?" Once again, Kurenai's repeated motion served as her answer. Chuckling softly, Shino pressed his hand down, the water rippling around him. "Although it may only feel warm to us, don't be deceived. Our bodies have evolved through my abilities, allowing us to adapt to harsh conditions, including drastic temperatures. At most, this cavern may feel warm to us and ninjas with extremely powerful physiques, but for other ninjas, it would be like stepping into a searing hot desert. And for normal humans, it would be akin to an inferno hell." Kurenai's eyes widened slightly, a visible sign of her surprise as she absorbed the information. After all, she knew the details of Yakumo. After being deprived by Shino, Yakumo was now a normal human. Despite her slightly upgraded physique, a benefit of the special concoction Shino injected into her to assist in her recovery, it wasn't enough for her to adapt to the drastic temperatures. Outside of our creep-covered sanctuary, it's even worse. After all, to avoid discovery, our new base is constructed below a layer of magma. To filter the heat and offset some pressure, empty external layers were dug around the cavern and layers of heat-resistant bugs coat our creep-infested exterior. Despite this, the temperature and pressure is still strong, and we even need to constantly supply biomass to prevent our creep from withering over time. Even so, for us, the temperature within the cavern may become unbearable in the long run. Firmly pressing his hand against her head to signal her to continue listening, Shino delved deeper into the matter, releasing the rest of his information. "That's why most of the buildings here are equipped with regulators, a blend of technology and biology. Inside, we can get a brief respite from the heat and pressure. The prison also has this measure, which is why she can still live comfortably within its confines. But if she were to step outside, I'm sure you understand the consequences," Shino explained calmly as he watched Kurenai lift her head out of the water. After displaying her empty mouth, Kurenai pursed her red lips with concern and explained, "I was afraid the water would wash them out." Shino nodded, understanding her implication. "Good. A teacher who is always learning is always valuable." As Kurenai gracefully ascended the stairs, the currents of the water shifted, creating a subtle ripple. Her hand slipped down, coyly adjusting the veil of soaked bandages, allowing a tantalizing hint of her secret garden to peek through. It was a mesmerizing display of the ultimate form of her plant and flower illusion techniques. Soon, Shino's senses heightened as he felt the brush of her smooth, wet skin against his own, her thighs wrapping around his waist in a seductive embrace. Sensing her proximity, he asked, "Oh? Is there something you wish to ask for?" Biting her red lips, Kurenai leaned closer to Shino's ear, her voice alluring and whispered, "Can you provide her with a comfortable bed and a more refined room?" Shino's gaze swept across the vast cavern, taking in the large defense structures comprised of a fusion of mechanical and biological technology. His eyes then settled on the numerous serpent-like hydralisks, their presence instilling a sense of security as they nestled among the creep-covered walls and ceilings, defying gravity and hanging in place as their spiny weapons shifted from time to time. Feeling a sense of security, Shino confidently promised, "Don't worry. With the defenses in place, you don't have to worry that she will perish due to external attacks. As long as she obediently remains in her place, she will have a fulfilling life. Of course, that also depends on your performance." Receiving his promise, Kurenai's actions became more active, her gestures aimed at captivating Shino's attention as she pandered to his needs. As Kurenai prepared the fertilizer for her flower pot, Shino couldn't help but notice Karina's subtle discontent as she crossed her arms, grumbling to herself, "And you said it would just be the two of us." Sensing the jealousy emanating from her, he pulled her closer, his arm encircling her waist, and gently lifted her chin, turning her face towards him. With a confident demeanor, he assured her, "Still jealous after everything we've been through? But you know I won't forget about you, Karina." Seeking to ease her concerns, Shino leaned in, sharing a passionate kiss with Karina. Meanwhile, his hand explored the contrasting sensations of two distinct individuals, reveling in their unique qualities. As their lips parted, Shino gently stroked her face as he promised, "I'll make it up to you later tonight." Karina, her breath ragged and her eyes filled with affection, replied in a sultry tone, "My dear, I know you won't forget about me. But before we continue having fun, we should focus on important things, such as the new system function." Curiosity piqued, Shino inquired, "A new system function?" His mind then immersed itself in the system's interface, navigating through various options until his gaze settled on a newly unlocked tab, a long-awaited event that sent a surge of anticipation pulsing through his body as he felt his limbs tremble and throb with fervor. The creation function has finally been unlocked. Chapter 134, Creation Mode Step. Step. Holding a metal briefcase in his hand, Pikazu's deliberate stride brought him to a halt before the bounty board, his seasoned eyes surveying the assortment of wanted posters. His gaze roamed from one face to another until it settled upon a fresh addition, a portrait depicting a young man with glasses and unruly brown hair, partially obscured by a high collar. A hint of intrigue flickered in Kakazu's eyes as he muttered to himself, assessing the situation. Oh, a new valuable face worthy of my attention? S-rank at such a tender age. Could this be another scary fella, much like that Uchiha? But the price on his head is quite good. As his hand reached out, Pikazu deftly plucked a copy of the bounty, seamlessly adding it to his collection. Standing alongside Kakazu, Toby observed his companion's actions with a mixture of curiosity and dissatisfaction, unable to resist voicing his thoughts. I know we need that money, but is it really smart to find trouble with guys like that? Pikazu emitted a raspy chuckle, his eyes narrowing with amusement. He's just another rat skulking in the gutters, and to me, that's nothing more than potential money. If you're afraid. Pikazu's voice dripped with a veiled threat. Our leader has made it clear that he'll find a suitable replacement for you soon. Toby arrogantly tossed his hair, his tone brimming with confidence. But our leader still values my presence. After all, I now serve as the envoy for the hidden village of Marvel. As Kakazu's gaze shifted back to the bounty, updating the prices in his mind, he seized the opportunity to gather information. Ah, and when do you plan to invite your comrades from this hidden village of Marvel? With a scowl, Toby glared at the surrounding bounty hunters, provoking their anger as he defiantly thrust his hip towards them. The air crackled with tension, but none dared to confront the duo. Frustrated by the lack of response, Toby answered Kakazu in a displeased tone, if that damn faulty door is not fixed, more of them will emerge from the factory like Iron Maiden's tin cans. Turning on his heel, Pikazu began to walk away, emitting a low, hoarse laugh tinged with disbelief. Toby seethed with annoyance, swiftly following in pursuit. However, unbeknownst to both pairs, their every move was secretly monitored by a third party, observing their actions through Toby's watchful eyes. Amidst the comforts of the temporary guest room's bathtub, Shino reclined, his gaze fixated on the retreating figure of Kakazu displayed in the broadcast in his vision, marking down this deep-seated grudge within his heart. Easy money, you say? Oh, what a greedy fellow you are. But you've chosen the wrong target this time. Then, Shino's attention shifted to Karina, submerged in the bathwater. Karina, had the decoys been deployed to confuse our pursuers? Ripples danced across the tranquil surface of the bathtub, and Karina emerged from her breath-holding activity with a flushed gaze. As the water gently splashed, with a subtle movement, her supple skin brushed against his, seamlessly sliding into place on his lap as she dutifully reported, yes, I've strategically staged brief appearances of Shino's clones throughout the Land of Fire and even some neighboring countries. This drove our pursuers around like headless flies, and after the Anbu retrieved the scroll of seals we buried, their numbers are now dwindling. Only the bounty hunters and those persistent members of Root remain, but we shouldn't worry. None of them will coincidentally dig so deep below and stumble upon our new base. Satisfied with the update, Shino nodded before shifting his focus back to the creation interface projected in his vision. The creation interface beckoned with a promise of untapped potential, offering a deceptively simple mechanic, a research slot that awaited patiently for his input, running in the background of the system, diligently delving into uncharted territories to research new units or evolution and mutation routes for existing ones. Yet, the true essence of this function diverged from the originally unlocked modes of evolution and mutation. In the normal evolution and mutation, it required a delicate balance of biomass and certain environmental conditions to create the mutated units. Not only that, for insects outside his spawn zergs, biomass could only serve to enhance the speed and probability of the upgrade, but the final success was still subjected to the whims of chance and probability, sometimes so low that Shino is forced to pause their breeding to conserve biomass. Even with Karina's meticulous research to establish methods and breeding bases to increase the probability, the wasted biomass is still a hefty amount. Furthermore, evolution and mutation can't happen from nothing. It hinged upon an original template, a pre-existing Zergor bug, and the process was just acting as a catalyst for unlocking dormant genes already existing within the target. And this meant that the gene itself was already included in the database from the moment of the initial contact with the creature. This meant the previous method was a means to grow the quantity of his tools, but there was no personal growth in his database from this method. In stark contrast, the creation function transcended the boundaries of known possibilities. It not only facilitated the pursuit of upgrades for existing Zergs, but also opened the gateway to something far grander. It allowed for Shino's creative input to breathe life into the research, birthing units that had never before graced the annals of the system. And these new units could have previously been non-existent, ones with new gene data that had yet to be incorporated in the gene bank. This meant that the creation function possessed the remarkable ability to generate new gene data, amalgamating pre-existing information into a symphony of innovation. And Shino's role transformed into that of a player, choosing the options he desired and harvesting the fruits of the system's tireless research at his leisure. This creation function was akin to an idle game's resource generator, allowing Shino to collect new gene data and unit templates over time. It scarcely needed mentioning how powerful this newfound power was. With the creation function, even if Shino does not venture beyond the confines of his base, he possessed the capacity to amass a sprawling database of genes. And given enough time, he could even complete self-evolution by being a recluse. However, in the realm of this immense power bestowed upon Shino, the indescribable existence responsible for this ability seemed wary of the user's ascent to overwhelming dominance. As a result, certain restrictions were imposed, tempering the limitless potential within. First and foremost, the creation function operated within specific confines. It could only manifest an array of creatures, and all research generated would be bound to the realm of Zerg, regardless of their outward appearance. This meant that Shino's aspirations to forge new ninjutsu or explore growth routes for his aborame insects were not possible with these restrictions. Technological research, be they mechanical marvels or non-organic wonders, also remained out of reach. Only, Zerg-related upgrades and units could be developed through this creation function. In addition, an obvious restriction would be computation power. As a universal constraint on all system functions, the creation function was no exception. Activating the function required one mere unit of computation power, a seemingly negligible cost. However, the vagueness of the idea, the complexity of the unit's abilities, and the realistic nature of the prompt all conspired to stretch the research duration, spanning from mere hours to years, decades, centuries, millenniums, and even epochs of unimaginable length, simply marked with an unknown time, their true scope veiled. And unfortunately, these estimated duration remained unyielding, impervious to any attempts at reduction save for the allocation of additional computation power or the supplementation of the gene bank with genetic material relevant to the research subject. Although Karina could optimize research prompts to reduce the estimated duration at the beginning, once the creation function embarked on its research, Karina found herself bereft of any influence on the results and duration. The creation function functioned as an independent entity, unaffected by their personal research capabilities, and heedless of any attempts to guide it through conscious thought. A prompt was all it required before it invoked the allocated computation power to weave its unknown arcane magic and deliver a result. Not only that, regrettably, the present circumstances granted only one research slot, restricting Shino's explorations to a singular path at a time. And with their limited computation power, they were unable to entertain the pursuit of unrealistic ventures without clogging the research slot with fruitless endeavors, leaving it useless for a considerable period. Fortunately, Shino held the prerogative to terminate ongoing research and embark upon a fresh endeavor whenever he deemed fit. Every gene discovered during the uncompleted research process would also be dutifully added to his gene bank, akin to gathering resources before they reach their maximum capacity. Yet, do not dismiss the boundless potential of this function, despite its inherent restrictions. And do not think its research speed is slow, for in a mere matter of days, Shino had already unleashed his creative spirit, birthing a bunch of new units. Admittedly, most of them lacked practicality, relegated to niche applications and peculiar scenarios. Take, for instance, the Dust Eater and the Colorful Light Bug. The Dust Eater, as its name implies, possessed a singular purpose, to devour dust and convert it into biomass. Alas, the cost required to sustain this Zerg exceeded the biomass it could generate. And Shino knew his useful creep could perform the same cleaning task, effortlessly devouring non-organic matter without imposing any additional burden on his resources. An absolutely free alternative rendered this Dust Eater a redundant creation. But, it's always good to have a vacuum cleaner, right? Ahem. On the other hand, the Colorful Light Bug represented a downgraded version of Shino's mutated camouflage insects. Its sole ability lay in the capacity to display a vibrant array of colors, reminiscent of a shimmering rainbow. Regrettably, its transformative capabilities were confined solely to colors and its outer shell, lacking the true essence of camouflage. Nonetheless, this experiment marked the boundaries of Shino's current research. After all, the full-fledged Zerg version of his camouflage bugs demanded weeks of arduous exploration, despite the foundational template he already owned. But why devote his precious time to researching an alternative when superior means of breeding and utilization already existed? The researched unit through the creation function will generate a permanent Zerg template and allow the unit to be directly created raw through biomass. Needless to say, this function would be useful if he had nothing but biomass. But now, he had plenty of resources at his disposal, allowing him to replace some of the biomass cost with other resources. So, researching this would just be the icing on a cake. Anyways, these units were indeed tasteless, But they were only something born from Shino's spur-of-the-moment inspirations during his testing of the new creation function. The true potential of the creation function remained a wellspring of immeasurable utility, and it was still very useful in Shino's eyes. After all, who could say no to an idle resource generator? Now, Shino can boast he personally has a research talent that could stand shoulder to shoulder with the diligent Karina. But this ability will be passively working in the background in his life's story, and will not be mentioned much until some results pop up, probably a ploy to give him plot armor by the indescribable existence behind his transmigration. Ahem. Anyways, after days of unraveling the intricacies of the new creation functions, Shino's anticipation reached its peak. The time had come to execute the plans that had lingered in his mind for far too long. Amidst the gasps reverberating from below, Shino's gaze fixed upon Karina, diligently engaging in her exercises on all fours upon the tiled bathroom floor. His voice was hoarse as he inquired, "Karina, is our Six Paths clone utilizing Miss Yumi, the flexible guy, as a template ready?" For a moment, only Karina's heavy panting echoed in the air, and Shino's impatience grew, compelling him to press further, his movements quickening to urge for an answer. "Karina? Pa. Pa." In the end, before Karina's reply came, unable to restrain himself any longer, Shino unleashed a torrent of unanswered questions. Observing the exhausted Karina with her face planted against the ground, he firmly wrapped his arm around her waist and pulled her towards him, allowing her to lean against her embrace. Then, his hand snaked up the wet stockings wrapping her slender legs, reaching under her fair thigh before lifting her up, allowing her to perch at the edge of his limb. His voice, soft and commanding, whispered into her ear, "Are you satisfied? If not, answer me, Karina." "Pa. Pa. Yes, my dear. The clone is ready." Finally, Karina's response satisfied Shino, prompting him to delve into a discussion regarding the ensuing plans. "Good. Deploy him to the hidden waterfall village. After we acquired the comprehensive repertoire of sealing techniques by plundering Hidden Leaf Village, we now have the necessary foundation to capture her." Karina's answer never came, a response that spoke of her inner jealousy. Yet her head undulating up and down conveyed her agreement, and Shino could already sense his scheme brewing through Karina's manipulation. So, a grin formed on his face as he continued to pound the intricate details of his plan into place, ensuring that his victim would be soft and tender upon the plan's completion. For what Shino desired was not a raging-tailed beast. No, what he sought was a living Jinchuriki. Chapter 135, Deployment Everywhere. Hidden Waterfall Village. The mysterious Hidden Waterfall Village, nestled in a small, unnamed country between the land of fire and the land of earth. Despite its tragic past, the village had forged a formidable reputation for frequently producing skilled jonin and, more recently, for being the only non-great village harboring a tailed beast, a distinction typically bestowed upon the 5 great ninja villages. But the village's secrets ran deeper still, for veiled beneath the surface of the village was an elusive, mysterious substance known as hero water, capable of multiplying a ninja's chakra tenfold, at the cost of a shortened lifespan. However, despite housing such powerful treasures, the village still managed to survive in its own way. Unlike the other villages out in the open, the entrance to Hidden Waterfall Village remained concealed behind a majestic waterfall. And even those who managed to breach this barrier faced the formidable challenge of navigating the labyrinthine underwater caves hidden beneath the cascade, a natural defense mechanism protecting the village and its treasures. Not only that, deadly traps decorated the meandering routes, ready to bury unsuspecting intruders in this underwater tomb. It was this hidden sanctuary that had safeguarded Hidden Waterfall Village, preserving its secrets from prying eyes. However, on this day, the village was unknowingly infiltrated by an unexpected visitor. Puff! A drenched head broke the water's surface, expelling a mixture of water and bugs from his mouth. With a face adorned with a thick black beard and graying temples, the man's keen eyes surveyed the vast lake before finally settling upon a towering tree sprouting from the center. His gaze then shifted to the nearby shore, where the village, imbued with Southeast Asian aesthetics, stood. Exhibiting an air of tranquility, the man stealthily approached the shoreline, his arms stretching out, wrapping around a tree and reeling him into the concealment of a tree's shadows, avoiding the watchful eyes of the few patrolling ninjas. Nestled within the tree's embrace, droplets of water cascaded from his tight-fitting, full-body blue suit, marked with a prominent number 4 emblazoned across his chest. As he observed the village below, a gentle heat dried the water stains as his lips curled into a self-assured smile, his musings escaping in a hushed tone, "This place might have a few hundreds years on me and mine, sure. But I'm Reed Richards. Nobody's smarter than me. Who's there?" A voice suddenly reverberated from the nearby forest, prompting a vigilant ninja on patrol to rush over. Oops. The village look peaceful, but nothing is ever what it appears. "It's the mysteries and the unknown that make life interesting," Reed muttered, his body becoming a conduit for a blanket of bugs emerging from within his flesh. In an instant, he vanished into thin air. Tap. A ninja landed gracefully on a neighboring tree, scanning his surroundings with an air of suspicion. After a moment, he murmured, "Must have been my imagination. Just getting jumpy, I guess." Just as the ninja turned to depart, his body seized up, eyes widening in horror as he felt the stiffness spreading through his body. He attempted to cry out, but even his throat was paralyzed. As a minuscule mosquito floated away from the ninja's neck, Reed gradually materialized behind him, his hand resting upon the hapless ninja's head. A while later, the Reed's form stretched and contorted, mirroring the ninja's appearance. The four flames erupted in Reed's palm, reducing the NPC ninja to a heap of smoldering ashes. Reed scrutinized his hands, their transformed state prompting him to mutter, "Odd. I'm not sure if it's organic, but it doesn't appear to be entirely synthetic either. Fascinating." After a brief inspection, his gaze then turned toward the village, his expression growing somber. "To target a young lady? How else can I plead but guilty? But in order to protect my world from strange, I've become a trailblazer, and now I'll have to get in there and blaze that trail." With unwavering determination, Reed positioned himself within the village, relying on fragmented memories he had plundered to assume the guise of a ninja patrolling the streets. Patiently lurking, he awaited the opportune moment to fulfill his secret mission. Emerging from the confines of the prison compound within the cavern, Kurenai's crimson gaze fixated upon Shino, who leaned against the wall of the building, arms crossed, engrossed in the broadcast of Reed's audacious infiltration into the hidden waterfall village. After a brief pause, Kurenai mustered the courage to speak in a soft voice, "I've spoken to her." Shifting his attention away from the intriguing broadcast, Shino turned towards Kurenai, a meaningful smile playing on his lips. He inquired with a hint of intrigue, "Are you certain you want me to proceed with this?" Closing her eyes and averting her gaze, Kurenai's body trembled, betraying the conflict she felt, before she replied in a soft voice that seemed to drain her strength. "As Karina mentioned, it's for her own good." "Oh," Shino chuckled softly, a hint of darkness threading his words. He began to make his way towards the prison, his voice carrying a playful undertone, "Then, I shall help myself." Without casting a backward glance, Kurenai strode away in the opposite direction, her soft voice carried by the breeze, "Do as you wish. I'll go and check on the children at the orphanage." In a dilapidated section of Ujasama City, a weathered old granny, her face adorned with wrinkles and her hair bundled up in a gray bun, stood before a dilapidated building with a sense of purpose. With a keen crimson gaze, she surveyed the surroundings, ensuring the coast was clear before pushing open the creaking wooden door, granting her entry into a sparsely furnished room with worn-out wooden furniture. Inside, she made her way to the basement through a concealed trapdoor. Executing a series of precise hand signs, she unleashed a subtle surge of chakra, causing a previously ordinary section of the stone wall to warp and morph into a doorway. With a sigh of familiarity, the granny pushed the door open, revealing a dimly lit corridor that stretched ahead. As she ventured further down the corridor, the distant echoes of children's voices reached her ears. A gentle smile crept upon her aged face as she quickened her pace, soon arriving at a lavishly furnished underground cavern. There, a group of children sat attentively on the cold stone ground, their gazes fixed on a female teacher who was imparting knowledge to them. If any ninja happened upon this scene, they would be shocked because the knowledge being taught closely resembled that of great village ninja schools, and maybe even beyond. Paying closer heed would reveal a curriculum that touched upon topics including freedom, equality, and science. Upon the granny's arrival, the female teacher glanced over, adjusting her glasses and pouting slightly. "Ah, you're here. I'll leave the rest to you. I still need to handle matters over at the waterfall village while my dear is occupied." Nodding in understanding, the old granny acknowledged the departure of the teacher, who bid the children farewell, "Until next time, you brats." The children, undeterred by the teacher's disrespectful demeanor, responded with heartfelt gratitude. "Thank you, Shina-sensei." As the beauty's form shifted into a swarm of bugs and scurried away, the children erupted into laughter, unafraid of the seemingly horrifying sight. They promptly rose from their places, some scampering off to engage in play, while the older ones dedicated themselves to practicing ninjutsu. One child approached the old granny and bowed respectfully. "Hyoba-san, you're back." Her crimson gaze fixed upon the child, who exuded immaturity beyond his years. With a gentle touch, she ruffled his hair and replied, "Yes, I have returned, Hiru. And I've brought more supplies." He presented a ninja scroll to the child, whose eyes sparkled with hope and happiness as he received it. Waving the scroll triumphantly toward the other children, he called out, "Everyone, Hyoba-san has brought us more delicious food. Form lines, and each of us will have our share. Yada. Hiru-una-san, hurry up." Cheers of excitement filled the cavern as the children rushed to form orderly lines. Hana and Oda, watch over them. Make sure they feed our companion given to us by Lord Kano. We don't want it to starve to death before we actually become ninjas. Hana and Oda were appointed by Haru to oversee the distribution, ensuring that everyone received their portion of the provisions. With a contented smile, Granny who observed the joyful scene, yet inwardly, a hint of melancholy tugged at her heart. It was their fortune to be rescued from the clutches of the auction house and cared for by him, but it was also their misfortune. After all, their fates had been bound to that man due to the implantation of the Zerg. It was a cruel twist of fate. Alas, she was helpless and unable to alter their destiny, but perhaps this may be a good thing for them. After all, they now had hope. Casting her eyes over the lively group, Hyu noticed one child was conspicuously absent. Concerned, she inquired, "Where is Kapo?" Haru, the child with a mature temperament, hesitated and bowed his head, his foot shuffling against the floor. Granny sighed, understanding the situation. Did he sneak out again? Nodding with a touch of guilt, Haru looked up, explaining, "Brother Kapo didn't mean to break the rules. This time. You know, he admires Lord Kano the most and always wants to prove himself." When Shino-sensei mentioned the need to distribute books in the capital city, he rushed to offer his help. Sighing once more, he acknowledged the circumstances. "I understand. Go, Haru, and make sure you get your share." Haru nodded, joining Hana and Oda in the distribution of food. As he observed the children's bustling activities, she closed her eyes, extending her senses to reach the bugs scattered throughout the capital. With precision, she located the bug assigned to Kapo and witnessed his predicament. Opening her eyes, a flicker of worry crossed her features as she muttered to herself, "It appears that Kapo is in a bit of a pinch. However, the circumstances are a bit special and difficult to handle. I will report to Karina and see if she has a solution." Meanwhile, in the dimly lit alleyways of the slums of the city, where shadows danced like ghosts, a young teen with a dirty face navigated the labyrinth of broken dreams and desolation. The air was heavy with the scent of decay, desperation, and hidden secrets. The boy, barely in his teens, moved with the grace of a shadow, his every step cautious and deliberate. His eyes darted from side to side, scanning the murky corners for any signs of danger. His target was close by. As he sneaked deeper into the slums, his heart pounded with a mixture of fear and anticipation. The package he carried, concealed within the folds of his tattered jacket, held the promise of something valuable. A mission that would change his life, or so he had been led to believe. He couldn't afford to let his guard down. Finally, he arrived at the predetermined meeting spot, an alley so narrow it felt like a forgotten crack in the city's facade. He glanced around, confirming that he was alone. Moments later, a masked figure emerged from the darkness, his face obscured by shadows. The masked man exuded an air of mystery and danger, his presence fierce and ominous, entailing the arduous life he lived in. Without a word, the young teen pulled out the package and held it up for the masked man to inspect. The dim light lit the object, revealing its mysterious allure. Their eyes met briefly, an unspoken understanding passing between them. "Is it what I asked for?" the masked man questioned in a low, gravelly voice, his tone laced with caution. The young teen nodded, his eyes flickering with a mix of trepidation and determination. "It's exactly as promised, every ounce is worth its money," he murmured, his voice barely audible. The masked man reached into the folds of his cloak and produced a small pouch. He tossed it to the teen, who deftly caught it with practiced ease. The sound of clinking coins echoed through the desolate alley, marking the completion of their silent transaction. However, before they could part ways, a sudden gust of wind seemed to carry a whisper. A shadowy figure lurking with the masked man materialized on the ground and revealed the flattened form of Jiraiya. With swift precision, Jiraiya inflated as he arose from the ground and with lightning speed, he struck the masked man, rendering him unconscious. The package slipped from his hands, falling into Jiraiya's grasp. Hidden Sound Village. "It seems I've finally caught some fish after waiting for so long." The young teen, startled by the unexpected turn of events, attempted to escape, but Jiraiya was quicker. His grip tightened around the boy's arm, lifting him up into his arm and preventing any chance of evasion. "Let me go. Let me go, you old geezer." As the teen struggled in his grasp, Jiraiya's eyes bore into him with an intensity that sent a chill down his spine. "You think you can dabble in these dangerous games without consequence, brat?" Jiraiya's voice was stern, his words laced with disappointment. "These paths lead to destruction, and you would do well to learn from this encounter. Now, be obedient and tell me who is behind your contact with this member of the Lord of the Hive's cult." The teen's defiance wilted under Jiraiya's gaze. He realized the gravity of his actions, the risks he had taken in pursuit of a better life. Fear and regret washed over him, mingling with the dirt on his face. The package, Once his ticket to prove himself, now felt like a burden too heavy to bear. He wasn't afraid of dying, he was afraid to see that man's disappointment. The pouch of coins slipped from the boy's trembling hands, scattering its contents on the cold, unforgiving ground. After calming his emotions, he glared defiantly at Jiraiya, refusing to answer. Huh. A tough brat. But there are ways to make you answer. With a mixture of disappointment and sympathy in his eyes, Jiraiya muttered, for now, let's see what important items you two are exchanging. Is it the method to grant normal civilians the abilities of ninjas? Jiraiya's hand deftly unwrapped the package, and when he saw the book laying within, he tilted his head, confusion displayed on his face, the road of a sensei. What the heck is this? With a hint of curiosity, Jiraiya flipped open the book, but the moment his gaze grazed its forbidden contents, his eyes suddenly bulged as a trail of blood dripped down from his nose, his face flushing red as he panted, his other hand loosening, allowing the young teen to slump against the wall. Chance. The young teen's hand swiftly swept up the coins before he rushed off, leaving behind the Eero sage who was seemingly deeply engaged in the book, yet his eyes swept out towards the escaping child imperceptibly, a sly smile on his face before he turned his attention back to his book. Oh. This art style, this plot. I can feel the inspiration brewing within me. Chapter 136, One Arrow Two Birds Sensei, that is you, isn't it? Why don't you help us, too? Fear etched across her face, the female teacher gazed at the group of male students surrounding her, her voice trembling with desperation as it reverberated through the dimly lit classroom. No. Please. Don't. Yamat. Ha ha ha. The leader of the student group bellowed with malicious laughter, gripping his teacher's head tightly. No one can stop me. For I'm the man who will become the Peking. Now a creepy laugh filled the air as a man, engrossed in a book, panted heavily. He turned the page, eager to discover what would unfold next. But to his astonishment, his blushing face froze in disbelief as he stared down at the empty page before him. No. How can this be? A blank page? Impossible. There must be some hidden secret. Frantically, he licked his finger and hastily flipped back a page before flipping forward again, as if his actions could magically reveal hidden images. But the redness soon faded from his face, replaced by a tinge of panic. Jiraiya rapidly flipped through the remaining pages, only to find them all blank. No. How can the second half of the book be empty? Who on earth printed this? They should be fired for skimping on their duty. Yet, when Jiraiya reached the final page, he noticed a small, faint text inscribed on it. His eyes narrowed as he read the words silently to himself. The rest? It's yours if you want it. Find it. I left all sauce the world has there. One Piece, it's real. For a moment, Jiraiya fell into silence, contemplating the absurdity of the message. With a dismissive snort, he slammed the book shut and swiftly stashed it away in his pocket. What nonsense is this? As if anyone would believe it. His gaze shifted toward the lifeless body of the masked adult ninja lying nearby, his stomach already corroded into a gaping hole, a grim outcome that had befallen all those he had attempted to interrogate. Carefully wrapping the corpse within a scroll, Jiraiya's eyes turned towards the young teen who was making a daring escape through the slums. A glimmer of slyness flickered in his squinted eyes. But that brat might hold some clues. As Shino absorbed the report delivered by Karina, his eyes remained fixed on the recording of Jiraiya's mysterious disappearance into the shadows. A sly smile played upon his lips as he muttered under his breath, Jiraiya, huh? I never expected him to become trouble. But perhaps I can use this to my advantage. Lost in thought, Shino's scheming mind began to take shape. His gaze wandered across the meticulously furnished Japanese-style restaurant room, but his attention soon descended, fixating on the pair of young women clad in elegant kimonos. A peculiar sense of excitement coursed through him as he observed the nearly identical twins serving today's menu. Sensing that he was almost full, with a grin, Shino issued his command, his voice carrying an undeniable authority. Yakumo, it's your turn. In response to his instruction, the masked Yakumo's head tilted back slowly, her movements akin to that of a mechanical doll. Her gaze shifted towards the young woman beside her, whose fair complexion stood in stark contrast to her own pale skin. Sensing the intense stare from her twin sister, Yakumo opened her eyes, her serene gaze meeting the close-up visage of the guest for whom she provided cleaning services, aided by her sister. With an enticing flourish of her tongue, she traced a seductive trail as she moved towards the awaiting tip presented by her customer, her eyes slowly fluttering close at the moment of intimate contact, gracefully taking the tip before skillfully putting the tip into the tip jar, a familiar routine gradually being mastered. Oh, I've devised the perfect scheme, one that can strike two birds with a single arrow, Shino proclaimed with a sinister smile, his arm encircling the masked Yakumo who stood compliantly by his side, anticipation building as his hand ventured beneath her kimono, allowing her cold temperature to reach him, ready to cool off his fiery heat as the devious plan he was brewing awaited its moment to be unleashed. Meanwhile, in Ujasama City, navigating the twisting labyrinthine pathways with an air of familiarity, a young teen's dirt-smeared face betrayed a heightened sense of vigilance as his eyes darted around, scanning his surroundings, even glancing up at the rooftops to ensure he remained undetected. Satisfied that he had successfully eluded any potential pursuers with his intricate twists and turns, a momentary wave of relief washed over him. His hand gingerly reached into his tattered attire, fingers brushing against the concealed bag of coins nestled within. They'll all be happy when I bring them something delicious. And with this, Haru can finally get those cooking books he wanted. A light chuckle escaped the teen's lips as he prepared to forge ahead. However, his stride faltered as a faint yet familiar buzzing sound reverberated from his body. He sensed the presence of an insect crawling upon his body and his gaze scanned the surroundings, vigilantly confirming he was alone. With a glimmer of determination shining in his eyes, he continued forward normally, allowing the bug to stealthily find its way into his ear. Then, a familiar voice he revered whispered in his ear, "Capo, do not be afraid or shocked by what you hear next. Maintain your composure and act as if nothing has happened. You are being followed by a ninja." Capo's muscles tensed subtly, his gaze fixed straight ahead as he walked with unwavering purpose, concealing any trace of concern. "Fear not, your life is not at risk," the voice continued its instructions, whispered exclusively for Capo's ears. "However, I require you to perform a small role in a little theatrical production for this pursuing ninja. Don't worry, I will guide you every step of the way. Now, head towards." Nimbly navigating the convoluted alleys, Capo weaved his way through the squalor of the slums, mindful of the watchful eyes lurking in the shadows. Though a tinge of fear clung to his senses, his determination pushed him forward, for he had a mission propelling him onward, a mission from his lord. After reaching his destination, a modest shack, Capo cautiously surveyed his surroundings before slipping inside. Unbeknownst to him, Jiraiya, concealed within the shadows atop a nearby rooftop, observed the shack, his heightened senses extending outward, detecting the presence of two distinct chakra signals. One of them must be the brat, but who could the other one belong to? Jiraiya pondered silently, his gaze narrowing as he focused on the structure. Soon enough, Capo emerged from the shack, his vigilant gaze scanning the area before he hastened away. This time, Jiraiya chose not to tail the young teen, for a new target now demanded his attention. Stealthily, Jiraiya crept toward the shack, intent on capturing the ninja concealed within. However, as he drew closer, a furrow formed on his forehead, his brows knitting together in consternation. His eyes fixated on the stationary chakra signal within the small building. "Damn it! I've been had." With a swift motion, Jiraiya dashed into the building, arriving just in time to witness a ninja wearing a rebreather disintegrating into droplets of water, scattering like rain, leaving behind nothing but a puddle of water. Frustration etched upon his face, Jiraiya pondered the fleeting image he had captured, his mind connecting the dots with his memories from the past. A hidden rain ninja. I initially suspected it was only the Aburame brat, but if Hanzo is involved as well. Things have certainly gotten more complicated. Inside the confines of the lab, Karina wore a pout upon her face as her eyes flickered toward a screen displaying Shino engaged in rigorous arrow shooting training with two birds. "Having all the fun by yourself and leaving me with all the work, huh? Humphrey. Well, I'll make sure to drain you later." Refocusing on her duties, Karina tapped on holographic interfaces, deftly manipulating the zergs and bugs under her control, ensuring that their secret orphanage remained concealed. Although these children won't reveal much information aside from our pseudonyms, even if they were to be captured, it's best to avoid unnecessary losses of these future loyal minions if possible. In a year or two, they could develop into budding ninjas, capable of being deployed as spies within the ninja villages, Karina mused to herself, exerting control over her bugs to discreetly track Jiraiya's movements until he vanished using an unknown method. As expected, tracking a Sannin proves to be quite challenging even with all our current methods. Even the newly bred Baikashu couldn't catch his scent. With a sweeping motion, Karina caused the screen to vanish, redirecting her attention to another set of monitors showcasing scenes from Hacho village. The vibrant activities of the civilians was a stark contrast to the gloomy aura emanating from the homes of village leader Disanasu and the councillors, who sat in silence like puppets, only interacting with the villagers when necessary. After extracting their memories, we've replaced their positions with our ninjutsu clones using the transformation technique. However, most of them remain dormant in order to conserve computational power. It shouldn't be a problem in the short term, but there is a risk of discovery in the long run. I must ensure that our control over this village is unassailable before that time comes. And the first step is to eliminate any sources of power that may threaten our dominance. With a swift motion, Karina summoned a wide screen, displaying another greenhouse filled with plants, where Kurenai diligently studied a new Genjutsu technique. "Kurenai, how is it coming along?" Kurenai directed her crimson eyes toward the screen that materialized in her field of vision, revealing Karina's visage, before returning her focus to the new Genjutsu technique she was attempting. With a hint of doubt on her face, she responded, "Unlike conventional Genjutsu, this technique doesn't seem to rely on the chakra system for its power, and requires an unknown energy type. And after testing all our available power sources, I've only managed to utilize it to a limited extent by harnessing the new Genic energy you provided through the Zergs. This allowed me a glimpse into the potential of this technique. Through this technique, I can materialize an illusion directly in reality, akin to a mirage, rather than targeting the victim's mind directly. However, despite our Genic energy working as a power source, it was still not a perfect fit. So, our current Genic energy production isn't sufficient nor efficient enough to unleash the full potential of this technique, resulting in no current practical application for combat. In conclusion, this unusual Genjutsu method from Shino's mother can at most serve as a valuable reference material at the moment." Karina shook her head in response. Although it is unknown how Shino's mother got her hands on this, don't underestimate it. This represents a new power system. And according to Shino, a new power system holds the key to a new treasure trove. But let's set that aside for now. After all, Genic powers is still a new field for us. We can delve into it further in the future. For now, put your clone in hibernation mode at the orphanage. Our next move will require all available clones, and perhaps even we must make a move if the situation calls for it. Prepare yourself. And after we complete the task." Karina waved her hand through the air, conveying an unspoken command. Kurenai, understanding her instructions, nodded silently before waving her hand, causing some of the small plants around her to vanish, revealing the fact that they were mere illusions. With interest in her eyes, Karina observed Kurenai's departure from the garden before disconnecting the call. Karina's gaze then shifted toward the monitor displaying another village located within the whole, a multitude of screens showcasing critical locations, including a mysterious black tower concealed beneath the ground. Tonica Village. With the data gathered by our bugs and the memories extracted from Desanasu's mind, it should be enough. It's about time we get our hands on that ancient super weapon and see what it really is. Chapter 137, Invasion. In the heart of the sprawling crater of the Hole, an imposing village known as Tonica stood firm. Its inhabitants, both men and women, donned uniforms and brandished swords with pointy blades. It was a militarized stronghold, but behind its disciplined facade, the guards were nothing more than a local militia trained by their village leader. The rest of the villagers had long grown accustomed to the peace that enveloped them. They may not have been ninjas, but they prided themselves on being the most powerful village in the whole. On this particular day, the lax guards patrolled the borders of the village, their routine uninterrupted. Some stood watch at the entrance, prepared to welcome visitors from neighboring villages scattered across the fringes of the whole. But perplexity etched itself onto their faces as they witnessed a vague, misty fog spill forth, gradually engulfing their line of sight before drifting towards the village. Fog? Why is there fog here? One guard exchanged glances with his comrade, then nodded towards him before turning on his heels, determined to make a report. The other guard watched his patrol buddy disappear into the fog with a calm expression, but his body abruptly tensed when muffled cries echoed from within the ethereal haze. "Tatsuma?" The guard called out, his sword already gripped firmly in his hand. "Oi? Stop fooling around. This isn't funny." There was no response. A bead of sweat trickled down the guard's face, but he had already made a resolute decision. Swiftly turning in the opposite direction, the guard bolted away. To the untrained eye, it may have appeared as if he were fleeing. After all, he was but a regular human, albeit a skilled fighter. In reality, all the trained militia knew better. Going against ninjas, who had an arsenal of peculiar methods, left him at a disadvantage. Alone, he couldn't hope to confront them, not with his limited skills. So, his best course of action was to flee, find an escape route, and report back. Only by rallying the masses, along with the village chief and guard commanders, would they stand a chance at fighting back. Naturally, the scream to alert his fellow villagers was not missing, and unfortunately, this tactic was only effective against a small band of invading ninjas. What loomed over them now was far worse. Just as the guard distanced himself from his post, his scream barely escaping his mouth, the ground beneath him shifted suddenly. Sharp limbs erupted from the earth, causing him to stumble and crash onto the ground. Groaning in pain, he struggled to rise, only to find himself face to face with an abomination possessing 8 menacing eyes. A chilling sensation crawled up his spine as he prepared to scream, but before he could, a sticky substance swiftly adhered to his mouth, muffling his cries. The guard frantically scooted backward, his hands futilely attempting to tear away the web that sealed his mouth shut, but it clung to him relentlessly. Wide-eyed with terror, the guard could do nothing but gaze into the eyes of impending doom. The full horror of the grotesque giant spider unfolded before him, and he watched helplessly as his fate was ensnared within its nefarious web, sealing away his existence as the venomous fangs of the spider sunk into him, injecting an unknown venom and putting him to sleep. A chilling wind whispered through the village, carrying the ominous scent of decay. The fog grew thicker, obscuring the outlines of buildings and twisting the familiar paths into a labyrinth of uncertainty. It was as though the village itself had become a nightmare. As fog settled into the village, a creeping unease filled the air. The villagers huddled in their homes, their faces etched with concern. Unbeknownst to them, a lurking horror awaited amidst the dense mist. Giant spiders, their legs as thick as tree trunks and fangs dripping with venom, hid in the murky shadows, patiently waiting to strike as they spun their webs. Meanwhile, among the villagers on patrol was the seasoned leader of the guards, who now stood at the forefront of the defense. His deep-set eyes scanned the fog with intensity, his grip tightening around his sword. "Remember the counter-ninja training and be on your guard," he warned his fellow guards. As the fog swallowed the village, screams pierced the silence. The spiders emerged from their hiding places, their 8 legs skittering across the ground. The militia of Tonica sprang into action, their swords slashing through the air with precision. The captain's voice rang out, cutting through the fog that obscured their sights. "Stand firm. Protect the village." In a different location, within the humble confines of his cottage, the Tonica village chief, a dignified elderly man with weathered features and a magnificent beard that nearly consumed his entire face, stood tall and prepared himself for the impending chaos. With a calm demeanor, he donned his simple plate armor and fastened the black headband, a symbol of his indomitable authority. Picking up his sword, he whispered to his worried grandson, Leo, who stood nearby. "Leo, take care of Mina." Observing his grandfather's departure, Leo scooped up little Mina, who was still trying to comprehend the world around her, and took refuge beneath the bed. Peering out from the darkness, his eyes sought solace in the perceived safety of his childish hiding spot. But as is customary in all horror stories, the lurking monster had already locked its gaze upon the vulnerable children. Stepping out of his house with purposeful strides, the old man's hand remained firmly clasped around the hilt of his sword. His sharp eyes pierced through the veil of fog, intently scanning his surroundings. Guided by memory, he counted his steps meticulously, determined to navigate the familiar terrain without losing his way. Suddenly, the old man's eyes narrowed, and in one fluid motion, his sword plunged into the ground, accompanied by a soft screech as the ambushing creature in the ground met its demise. Furrowing his brows at the unexpected enemy, the old man swiftly pivoted, deftly evading a web shot towards him. With an agile rush, he closed in on the giant spider that had entered his senses. His sword cleaved through the air, slicing the spider into 2 halves with a single precise strike. Despite his advanced age, this village chief stood as the mightiest combatant within the Tonica village. The local militia had been trained under his tutelage, and his skill certainly did not lose out to them at all. Unfortunately, his adversaries were not limited to simple spiders. Step. 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 The old man remained vigilant, his sword held ready as his wise eyes swept the area in anticipation of approaching footsteps. Soon, the figures of his enemies appeared before him. There were 3 of them. On one side stood an unfamiliar mature woman with glasses and brown hair, her demeanor seemingly harmless, yet he sensed an underlying danger. Another figure was an elderly woman of his age, but her crimson gaze was unsettling. And finally, there stood an elderly man with a gray beard, donning a red hooded robe. The Tonica village chief recognized this man and his heart sank. "Disanasu, why?" Disanasu stared back at the village chief, a mischievous glimmer dancing in his eyes, as he replied in an emotionless tone, "Defeat us, and I'll tell you." Hearing these words, the Tonica village chief let out a weary sigh. Firmly raising his hands, clutching his sword to shoulder level, the blade pointed horizontally outwards toward his adversaries, the experienced old swordsman invited them with a firm resolve, "Koi." In the other corners of the village, the battle raged on, a swirling tempest of chaos. The guards fought valiantly, their blades gleaming amidst the swirling fog. They struck at the spiders, severing limbs and bodies, but their efforts seemed futile as for every spider they vanquished, 2 more emerged to take its place. To compound the danger, other grotesque insects joined the fray, each possessing unique and endless varieties of abilities. The guards fought on with unyielding determination, their spirits aflame, yet their strength waned under the relentless assault. As the insect army multiplied, even the courageous villagers emerged from their shelters to lend a hand, but their combined efforts proved inadequate in the face of the overwhelming onslaught. This was a war of attrition, with no end in sight. It was as if the enemy's sole objective was to drown them in sheer numbers. Adding to their despair, the enemy seemed to mock them, steadily ensnaring them one by one with intricate webs. "No Shizuru. Damn it. Why are there so many?" As the combatants watched their comrades being dragged away into the fog, a sense of despair overwhelmed them. Most of the militia had already vanished into the unknown, and their only beacon of hope, the village chief, had yet to make an appearance. The remaining fighters trembled with desperation, their will to resist slowly fading. But when they witnessed their own families being torn from their homes, consumed by a furious rage, they recklessly charged forward, intent on saving their loved ones. Tragically, they met the same fate as their fallen comrades, ensnared by the insidious webs. Amidst the chaos, the captain of the guard gasped for breath, standing amidst a mound of defeated spiders. Suddenly, his eyes dilated with resignation as he gazed upon the scene unfolding before him. A giant spider lugged its prey before him, before its limbs poised threateningly near them, its 8 eyes bearing an unsettling intelligence. What truly chilled the captain was the fact that the victims were his unconscious wife and children. The captain's sword slipped from his grasp, his voice a plea laced with desperation. "Please, don't hurt them." In the other battleground, the Tonica village chief knelt upon one knee, his sword serving as a support as he fought for each labored breath. His once white facial hair now bore the marks of his injuries, tainted by blood. But he pushed aside his pain, for there was no time to dwell on his wounds. With a resolute expression etched upon his face, he focused his gaze upon the 3 adversaries before him. Their bodies remained seemingly untouched by any visible injuries, despite his repeated attempts to slay them. Yet he knew the truth, he had already killed them multiple times, only to witness his foes freshly emerge from the enveloping fog. Drawing from his knowledge and experience, the village chief recognized the enemy's tactic, draining his strength through clones. It was a shameless assault, yet even the clones proved formidable adversaries for him with their uncanny methods of tiny strange insects and illusions. He knew his aged bones could withstand this onslaught for only so long. And lurking within the village were countless more enemies. Perhaps the villagers had already. However, through their exchange during battle, the village chief had come to comprehend the true orchestrators behind this ruthless attack. "Disanasu, it seems misfortune has already befallen him?" he muttered, seeking confirmation from his foe. His opponent offered no response, but the silence served as an affirmation. "What do you want?" "I will give it to you, as long as you let the villagers go," the Tonica village chief conceded, bowing his head in a gesture of submission. After a pregnant pause, the culprits finally spoke. "We want a village." Raising his head, the village chief's brow furrowed with confusion. Yet, his wise mind swiftly grasped the implications of their demand. Gripping his sword tightly with both hands, he raised it above his head, an act of surrender. "As long as you do not harm them, this old life shall be in your hands." Silence enveloped the scene, but the old man could sense the creatures scuttling around him. His dim eyes scanned his surroundings and beheld the approach of giant spiders. Instinct urged him to fight back, but the words from the mature woman, adorned with glasses and insect-like features, compelled him to hold his ground. "Do not worry, we will spare your lives," she assured him with an unsettling calm. Hearing this, the old man relinquished his final chance to fight for survival. He felt their fangs sink into his frail body, injecting a potent venom that paralyzed him and brought a heavy drowsiness. As his vision began to fade, his consciousness slipping away, he faintly caught the echo of her chilling words, "Oh! But perhaps death would have been a kinder fate." Chapter 138, Cruel Fate in the Lab. Kurenai's piercing crimson gaze moved across the screens, each one displaying the team of Kurina clones meticulously performing surgeries on the villagers delivered by the spiders. The process resembled an assembly line as explosive zergs were implanted into the unsuspecting victims. A subtle tremor passed through Kurenai's eyes as she voiced her concern. "Are you absolutely certain this method can't truly control them?" Seated nearby, Kurina had her eyes closed, seemingly unaffected by any remorse. Her response was calm and calculated, devoid of hesitation. Shino made it clear that we cannot resort to massacring the villages near our base. So, this is the optimal method left to us. Kurenai's expression remained impassive as she offered a cautionary warning, but we must not underestimate the means of ninjas or the complexity of the human heart. "Isn't this approach too risky?" Kurina slowly opened her eyes, a sly smile dancing upon her lips as she met Kurenai's gaze. "There will always be risks in every endeavor. However, I have already arranged gruesome punishments to deter any potential resistance and reduce the risk. And if there are still problems even then..." Kurina's tongue slid seductively across her lips, her eyes filled with a twisted longing as her voice took on a tone laced with a touch of madness. "Then, we just need to turn them all into biomass." Kurenai felt a chill course through her heart as she stared at Kurina. It was in this moment that she realized the woman who willingly submitted to Shino's every whim, like an infatuated girl, harbored a dangerous and deranged side within her. Was this the path she too would eventually tread? Sensing Kurenai's internal turmoil, Kurina's eyes flickered briefly before her demeanor returned to normal. Her hand reached out to caress Kurenai's face, offering a soothing reassurance. Fear not. No matter how crazy we may become in the future, we will forever remain Shino's obedient toys. Our existence revolves around pleasing him and ensuring his well-being. But if anything were to happen to Shino one day... Karina's features twisted, her voice chilling as it echoed through the lab. A world without my dear has no reason to exist. Don't you agree, my sister? As Kurenai absorbed Karina's words, a tempestuous emotion churned within her. Her primal instinct resonated with the dark sentiment, whispering her agreement. Yes. Such a world deserves to perish. Startled by her own proclamation, Kurenai felt a shock ripple through her being. Yet, instead of disgust, she found an odd sense of acceptance. The thought, which contradicted her original conscience, now felt strangely natural. Good. A gentle smile graced Karina's face as she closed her eyes once more. I will tie up the loose ends here, selecting sacrifices to serve as examples for the rest. While I do this, you can assist in the cleanup. Shino must be nearly finished by now. With a silent nod, Kurenai rose from her seat, bidding farewell to the lab and making her way towards the prison compound. As she stepped into the dimly lit prison and approached Yakumo's cell, a strange sensation enveloped her. The confines of the nearby cell seemed to shift and warp, transforming into a bustling Japanese restaurant. Her crimson gaze flickered, taking in the intricate details of the illusory domain. Unlike Shino's previous domain, the coverage now was only a small pocket around a cell in reality, but it had expanded into a vast dining establishment for those ensnared within its grasp. The manifestation of the powerful Genjutsu that Shino plundered from Yakumo was evident, showcasing the mastery he had achieved in manipulating and controlling it. Knowing full well that size doesn't mean everything, they had devised methods to adapt the domain's coverage, ensuring efficiency in combat situations of smaller scale. It would be too wasteful to employ a large domain to trap a single enemy, as it would be like nuking one champion with a field of hundreds of tea mushrooms. So, their focus now lay in refining the domain's power, compressing it to its limits in an attempt to grow the interior illusory world, and altering its shape to extend the domain's reach in reality. Through the optimized plans, Shino tirelessly practiced, honing his skills to achieve the ultimate goal, a domain that could extend like a strip, covering long distances within a confined area, allowing Shino's domain to capture enemies hiding far away and pull them into a vast illusory world. Truly, the power this bloodline limit granted was already formidable in Yakumo's hands, but in Shino's possession, it transformed into something far more dangerous. In many senses. And now, Shino was training his ability to compress the domain. With her keen Genjutsu mastery and her Zerg connection with Shino, Kurenai sensed his presence and approached the room. As she arrived, the sound of repetitive noises and gasps drifted from within, causing a blush to creep onto her face. However, she maintained her composure as she slid open the Japanese shoji door, casting her crimson gaze upon the scene before her. With measured steps, she entered the room and quietly closed the door behind her. Approaching the table, Kurenai's eyes swept over the masked Yakumo, who was sprawled against a wall nearby. She then directed her gaze downwards, locking eyes with the real Yakumo, a silent greeting passing between them. Yakumo's voice quivered as she spoke, addressing her teacher, Kurenai-sensei. No. Don't look. Silently, Kurenai settled herself into a graceful posture, folding her legs neatly beneath her. Her hand reached out, gently grasping Yakumo's hand, offering a wordless reassurance through her firm grip. Observing the scene, Shino's glasses seemed to glimmer as he quickened his pace, determined to complete the meal he had prepared. No. Not in front of Kurenai-sensei. Soon, with a low groan, he fed a portion of the meal to Yakumo before stepping back, allowing the remainder to settle on the tablecloth before him. In front of Kurenai-sensei. After admiring the sight momentarily, Shino turned his attention towards Kurenai, moving closer to her. So, Karina sent you to clean the dishes? He quipped. Kurenai looked up at him, nodding softly as she continued to comfort Yakumo with soothing gestures. Let me handle the rest, she assured her. Kurenai then slipped her hands out from Yakumo's firm grasp, letting Yakumo's hand hang limply as she shifted her body slightly, turning to the side. Shino's gaze remained fixed on Kurenai's red eyes as she parted her seductive red lips to report on the operation. Her tongue trailed from bottom to top before delving into the intricate details of the critical point of the mission. As he listened to his teacher's beautiful voice reporting to him, Shino's eyes briefly wandered to Yakumo, who stared at her teacher with a dazed expression. It was a sight that motivated him to delve deeper into the matter, uncovering the hidden details of the operation that Karina had already meticulously documented in the system database. Soon, Shino grasped the full extent of their accomplishment. While his command was to take care of Hacho village, Karina had gone beyond expectations, completing an additional long-term mission that was already logged in his to-do list. Tonica village was now also completely under their control. Of course, this achievement came at a cost. A significant number of their loyal Spider Clan members had been sacrificed, and unlike the resilient Zergs, the population of these insects would require some time to recover. But it was a sacrifice deemed worthwhile. Karina had seized control of the village, already devising strategies to access the tower, all while meticulously adhering to Shino's directive of avoiding a massacre that would draw external attention. And what she had accomplished now was not a mindless massacre, but a calculated form of deadly control. Each villager's life was intricately bound to the others, forcing them to comply to their demands. Until their dying breath. Though the villagers were still able to go about their normal daily lives, they now bore the heavy weight as accomplices who must assist in preserving their secret. Any breach would result in the punishment of the entire village. And Karina, ever prepared, had arranged a gruesome feast, complete with a blood-red balloon popping event, to educate these innocent villagers on the dire consequences of disobedience. I wonder if there are any foolish enough to drag everyone down with them. But it matters not. At most, it would be an interesting pastime show, Shino mused, his words devoid of sympathy or remorse. Despite his human origins, Shino understood that he had transformed into something entirely different. He was now a Zerg. In the vast cosmos, where the rule of the jungle and the dark forest theory prevailed, all those who were not the same race were enemies. Even beings of the same kind could become enemies in the face of interests. Plundering was the universal theme, and weakness was a sin. Even the Naruto world was not exempt from this reality, having been targeted by the Otsuki, a cosmic clan that cultivated trees to harvest worlds. However, this world was fortunate enough to have encountered someone like Kaguya, whose brain twitch led to the birth of her sons and her own sealing away by the very same sons. While this was a rare case, it showed that not all cosmic clans were inherently malevolent. But for the Zergs, who were born to be plunderers, all beings, even other Zergs if they existed, would inevitably turn against them and become enemies. Zergs could universally be labeled as a calamity. Therefore, as a Zerg, Shino had no time to concern himself with treating humans kindly. After all, his future would be bleak if he doesn't use all possible unscrupulous means to grow. He might not even make it to the ruthless cosmic stage if he worries about every tidbit. So, Karina's approach fully aligned with his own tastes. Of course, this didn't mean he would recklessly exterminate all humans. Humans were still valuable resources in his eyes. There were still countless geniuses and beauties that he could assimilate to bolster the power of his own hive. And to achieve this goal, his own power had to grow accordingly, especially now that he had embraced his role as a full-time villain. Obtaining this ancient superweapon is just one of many steps. Its usability remains uncertain, but I won't be foolish enough to utilize it until I understand the consequences. After all, there are too many examples in stories regarding villains who capsize their own ship due to recklessly employing weapons without understanding the backlash of its usage, Shino contemplated as he stared at the sparse data of the tower that Karina had acquired from the mind of the Tonica village chief. The purpose of the tower is unclear, but it is evident that it is not of this world. Its true function remains unknown. It may even secretly serve as a beacon for an alien civilization. Although I crave strength, caution will always be my creed unless circumstances force my hand. Oh. Shino cast a brief glance down at Kurenai, who diligently completed her report. And of course, some crooked thoughts can sometimes get in the way, but it is also a welcome distraction. After all, he acknowledged the importance of certain habits in maintaining his emotions. Without such habits, he risked becoming an emotionless overlord consumed solely by the desire to devour the universe, potentially losing himself in the process and forsaking the valuable memories of his previous life, memories that could help him avoid predictable, cliché death flags. As Kurenai savored the final morsel of the dessert he had prepared, Shino praised her, his fingers gently brushing against her alluring red lips. Good job, Kurenai-sensei, he commended, entrusting her with the ongoing tasks at hand. I'll leave it to you here. With a swift turn, the bright and vibrant restaurant gradually faded away, replaced by the somber atmosphere of a dimly lit and well-furnished prison cell. The figure of the masked Yakumo, once leaning against a wall, vanished as Shino departed. But, Yakumo lay sprawled on the cold table, only finding solace in Kurenai's comforting embrace. Her gaze remained fixated on her teacher, her voice laden with exhaustion as she inquired, Kurenai-sensei, how much longer must I continue doing this? Kurenai hesitated for a moment, her red lips quivering slightly as she brought the spilled remnants of the meal towards Yakumo's lips. With a touch of bitterness in her voice, she assured, Sensei would never harm you, Yakumo. Sensei can do it, so can you. Eat more, don't let it go to waste. It's good for you. A sensation of helplessness coursed through Yakumo, her body trembling slightly as a solitary tear trailed down her cheek. In silence, she obediently lapped up the leftovers. Strolling in the corridor outside, Shino's eyes were fixed on the captivating broadcast, purposefully displayed by Karina. A chuckle escaped his lips as he sensed his recovery thanks to Karina's assistance. Damn Karina, you can't even let it rest for a moment, can you? He mused aloud. But perhaps after everything is over. The next event. I must participate to ensure nothing goes awry. After all, up next will be the White Zetsu Crush event. Chapter 139, Zetsu Collapse in the Abandoned Mines of the Mountains Graveyard. A strange, unique white Zetsu, his face creased like a whirlpool, strutted through the hidden underground base with an air of confidence and boredom. The dimly lit corridors echoed with each step he took, the sound reverberating off the cold stone walls. He had always enjoyed his solitary walks, relishing in the power and secrets that surrounded him. Tonight was no different. Ah! When will my good friend take me out? I really want to see how pooing works. As the lonely Swirly ventured deeper into the base, an eerie sensation suddenly enveloped him. A slight tremble rippled through the base as the atmosphere became heavy, almost suffocating, as if the very air itself was holding its breath. Moments later, a strong, continuous rumble echoed through the base, shaking the very foundation as Swirly's white arm transformed into wood, embedding itself into the rocky wall as he tried to stabilize himself. What is happening? In the heart of the underground complex, a massive underwater cavern stretched out below the base. It was a hidden world, untouched and concealed from the prying eyes of the outside world. However, at this moment, an abyssal hole had been opened up beneath this cavern. The previous subterranean layer supporting the underwater lake was hollowed out, and now the underwater cavern collapsed, sending shockwaves through the base. The ground quaked violently, fissures snaking through the once stable earth. The water from the lake drained through the collapsing cavern, exposing the hidden horrors that lurked within the lake. The White Zetsu, a strange and grotesque manifestation of twisted human flesh, emerged from the depths with their distorted faces and contorted limbs. Their awakening was but a dance of agony and despair. The Zetsu thrashed and flailed, their muffled cries lost amidst the chaos of rushing water. As the water gushed downwards, they sank further into the abyss, their bodies smashing into a twisted mess deep below or crushed by the weight of the rushing water affected by gravity. Rubbles from the collapsing cavern also contributed to their demise as the natural force of nature wreaked havoc amidst the thousands of white Zetsu. Above, Swirly hung on the rocky walls frozen, unable to tear his gaze away from the gruesome spectacle. The twisted face of this Zetsu twisted further in pain and confusion, its eyes wide with shock. 1, 2, 3. Guru. So many. Someone will be very mad. But the horrors did not end there. As the last remnants of the underwater lake disappeared into the abyss and formed a new deep underwater sinkhole, the still living corpses of the Zetsu struggled to move, their distorted limbs twitching and jerking in unnatural ways. The ground trembled once more, but this time, it was not from the collapse. From the depths of the earth beneath the water, giant zergs emerged, their chittering mandibles hungry for flesh. They burrowed out of the ground and entered the water, their beady eyes fixated on the struggling Zetsu. The zergs wasted no time, their sharp pincers tearing into the broken bodies, gnawing at the remaining flesh. Some larger zergs even devoured its prey whole, burrowing back into the ground and escaping with its bounty. Many of the less damaged white Zetsu mustered the strength to fight back. Their twisted limbs transformed into wood, flailing in a desperate attempt to hold their ground, to push back the encroaching tide, but the sheer quantity of their enemies gradually overwhelmed them. After all, without the chakra of the tailed beasts, the Zetsu army had yet to reach its peak strength of 100,000 members. And the suddenness of the ambush had shattered their cohesion, decimating most of their combat effectiveness. This moment, this critical juncture, was not their apex. Now, they found themselves outmatched, outmaneuvered by a merciless foe who exploited their vulnerabilities with precision. Amidst the tumultuous scene, Swirly, unable to witness the events unfolding beneath the water's surface, still received the signals transmitted by his fellow compatriots, the echoes of their distress reaching him, piercing through the haze of his trance, allowing realization to wash over him. An enemy attack. Eek. What should I do? What should Guru do? As he worked in place, Swirly's voice trailed off, his thoughts racing as he recalled the appearances of their strange enemies sent back by his perished compatriots. Could they be? His words hung in the air, a fragment of curiosity and uncertainty. Staring into the abyss below, Swirly's mind whirled with possibilities. Could they be creatures with normal bodily functions? He mused aloud, his voice laced with excitement. Should I go ask them what it feels like to poo? However, before Swirly could consider further, the battle reached its abrupt conclusion. The currents of the once tumultuous lake gradually settled, leaving a sense of stillness in its wake. Swirly, scratching his bald white head, stood on the wooden platform he had constructed for himself, taking in the aftermath. They left? He remarked, a tinge of disappointment seeping into his tone. Ah, but the original is here. In that very moment, Zetsu in his Akatsuki uniform burst forth from a nearby wall, barely halting his momentum before he could plummet into the abyss below. Zetsu's gaze shifted, fixating on the gaping hole in the ground, where only the robust roots of the demonic statue of Outer Path remained untouched by the chaos, successful in safeguarding only a few white Zetsu. With an ugly, distorted face contorted by anger, Zetsu growled towards Swirly. Guruguru, what happened? Swirly, undeterred by Zetsu's hostility, began a little dance, his hands gesturing animatedly as his body twisted around. Edo. He started, his words accompanied by his wavy movements. So, I was taking my daily walk. Get to the point. Zetsu's hoarse voice growled, impatience lacing his words. Swirly nodded rapidly, his gestures becoming more pronounced. Well, a giant deep hole appeared, just like the ones needed for defecating, and everyone went whoosh whoosh into it. Is this the so-called toilet? His words held a mix of innocence and curiosity, as if pondering the absurdity of it all. Guruguru. Zetsu roared, his frustration escalating as white Zetsu detached from his body, diving into the walls and heading downward, ready to investigate the mysterious depths that had swallowed the others to confirm the intermittent signal of distress he received. And soon, the pieces of the puzzle began to align. White Zetsu merged back with Black Zetsu, the weariness evident on the latter's face as he confronted Swirly, his patience waning. So, what did you find? He inquired, his voice tinged with a mixture of annoyance and anticipation. A message, White Zetsu growled, his frown deepening as he recalled the words engraved on the rocky wall submerged beneath the water's surface. A message from. He paused, leaving the answer hanging in the air. From who? Black Zetsu's eyes narrowed, his mind already swirling with possibilities. Is it that boy? Hints of suspicion beginning to form in his mind. Blood for blood, eat shit snitch, White Zetsu retorted with a sneer, his voice laced with disdain. Who else could it be? Swirly's voice chimed in, brimming with an innocent curiosity. Can I really eat? Shut up. Zetsu growled in unison, their impatience resounding in their synchronized response. The gravity of the situation settled upon them, the weight of revenge and the revelation of their hidden base leaking to their enemies. It's retaliation for our leaking of his base, isn't it? White Zetsu mused aloud, his voice tinged with a sense of concern. But how did he find this place? Black Zetsu's eyes narrowed further, his mind racing to uncover the answers they desperately sought. Right now, we should not worry about his revenge, or how he found this place, he hissed, visibly troubled by the turn of events. We should worry if he had seen the statue. A furrow formed on White Zetsu's brow as he contemplated the implications. He shouldn't know what it is, right? He pondered aloud, his voice tinged with uncertainty. Black Zetsu fell into a contemplative silence, his thoughts consumed by the potential dangers ahead. Remember what I said, that there may be a variable that could threaten our plan? He posed the question, his voice heavy with conviction. White Zetsu hesitated, his response laced with trepidation. Is that the reason why you demanded to take drastic action instead of sending an invitation? A low chuckle escaped Black Zetsu's distorted lips, a chilling sound that echoed through the cavern. No, it was just a method to push him away from Hidden Leaf Village before inviting him, he explained, a sinister grin stretching across his face. But precisely because of this event, now my feeling has been confirmed. That boy is a variable, a danger. He can no longer exist. He, White Zetsu chortled, the sound carrying an unsettling tone, as he communicated with his compatriots. That Aburim boy believes himself to be smart, but taking our White Zetsu alive is the worst mistake he could make. Black Zetsu's grin widened, a malevolent glint in his eyes. That may not be enough, he mused, his voice dripping with sinister intent. Tell him about this. He needs to relocate the base, and we may need his help to locate that boy. It will also be a test, to see if he is truly capable of carrying out Madar's will. As Zetsu's chilling laughter reverberated within the cavern, he slowly sunk back into the walls, leaving behind an eerie silence. Standing alone on the small wooden platform he had erected, Swirly pointed to his own swirl-patterned face, a sense of uncertainty and vulnerability in his eyes. He asked, to no one in particular, what about me? Sitting comfortably on the leathery sofa within the lounge of their new core, Shino let out a sigh of relief as the operation concluded successfully. Although it was a bit unexpected that Tobizetsu is there, thankfully, there were no accidents, he remarked, his voice tinged with satisfaction. If Tobizetsu had utilized his wood style to delay us during those crucial moments, we might have faced a full-blown confrontation with Zetsu himself. Although it was just some zergs, losing an army of that size would have been quite painful. Well done, Karina, for coordinating everything flawlessly. As she released the wood, Karina pouted playfully, lifting her gaze to meet Shino's. Humphrey, And here I thought my dear was too busy training our caged bird to remember my hard work, she teased, a mischievous glint in her eyes, mixed with some jealousy. Chuckling, Shino gently pulled Karina up onto his lap, letting her legs straddle his as his hands gently caressed her black stockings. And despite her jealousy, Karina catered to him, discreetly slipping the wood she had prepared into its rightful place. As he felt the warm connection between them, Shino's smile grew wider as he traced his finger along Karina's lips, his touch tender and affectionate. No need to be jealous of them, Karina, he whispered softly. You can give me something special that they can't. And what might that be, my dear? Karina's voice was filled with desire, her hot breath caressing his face as she leaned in closer, their breaths mingling. Shino didn't need to reply. Words were unnecessary as their lips met in a passionate kiss, their tongues intertwining in a fervent dance. The bond between them grew stronger, their connection deepening and tightening with each passing moment. Finally, Shino employed one of the Naruto techniques he had yearned for, wood style. As they separated, gasping for breath, Karina nestled into Shino's embrace, her cheeks flushed with excitement. She whispered into his ear, my dear, should we arrange for our newly bred army to return to the base with some white zetsu so that we can study the true potential of wood style? Shino raised an eyebrow, intrigued by the proposition. Didn't some white zetsu infiltrate that army? He asked. Yes, but their feeble attempts at disguising themselves couldn't fool my discerning eyes, Karina explained, her voice filled with confidence. Although they replicated the appearance and abilities of our Zerg perfectly, they lack the crucial connection to the Zerg network. Despite blending in perfectly with our Zerg army, it was easy to identify and isolate them from the rest of the army. Shall I turn them into biomass, my dear? Shino pondered the situation for a moment, his grin turning sly. No need to turn them into biomass just yet, he declared. Since they are so eager to serve as lackeys, let them be the vanguard in our next raid. After all, if we want the true wood style quickly, we can't avoiding paying a visit to good old Uncle Snake now, can we? Chapter 140. Thank you Uncle Snake. Deep within the land of the grass, nestled near the hidden grass village, a concealed underground hideout lay hidden beneath an imposing formation of rocks. The dimly lit chambers within housed secrets of immense importance, guarded by a colossal coiled snake statue adorned with flickering candlelight in its eyes. Silence enveloped the hideout, its owner absent from home. Countless sealing techniques were meticulously employed to shield the hideout from detection, yet even such elaborate measures proved futile against the relentless search of the Zergs. Burrowing through the earth, repetitive carpet searches in the confirmed general area allowed them to easily locate these hidden bases. And now, these ruthless invaders infiltrated the base, scouring every nook and cranny for valuable resources and coveted research data. Amongst the ranks of these marauding creatures lurked a handful of disguised white zetsu, their sinister intentions concealed beneath their borrowed appearances. Diligently, they shadowed the Zergs, who departed with the important research scroll safely stored within their bellies. The white zetsu probably hoped that by following these Zergs, they would ultimately be led to the mastermind's main stronghold. Unbeknownst to the white zetsu, the Zerg's true purpose did not involve physically returning the research data. After all, the mastermind merely required scanning the information into their vast database, while a genetic material held the true value. Yet, the Zergs had been skillfully manipulated into carrying the data away, creating a smokescreen that would inexorably guide the white zetsu towards predetermined destinations, a meticulously laid trap designed to ensnare the unsuspecting pawns in the mastermind's sinister schemes. Within yet another secret underground hideout, an experimental laboratory brimmed with large glass cylinders containing mysterious liquids. Unlike the previous instance of infiltration, transport Zergs emerged, parting their gaping jaws to release their occupants. If a certain Black Hand was here, he would be surprised because the majority of these occupants bore an uncanny resemblance to white zetsu, while one stood out distinctly as zetsu donning his Akatsuki garb. However, to those with the wisdom beyond the fourth wall, the true culprits should be clear by now. These transformed clones stealthily infiltrated the base, diligently retrieving the invaluable research data. Meanwhile, inside one of the glass cylinders, a transparent humanoid composed of water opened its eyes. Since you're here, would you mind releasing me? He inquired. However, the squad of zetsu paid no heed to Suigetsu's plea, continuing their silent duties without acknowledgement. Regardless of Suigetsu's attempts to persuade them, his words fell on deaf ears. As for bringing Suigetsu back, while his liquid form ability possessed certain merits, it also bore evident weaknesses. The power to transform into water proved tasteless to those of substantial strength, and at most, his genetic material held some passing interest. However, obtaining his gene data directly from Suigetsu presented a challenge as without sealing chains, the risk of his potential escape loomed. And the masterminds deemed it wasn't worth risking their main bodies for his genes. Luckily, there were ready-made alternatives in the lab, courtesy of Uncle Snake's experiments. Since this was the case, releasing Suigetsu would achieve nothing more than causing some complications for Orochimaru, and it would not serve the interests of the mastermind orchestrating this Zerg invasion. Instead, allowing Suigetsu to report back might potentially yield favorable effects. After successfully archiving the vital data within the hidden research base, the clones discreetly departed the lab, leaving behind Suigetsu's furious shouts and empty threats of informing Orochimaru about their activities. "Well, please do." Naturally, the concealed scroll detailing the summoning of the Shinigami behind a false wall was not overlooked. Upon locating the secret chamber, a Zerg was dispatched to retrieve the scroll. As an experienced treasure hunter, the mastermind ensured no stone was left unturned. And this wasn't the end. The scouting prowess of the swarm should never be underestimated, for their favorite activity lay in the art of excavation and tunneling. After months of searching, many bases had been marked, awaiting their day of reckoning. And this day has arrived. So, simultaneously, a sweeping search unfolded across numerous countries, as hidden bases were scoured meticulously, some ruthlessly looted while others were left undisturbed after data extraction. Meanwhile, in the Land of Sound, a substantial portion of the Zerg army, birthed from the harvest of White Zetsu, embarked on a relentless campaign, raiding the multitude of Orochimaru's covert bases scattered throughout the region. Unlike the ones in other countries, these hidden research laboratories, teeming with experimental subjects and those bearing the cursed seal, stood as formidable fortresses, guarded with unwavering loyalty. Nevertheless, the Zergs fearlessly clashed head-on, their vanguard sacrificing themselves to gather the invaluable genetic material from these test subjects, simultaneously stalling for time to facilitate the acquisition of research data. Once their objectives were fulfilled, the Zergs swiftly retreated into the subterranean depths, vanishing from sight as they set their sights on the next destination. And during the ensuing chaos and destruction, some corpses of White Zetsus were left strewn in the raided bases, a gift and a pit. It may not fool Orochimaru, but implanting even the smallest suspicion may be enough. Despite the chaos that unfolded across Orochimaru's numerous bases, one particular stronghold remained eerily calm, untouched by the tumultuous events that engulfed the rest. This sanctuary surpassed the others in grandeur and size, and it was known as the Northern Hideout. Within the fortified walls of this hideout lay one of Orochimaru's most significant cursed seal human experiment sites, distinguished by the unique presence of Jago, the origin of the cursed seal itself. Here, in the depths of this experimental facility, a delicate operation unfolded, orchestrated by the mastermind of the infiltrating Zergs with utmost discretion. The bugs stealthily infiltrated the base, silently neutralizing the personnel without alerting the dangerous Jago. This wasn't a brutal onslaught, rather, it was a calculated display of lethal precision executed by tiny yet deadly Kashu insects. While Jago remained the primary focus, the Kashu deliberately avoided targeting him as the masterminds wanted him alive. But, preventative measures still had to be taken. So, once the initial obstacles had been eliminated, the true power of the infestation pit, long left dormant, was unleashed. The unleashed swarm disseminated throughout the base, spreading a powerful plague, the very embodiment of horror. Though potent, the plague would likely not prove fatal to someone of Jago's formidable physique. However, its purpose lay in weakening him, ensuring that escape would be an insurmountable challenge should negotiations take an unfavorable turn. Jago, who was huddling within his comfort zone, a dark cell, clad in a plain pale blue shirt and green shorts, appeared oblivious to the events unfolding outside. Or perhaps he possessed a sense of the encroaching danger, yet he chose not to bother with the presence of the intruders. Even as the trail of insects slithered into his cell, he remained unmoved, his face concealed by his spiky orange hair, buried in his knees. Chained at his knee by a prison cuff attached with a weighty metal ball, Jago sat in stoic silence, his tall, muscular frame exuding an aura of resignation. He awaited his day of reckoning, the day he would be cured. And on this fateful day, the devil himself appeared before Jago, offering him a glimmer of hope. "Do you want to be cured?" The question piqued Jago's interest, prompting him to slowly raise his head, his dull, red-orange eyes fixating on the young man donning a black trench coat before him. Seeing nothing particularly extraordinary about the man, Jago calmly remarked, "You don't look like a doctor or a scientist." Chuckling softly, the man known as Kano replied, "Of course not. Because I am neither. Name's Kano, and I am merely a greedy individual hunting for power." "Power? There is none of that here," Jago responded in a placid tone, his gaze now lowered, his interest waning. Kano's smile widened as he continued, undeterred. "Oh, we both know the truth of that answer. And allow me to inform you that your current physician will remain busy for an extended period, training his new body, and it is improbably that he would come to cure you anytime soon. So, perhaps you would be willing to hear me out?" Hearing no reply, Kano continued, you see, my ability is a bit special. It allows me to do an interesting thing. I can deprive the power of others. After a moment of silence, a flicker of hope stirred within Jugo as he understood the implications, causing his body to tremble slightly. Slowly, he raised his head, fixing his gaze upon Kano, his eyes filled with a mix of hope and skepticism. Can your ability truly strip away any power? A sly smile danced upon Kano's lips as he replied, indeed, any power, including your unique capacity to absorb natural energy and the accompanying wrath it brings. After a protracted silence, Jugo's voice grew resolute, a hint of unease seeping through. And what is the price? With a snicker, Kano responded, the death of the victim. Jugo's interest waned, his head lowering as an ominous aura emanated from his body. So, you are after my power? Ha ha ha. A chilling laugh reverberated within the confines of the cell as Kano retorted, no need to grow angry just yet. I haven't finished speaking. Death is not the sole outcome if we take the necessary precautions. The disquieting aura surrounding Jugo seemed perturbed as he locked his fierce gaze onto Kano. What do you mean? Precisely as you suspect. Through extensive research, I have devised a set of safe procedures to strip individuals of their power. Once plundered, the victim may still live, but unfortunately, their existence will be reduced to that of a mere normal human. It's a pity, isn't it? In this day and age, nobody desires to live an ordinary life, Kano explained. Before he could finish his words, a powerful force gripped his shoulder, slamming him against the cell wall. I do, Jugo's hoarse voice resounded, his body trembling with restrained excitement as he stared at Kano, attempting to quell his emotions. Kano's smile remained sly as he adjusted his glasses. Would you believe a stranger so easily? What if I am lying? Jugo's hands trembled as he spoke with a mixture of uncertainty and determination, even though I don't know who you truly are, but if you wanted to kill me, I'm afraid I can't even leave this place alive. So, I'm sure you can keep my other side in check, and if your words are indeed genuine, I am willing to take the chance. I simply wish to live. To live a normal life. And I am willing to devote my life to the one who can cure me. Chuckling, Kano replied, it's good to hear that. However, I have no need for a mere ordinary person under my command, but I also have a method to grant you power after your treatment. If you so desire. And, you can also share the details of Uncle Snake's experiments with me later. I am interested in a first-person account. Let it be your payment. Uncle Snake? Jugo questioned, a hint of confusion crossing his face. Orochimaru. Think of it as my respect for him. But enough about that. Let's go. The sooner we complete the process, the sooner you can begin your new life. Oh, and you will also have a chance to meet someone else who is now leading a rather nourishing life after being deprived of her powers, Kano replied, waving his hand to summon a gaping mouth of a transport drone from the ground. It's a biological creature we bred through our research, used for transportation. Kano then gestured politely towards the entrance, after you. A flicker of curiosity danced in Jugo's eyes, accompanied by a glimmer of hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, he might finally find be cured this time. On their way to the meticulously prepared hideout he had prepared to cage Jugo, Kano continued his persuasive efforts, striving to gain Jugo's trust. To alleviate the worries plaguing the cowardly Jugo's mind, Kano even conceded to Jugo's request to meet the evidence of the previous success story. Soon, led by Kano, Jugo found himself entering a strange facility, where Yakumo was already awaiting, accompanied by a clone of Kurenai. Kano gestured towards Yakumo, introducing her to Jugo. This is the survivor of our previous success. Yakumo, please share your experience with our new friend. As Yakumo stood before Jugo, a slight tremor coursed through her body under Kano's piercing gaze. And with a resolute stare fixed upon the muscular Jugo, Yakumo began reciting the prepared script, her voice seemingly calm and collected. As she neared the end of her rehearsed lines, Kano nodded slightly towards Kurenai, preparing to send Yakumo away. But suddenly, a twist of fate unfolded, catching Kano off guard and causing his expression to change. Yakumo's voice trembled with desperation as she deviated from the script, her desperate plea echoing through the biosphere, "Save me." Chapter 141, Sage Mode acquired in an external biosphere. Shino slowly released his clenched jaws, allowing Jugo's tall, fragile form to crumple to the ground. Stepping back, he opened his eyes, a fierce glint flashing in them as an intense rage boiling within them. As Shino's once black hair transformed into a fiery orange hue, and his body contorted and shifted, his hand wriggled abnormally and soon morphed into a monstrous, purplish claw. A deep growl escaped Shino's lips as he felt the twinge of pain coursing through his deforming body. It wasn't long before a grotesque fleshy wing grew out from his back. As his vision was dyed blood red, muffled screams vaguely reached Shino's ears as he felt the anger overwhelm him, But before he could succumb entirely to the transformation, Shino, deactivate it, Karina's urgent voice roared in his mind, piercing through his anger and awakening him and jolting him into action. Shino's eyes gleamed with clarity and determination as he forcibly deactivated his newfound ability. As his hair gradually reverted to its original black shade and his body returned to its human form, Shino gradually regained control over his physical appearance. Meanwhile, swarms of bugs crawled all over his body, absorbing the lingering remnants of the new energy, solidifying into petrified stone before peeling away from him. Collapsing to the ground with a relieved sigh, Shino felt the last traces of the energy fade away. So, that was natural energy, he muttered, assessing the newfound strength coursing through his body. After the evolution of his body into a true Zerg life form, his enhanced physique could already compare to normal Jonians. Now, combined with the assimilation of Jago's powerful physique, it was unknown what level of strength he has reached. Shino. Karina's voice filled with concern reached Shino's ears as she circled around him, inspecting him closely. Are you alright, Shino? I almost thought no problem, Karina. As he got up, Shino reassured her with a lax tone. Controlling natural energy is more challenging than expected. But when it's deactivated, it's simply like turning off sage mode. No harm done. Haha, his laughter carried a tinge of humor, an attempt to downplay Karina's worries. Karina's expression grew frustrated as she poked Shino's chest repetitively, warning him, her voice laced with anger. Ha! This isn't the time for jokes, Shino. I've noticed hints of this when you absorbed Yakumo, and now it's confirmed. The more bloodlines you assimilate, the higher the risk of losing control of your emotions and body. We should study these risks before absorbing any more bloodlines. Wrapping his hand around her waist, Shino pulled Karina close, planting a gentle kiss on her forehead. Okay. I understand your concern, but I assure you, I'll be fine. And you know I won't be absorbing any more bloodlines anytime soon. After all, with the creation function's passive ability to safely strengthen me for every new gene we accumulate, there's no need to take risks like this. It's just that Jago was an exceptional case. It was a necessary boost for both my physique and abilities. After all, his powers perfectly complements my Zerg mutation from absorbing your Uzumaki bloodline. The power of devouring is a perfect match for a Zerg Dominator, so the more, the merrier. Don't you agree? Humphrey, Karina pouted with exasperation as she cast a glance at the unconscious Jago, his life sustained by the appendages attached to him. Shino, are you really going to let him live? He poses a risk and may leak some of our secrets. Stroking Karina's head affectionately, Shino nodded in affirmation. Indeed, it is a promise I made. Despite being a scummy villain, I won't go back on my word in some things. Karina giggled mischievously, recalling stories from the system database. Huh, you promised not to kill him, but are you letting me do it for you instead? Playfully knocking Karina on the head, Shino shook his head. No, Karina. I wasn't joking, and I certainly won't resort to cliché lines like that. From the very beginning, I never intended to take his life, and that remains true now. Perhaps it is my genuine intentions that helped me gain his trust. Reflecting on the events unfolding in both reality and the original story, Shino continued, after all, we shouldn't underestimate Jago. His senses are remarkably sharp, and in the story, he can even detect Sasuke's killing intent. If I harbored ill will towards him, he might have detected it and activated his sage transformation to unleash havoc. Then, things would truly be troublesome, especially with Yakumo causing trouble, almost ruining my plan. Fortunately, despite his gentle nature, Jago chose to believe in us after confirming the truth of my power to deprive Yakumo of her abilities. Since he placed his trust in me, I won't forsake him. So, we're really letting him go? Karina muttered, her lips curling with dissatisfaction. Yes, Karina, Shino responded with determination. However, a sly smile crept across his face. Of course, we must take necessary precautions. Let's give him an implant. If any information leaks, then we'll consider a more permanent solution. Karina giggled and nodded. As expected of my dear, I knew you couldn't simply let him off so easily. Alright, I'll have one of my clones take care of it. Let's return to the base. And Karina's voice turned sultry as she pressed herself against Shino's arm, whispering into his ear, on our way back, let Karina perform a thorough inspection of my dear's body. After another discreet journey on the Overlord to avoid detection, Shino and Karina finally returned to the safety of their own base. Due to his lapse of control over his newfound prowess, Shino had to support the weakened Karina, guiding her towards the plushy sofa in their lounge. Karina, it seems you'll need to find a way to upgrade yourself in the future, or else you won't be able to handle it all alone, Shino teased with a sly grin as he playfully squeezed her, letting her lean into his embrace on the couch. Blushing, Karina licked her lips, her eyes filled with affection. But I don't need to handle it alone, Shino. Leaning closer to him, your warm breath tickling his ear, Karina whispered, with your enhanced strength and stamina, perhaps we can seek a couple more concubines for you. How does that sound, Shino-sama? Shino gazed at Karina with deep eyes as he playfully pinched her face. The jealous little goblin actually wants me to find more? Even if I'm jealous. As long as it's your desire, I am willing to do anything for you, Shino, Karina declared, holding Shino's face gently, but, I also want to request my dear to agree to a proposal. Oh? What proposal do you have in mind? Shino asked, intrigued. A mischievous smile graced Karina's face as she glanced toward the lounge door, where Kurenai had just entered. Perhaps it's better for her to persuade you in person. Shino's gaze shifted to Kurenai, who walked in with a flushed face. Raising an eyebrow, his eyes wandered to the sake cup she held in her hand. You know I don't drink wine, Kurenai. With a calm facade, Kurenai slightly swirled the cup as she replied. It's not for you, Shino. Gracefully sitting on the ground and tucking her legs beneath her body, Kurenai chugged the remaining sake, letting a couple droplets trail down her fair neck. After placing them gently on the ground, she locked her red gaze onto Shino and began to slowly crawl towards him. Moments later, Shino detected the faint scent of wine as he found himself gazing down at Kurenai, who was testing his newfound strength in her own unique way. Oh. Kurenai-sensei, you've been awfully active lately. Why is that? Kurenai didn't answer, her tongue deliriously rolling around as if intoxicated by the sake. Soon, she slithered upward before swiftly bringing her head down, testing the limits of her alcohol tolerance. Shino's eyes narrowed slightly as he glanced at Karina, silently seeking an explanation. Karina giggled and leaned back to watch the spectacle unfold. My dear, we can discuss everything once you've enjoyed this special service. So, Shino shifted his gaze back to Kurenai, his curiosity brewing within him. What are these two hiding from him? After a long lecture, Shino observed his tired teacher as she languidly wrapped her bandages around her legs and secret garden, where his fertilizer overflowed. His voice filled with contentment due to his newly gained sage mode, Shino playfully remarked, as expected of Kurenai-sensei. No wonder you can keep the man from the Sarutobi clan from attracting all sorts of bees and butterflies. So, tell me, what is it that you desire? Kurenai paused in her movements, her crimson gaze fixed on Shino in silence. Sensing her hesitation, Shino already had an inkling of what she wanted. His voice remained calm as he deeply stared into Kurenai's eyes. Even though it didn't succeed in the end, she still disrupted my plans and the seed of betrayal is already clear. I know what you've been doing, but even if you give your share to Yakumo, without my permission, she can't be a part of us. So, give me a reason why I should tolerate her. Kurenai bowed her head, her voice steady as she replied, she can be of use. Convince me, Shino asserted firmly, leaning back on the couch and coiling his arm around Karina's waist. He stared down at Kurenai with a playful smile, waiting for her response. But Kurenai remained silent. Why aren't you saying anything? Shino asked knowingly, a touch of mockery in his tone. Is it because you also recognize that she doesn't hold much value apart from her trivial tricks? Her bloodline limit has been drained, and her weak resolve doesn't make her suitable to be a ninja. Her talent in Ganjutsu is redundant when both you and I possess those skills. As for her painting abilities, the eye-generated art from the system is superior and faster, and our bug printing system eliminates the need for traditional painting. So, what other useful talent does she possess? Kurenai continued to remain silent, her head bowing even lower. Please, she pleaded softly. Shino's eyes narrowed slightly as he stared down at Kurenai, lifting her chin to force her to meet his gaze. Although I enjoy indulgence, I haven't stooped so low as to think solely with my lower body. Without any practical value, she is not worth being assimilate. So, since she desires freedom, I have decided to release her from her suffering, cleanly. Letting her off so easily was also in consideration of your feelings. Are you not satisfied? Do not test my patience, Kurenai. Kurenai's body trembled slightly, tears welling up in her eyes as she weakly pleaded, please, Shino. As Kurenai lowered her head submissively, testing his patience with her persuasion skills, a hint of anger surged within Shino, but before he could speak, Karina's gentle hand soothed him, and she chimed in, my dear, we were already aware of the risks before we took action. There's no need to be angered by such trivial matters. Suppressing his anger, Shino looked at Karina with a mix of confusion and relief. It was unusual for her not to be on his side. Are you also siding with the outsider? Karina shook her head, playfully twirling her finger on Shino's chest as she replied, my dear, you know that I always consider your best interests in all my decisions. This time, I simply thought it would be a waste to let her find rest so easily for what she has done. So, I have a proposal, one that can recycle waste and benefit you, my dear. With a hint of interest, Shino focused his gaze on Karina. Oh? What grand plan have you cooked up this time, Karina? Chapter 142, Self-Help in Karina's lab. Shino surveyed the array of holographic screens before him, displaying the live feeds from Orochimaru's visited bases and the white Zetsu scattered among his own army. He furrowed his brow and inquired, any signs of Uncle Snake or Zetsu discovering our location? Karina, diligently working on the final adjustments to their operations, responded, no, Shino. The white Zetsu are still wandering aimlessly, driven by our Zerg army which we will never recall. The traces of Akatsuki Zetsu has been lost, but I had already arranged some of our Bakushu to discreetly mark his scent when he went to check on our return gift. Unfortunately, we can only acquire general direction of his whereabouts due to his fast traveling, and can only use our prediction model to analyze his location. As for Orochimaru, his current physical condition makes it unlikely that he will pose a significant threat to us. Shino mused. Continue monitoring. We cannot underestimate the villains in this world, especially Uncle Snake, who has managed to survive into the Boruto era, and was even whitewashed. Since we've offended him this time, it's always better to be aware of his movements and prepare ourselves in advance. Although we know his weakened soul is susceptible to Genjutsu, and with my new Genjutsu domain, I am less fearful of him, but the boat can still capsize if he successfully ambushes me when my Genjutsu domain is inactive. Even though I now possess its origin within me, I certainly don't want his cursed seal on me. After all, we still can't fully comprehend the cursed seal's origins due to the lack of data. Although we plundered a lot of research data this time, the most crucial parts are probably still kept in Uncle Snake's brain. Shino let his worries flow out as Kurenai diligently accepted it in silence. Karina observed this with interest as she reassured Shino, don't worry, Shino. As your Genjutsu powers undergo an upgrade, I will diligently monitor around the clock and promptly notify you of any intrusions. Zetsu can't deal with us alone, and the anti-Obito plan is already prepared. As for Orochimaru, even if he does appear, we still have Kurenai, don't we? Shino directed his gaze towards Kurenai, who knelt patiently with her mouth slightly ajar, awaiting his permission to speak. With a gentle stroke of her head, he watched as she swallowed in anticipation before she calmly declared, if the Sannin shows up, I will do my best to hold him off, Shino. Nodding in approval, Shino observed Kurenai as she began her cleaning duties, his mind wandering as his thoughts settled upon another threat. Shino knew if he was willing to pay a heavy price, his current Zerg army could fight a war of attrition with the ninjas, and even drag the high-end combatants to death. But, as long as this man exists, he could render all his efforts futile with his perfect summoning, impure world reincarnation. So, Shino turned his attention to Karina. What about Kabuto? Any sign of his whereabouts? Karina shook her head with a hint of frustration. No, Shino. It appears that he may be hiding in one of Orochimaru's secret bases located at sea. Our Zerg forces have limited coverage in that area compared to the land, making it difficult to locate Orochimaru's hidden bases there. However, with the data we obtain from Demon Island, we are in the process of developing our naval force. Soon, even the Land of Water won't be able to escape our watchful eyes. Hasn't my dear always lusted over a beauty there? Soon, she won't be a problem. Shino chuckled softly, observing Kurenai, who stepped back after dutifully helping him dress like a diligent maid, allowing Karina to enter his embrace. Well, let's save those thoughts for later. For now, let's focus on enhancing my power. I'll head over there now. I trust you to handle things here, Karina, Kurenai. Karina planted a kiss on Shino's lips before stepping back with a cheeky smile, assuring him, leave it to me, my dear. After watching Shino depart the lab in silence, Kurenai's crimson gaze shifted towards Karina. After a moment of hesitation, she whispered gratefully, thank you for helping me, Karina. Karina paused her work, glancing over with a sly smile on her face. There's no need to thank me. I'm just helping myself. Helping yourself? Why? Kurenai's mind began to race. How does this benefit her? Sauntering over to Kurenai, Karina maintained her sly smile as her finger trailed over Kurenai's lips, wiping away a stain. Beauties like you aren't hard to come by in this world, and there would be even more in the vast universe. But it doesn't matter how many of you there are, as long as none of you threaten my position as the one and only queen of Shino. Karina put her finger into her mouth, licking it clean before continuing, but Shino's new power, his Yakumo as he calls it, is outside my control. Although she is currently like a mindless doll, who knows if that will remain the case after a century or a millennium or perhaps even longer. In the long rivers of time, once her intelligence reaches a certain point, she could become a threat to my position. I can't allow that. I didn't have any methods before, but after analyzing all the fragments of soul research data we gathered from the snake farm operation, I finally devised a countermeasure. So this time, I also hope the plan succeeds. If it fails, your student will cease to exist, and Shino's personal doll will still be beyond my control. However, if it succeeds, it will implant a backhand into her core, making her a factor I can control. Kurenai took a deep breath, realizing the truth. No wonder Karina was so willing to help her. As expected, she was just like Shino, hiding the hidden costs within their actions. But by doing this, aren't you afraid of revealing your strong desire for control? Won't it cross his boundaries? Karina's smile remained playful as she turned around and headed back to her lab table. Who says he doesn't know? Our very existence belongs to him, and if he desires, he can always be aware of everything we do. I have no intention of hiding it because a transparent relationship is what sustains our bond. He knows that I am willing to give everything for him, and in turn, he indulges me in these trivial matters. But even so, we both understand that I will never overstep his boundaries, and every action of mine will always cater to him. Kurenai fell silent, bowing her head in deep thought. Karina's gaze shifted towards her, and she admonished Kurenai in a gentle tone, "Kurenai, I also hope you learn from this. I don't want to see you end up in the cold palace one day." Hearing the advice, Kurenai nodded slightly. "Thank you for the reminder, Karina. Go. You still have a lot of Genjutsu research on your plate, especially with our access to natural energy and your discoveries regarding the Mirage technique," Karina said, nodding slightly before returning to her work, grumbling in an unhappy tone, "Seriously, Shino keeps increasing the workload and leaves it all in our hands while he has fun. My goodness. I also want to spend time with my dear." Kurenai's lips curved slightly as she exited the lab. Making her way to her own workspace, her eyes subtly scanned the prison area, a hint of worry showing in her gaze. "Yakumo-sensei can only do so much for you. The rest will be up to fate." In the dim and gloomy prison room, Shino stood silently, sweeping his gaze over the myriad of symbols forming sealing marks all over the walls, ground, and ceiling before his gaze fixed upon the obedient Yakumo who stood stiffly before him, dully staring into space. Despite her vacant expression, Shino knew that her consciousness still lingered, forcefully placed into dormant mode by Karina's control over their assimilated queens. Not only that, Yakumo's soul and body had been meticulously prepared by Karina, primed for the upcoming operation. Such a wonderful body. Alas, it's not enough if you want to be mine's. Extending his hand, Shino gently trailed his fingers over Yakumo's warm skin, a dark grin spreading across his face as he ensured there was truly no reaction, regardless of his actions. After his confirmation of Yakumo's dormant state, Shino tossed the stained kimono away, letting the cleaning rag settle to the ground. "It's a pity. I'll miss enjoying this, so if you can hear me in there, I hope you give me some surprises." Then, with a firm conviction, Shino's black hair transitioned to a shade of brown, and his Genjutsu domain enveloped the surroundings. Within moments, the masked Yakumo materialized beside him, standing motionless like a doll, her chilling aura brushing against his skin. Grinning, Shino drew the masked Yakumo into his embrace, his hand roaming as he positioned her to face her sister who stood nearby. "Yakumo, do you see your sister right there? Do you understand what you have to do?" Shino's question lingered in the air, but received no response from the masked Yakumo, as if she lacked understanding. So, Shino could only seek his own response that would satisfy himself. Not long later, satisfied, Shino released his grip, pushing the masked Yakumo towards the real Yakumo. His voice, cold and devoid of emotions, resonated through the Genjutsu domain. "Now, devour her," he commanded. At last, a flicker of life seemed to emerge within the masked Yakumo. An ominous aura emanated from her as she fixed her chilling gaze upon the real Yakumo. The mouthpiece of her mask clacked with anticipation, as if she had long awaited this moment. Suddenly, a chilling, creepy laughter of a young woman echoed through the Genjutsu domain as the demoness lunged forward, plunging into the fleshly vessel, prepared to help herself to the feast. What would be the outcome of this horrifying act? There is no need to guess further because... Chapter 143, New Yakumo. Karina cautiously accessed the control terminal hovering before her, its high-tech white glow casting an otherworldly aura on her Shino clone. She tapped on the screen, diligently recording the mysterious symbols displayed, her focus locked on deciphering the unknown language before her. Initially, she had believed that accessing the tower would be a simple task, but she soon discovered that the console itself posed as the first barrier. The language inscribed on its surface was unlike anything from this world. Even with the aid of the Tonica village chief's memories, their understanding fell short. He could only recognize specific symbols necessary to activate or deactivate the tower, a knowledge passed down through generations via a cherished heirloom. And amongst them were the peculiar tubes and a melody that served as the key to the console. Clearly, this tower was either an alien technology or a relic from a different era, and normal means will only achieve the results the previous tower owner desires. However, this was not what Shino wants. Fortunately, with Karina's ingenuity and the system models that she had developed to reduce her workload, she had the capability to go beyond their limited comprehension. The old man's memories provided a foundation for Karina to build upon, and given enough time, she believed she could decrypt the rest of the language. Once she achieves the basics, she can begin to crack down on the functions of the tower, slowly transforming it into their own. Nearby, Granny Hu, Kurenai's disguise, stood before the colossal cylindrical tower, its surface adorned with pulsating red runes, decorating the surface of the tower akin to circuitry. She siphoned another surge of the strange and unknown energy that emanated from the tower, channeling it to cast the Mirage Genjutsu. As a mystical glowing pattern hovering before her activated and dispersed, the small area around her transformed into a flourishing garden. Kurenai's eyes flickered with intrigue as she reported to Karina, as expected, the unknown energy generated by this Spear of Heaven tower is compatible with the Mirage technique. It's as if they share a common origin. Interesting, Karina mused, her gaze drawn to the pulsating energy coursing through the tower. Initially, they had assumed it was a geothermal energy source derived from the magma below. However, their later inspection revealed that the unleashed energy possessed an entirely distinct force, coming from an unknown source, a mystery that excited Karina, for it represented a potential new power source. Chakra, spiritual force, natural energy, genetic energy, and now this new unknown energy. They have much to master, but having more is always a good thing. Yet, despite their ability to siphon the energy from the tower, they had yet to find a method to generate it themselves. The tower was an inanimate structure, not a living creature. It was devoid of the necessary genetic components Zerg life forms like them could manipulate. So, Karina could only personally conduct arduous research. Nevertheless, they now possessed a clue, a path to a breakthrough. It appears our mother holds more secrets than we initially believed. Or perhaps it is the Aburame clan itself? Karina murmured, her confusion momentarily clouding her thoughts. She swiftly dismissed the notion. Well, matters of family can wait until Shino completes his upgrade. After all, I can't go and kidnap my own mother-in-law for interrogation, can I? Kurenai shook her head, amused by Karina's wandering thoughts, as she refocused on mastering the new Mirage technique. Illusionary techniques were treasures to her, and this one challenged her original perception of Genjutsu. After all, it harnessed the very forces of nature to conjure illusions immune to conventional methods of dispelling. Suddenly, Karina clapped her hands, diverting Kurenai's attention. Kurenai, Shino should be nearing completion. Let us be prepared and monitor the process in case that demoness loses control. With a few swift taps on the console, the tower's first layer rumbled, gradually sinking back into the ground. Tremors reverberated through the earth, causing the villagers of Tonica village to momentarily glance in the direction of the tower before returning to their daily lives, seemingly unfazed by the event. Yet if anyone looked closely, they may discover the hint of fear lingering in their eyes. As the tower deactivated completely, the Tonica village chief approached the duo. His form was slightly hunched. 2 officers are departing? Yes, we leave the village in your hands, Karina commanded, her gaze sweeping over the villagers. As long as they don't step out of line, we shall not interfere in their daily lives. I understand, the old man responded, his back bowing further as a tremor coursed through his body. Very well. I really don't want to get my hands all bloody again. Hee hee hee. Karina's chilling laughter echoed through the area as her body deformed into a swarm of bugs, dispersing throughout the village, assuming the form of monitors. The old man remained silently bowed in place. After a while, a sigh of regret escaped his lips, laden with helplessness. He turned and walked away, his back hunched and his footsteps heavy with the weight of his burdens. In the gloomy prison, an eerie aura permeated from one particular cell, as strange distortions danced in the air, creating a separate space within the confines. Within this peculiar area, a projection materialized, depicting a grotesque world filled with slimy, purple creep and pulsating biomass. What made it truly horrifying was the gradual expansion of this confined space, growing ominously with each passing moment. Standing amidst this nightmarish realm, a bead of sweat rolled down Shino's face as he exerted himself to compress his domain, preventing it from engulfing the entire base. His exhaustive efforts to maintain the status quo were a testament to the growing power of his Genjutsu. As he focused on his task, his gaze fixated on Yakumo, who stood obediently before him. Her fair visage now adorned a new version of her demonic mask, now concealing only the upper half of her face and leaving her lower half exposed, revealing her fair skin, her pointed chin, and alluring pink lips in a neutral expression. Despite the chilling aura emanating from her, her visage displayed no previous signs of the demoness, except for the mask. Even her horns had vanished, leaving Shino uncertain if this fusion was an improvement or a downgrade. Yet, There was no turning back at this point. The climax had arrived, signaled by the dissipating ominous aura, easing the strain on Shino as the Genjutsu domain gradually faded away. Then, he found himself standing within the prison cell, observing Yakumo with her fair skin and masked upper face, obediently waiting before him, even without the presence of the Genjutsu. Success? Shino mumbled, his hand rising to caress Yakumo's smooth and warm lips. His gesture seemed to have triggered a command as Yakumo slowly knelt before him, her movements slightly mechanical, a clear indication of the entity controlling her actions. Shino felt a familiar warmth greet him through her simplistic yet mechanical gestures, a technique reminiscent of the masked Yakumo, albeit lacking the chilling atmosphere. As he stroked her head to commend her obedience, Shino couldn't help but inquire, "Not bad. But what happened to your sister?" Yakumo didn't answer Shino directly, but in response to his words, a phantom began to separate from her body, gradually materializing beside her in the same kneeling position. Within moments, this phantom solidified into another nearly identical Yakumo, wearing the same half-mask over her upper face. However, this time, her skin was pale, and a cool aura emanated from her being. Shino directed his gaze towards the second Yakumo, who met his eyes in silence. Surveying the prison, Shino sensed that his Genjutsu domain had not been activated. Extending his hand towards the second Yakumo's face, he felt her cool, soft skin. "Oh, it's real? This is an interesting development. Are you the original?" he inquired. The second Yakumo lowered her head respectfully. "Yes, master." "Oh? I quite like the sound of that. It's good that you've come to accept reality. So, was the merging a success?" Shino asked, his curiosity piqued. "Yes, master. After our merging, she has taken control of the physical body. Now, she can manifest in reality even without Master's Genjutsu ability being activated, and her physical form can also remain concealed within Master's Genjutsu domain, as she is an existence bound to Master," the second Yakumo explained. "Ah, and what about you then?" Shino's interest grew, eager to learn more about this new development. Once again, the second Yakumo bowed her head. "This slave has become a part of her, a shadow of her existence. Wherever she goes, this slave can appear. As long as she exists, this slave can exist. And we both will serve as your personal dolls, eternally guarding your side. Very good. It appears your cunning mind have learned to please me after your rebirth. Since that's the case, you deserve a new name to commemorate." Shino contemplated, lifting Yakumo's chin to gaze into her eyes. "Since you will be like my shadow guards from now on, how about Ying?" "Thank you for the name, master. Ying is willing to serve you for all eternity," Ying replied calmly. "Good." Shino expressed his satisfaction with the development, sensing the truth through their connection and harboring minimal suspicion. However, his demands did not end there. "But Ying, you know that alone won't satisfy me. I'm certain that the twin ability gained through the upgrade isn't the only thing." "She may not be able to tell me, but you can," Shino asserted in a demanding tone, his fingers brushing against Ying's cold lips. Ying's cold lips wrapped around Shino's finger briefly before sliding off, her tongue delicately giving it a teasing lick before she responded calmly, her hand undoing the sash on her kimono. "As you command, master. But it's best if this slave demonstrate to master through actions." Chapter 144, Demoness Powers. Grasping the soft locks of hair, Shino allowed his warmth to gush into the cold container, an attempt to repair the temperature issue. But the chill persisted, radiating from the container and through his fingertips and limbs. Releasing his hold, Shino's gaze fixed upon the soft lips that expertly slipped away, parting to reveal the contents of their discussion. "I thought she was teaching you Genjutsu, but it seems Kurenai-sensei has also imparted many other crooked methods to you." Gulp. After Ying cleared her throat, she replied in a calm tone, "Don't blame Kurenai-sensei, master. It was Ying who asked to learn from her, all in an effort to please master." "Master, are you satisfied?" Hearing Ying's question, Shino responded by gently petting her head before he shifted his focus, surveying the room. What was once a prison had transformed into Yakumo's luxurious boudoir, her nostalgic room in her villa. And through the window, Shino glimpsed the peaceful scene of the surrounding forest. It stood in stark contrast to the chaotic mess within the room, where Yakumo lay sprawled on her bed while Shino perched on its edge, with Ying sitting gracefully on the ground before him, her legs folded beneath her with her knees spread apart, a posture that allowed her body to restore its chilling cold temperature by letting the excess warmth flow out. And the truly intriguing aspect of this scene was that it was not a product of Shino's illusion, but rather Yakumo's, or, more precisely, Ying's doing. Through Ying's connection with Yakumo, they were able to manifest an illusion domain using the new ability they had acquired through their merge. If their physical bodies were in reality, they could create their own illusion domain. This revelation astonished and also excited Shino greatly. It meant they now possessed a second illusion domain, separate from his own. They could summon two illusion domains simultaneously, each functioning independently or merging together to form complex illusions within illusions. The power of this new ability was undeniable. While Yakumo's illusion domain had a more limited coverage compared to Shino's, due to the limit of 2 units of combined computational power of Yakumo and Ying, it still proved to be a significant addition to his arsenal. Even if he didn't utilize Yakumo's separate domain, he could let them integrate into his own Genjutsu domain when necessary. And with the upgrade in Yakumo's inherent computational units from 1 to 2, the computation units Shino had to allocate to sustain his domain had been reduced as well. But this was not the full extent of their abilities. And right now, Shino was about to explore and discover more. Ying, I remember you mentioning that Yakumo's power can grow? Ying didn't answer immediately as she calmly and gracefully lifted herself upwards, her movements calm and calculated. Shino didn't urge her as he patiently awaited her response, enthralled by her technique. Unlike Karina, who surrendered herself completely to him, and Kurenai, who focused on technique but accommodated him like a sister figure, Ying took a different approach. Her movements exuded serenity and nobility, a slow dance that kept him on his toes for extended periods. And it wasn't until now that she revealed the full extent of her abilities to him. As her tongue concluded its sensual dance, Ying raised her head and spoke in a composed tone, "Will Master feed Yakumo and Ying?" Shino's eyes grew deep as he responded in a husky voice. In response, Ying delicately wrapped her mouth around the feed dispenser, her tongue gliding across it before she released it. Master knows what Ying desires. Ying requires souls, human souls. Curiosity piqued, Shino inquired with interest, and Yakumo can grow by devouring them. Yes, Master. When Yakumo devours a soul, it becomes assimilated into her, coming under our control and becoming a part of Master's army. From then on, they can dwell within Master's Genjutsu domain, retaining their memories, personalities, and potentially even their abilities, Ying explained, bowing her head to tempt him once more. Shino fell into deep thought for a while before posing another question. Can you devour any souls as long as they are human? Ying gently shook her head amidst her repetitive movements, and then gracefully lifted her head, a trail of saliva connecting her lips to her objective. According to Mistress Karina's initial estimation, we can only devour normal human souls at present. Shino's disappointment was evident. Only normal human souls? That means even with an army, they would merely be ordinary humans trapped within his Genjutsu domain. Meanwhile, his enemies are likely powerful ninjas who would pose a challenge even to his Zergs, let alone normal humans who would easily be crushed by his Zergs, especially since they don't have the high-tech Sophie equipment. Sensing Shino's frustration, Ying diligently flourished her tongue, before she began showcasing the power of her new devouring ability. To display the deep extents of her ability, she slowly and gradually allowed her head to descend, stopping at her limits and holding it there as she performed a slow, tantalizing dance with her tongue. Shino's desire to hold her down grew, but he resisted the urge as there were far more important answers he had yet to acquire from her mouth. So, he patiently endured and awaited her reply. Soon Ying raised her head, unfazed by her previous breath-holding endeavor as if she didn't require air, resuming her explanation calmly. Do not be too disheartened, Master. Theoretically, each additional soul devoured will provide feedback to Master, who is the core of our existence. As Master grows, our ability to devour stronger souls will also expand as Yakumo will grow along with Master. Eventually, Yakumo will possess the strength to consume souls beyond those of normal humans. So it still relies on my own progression in the end? Shino mused, a heavy frustration bubbling within him. Who knows how long it would take until my soul grows strong enough? And even if I do reach that point, the field of souls is far more complex than mere theories. Even an average human may possess a soul far surpassing the norm, such as the protagonist of a given world. How can we determine your current limits or discern which souls you can devour? Ying sensually licked her lips as she responded, We do not, Master. We only need to obediently devour whoever and whatever Master tells us to devour. So you leave the troublesome part to me? Shino grumbled unhappily. What if I am not careful enough and have you consume something beyond your current capabilities? Ying's lips curved into a slight smile as she replied, Then it is simple. Yakumo and Ying will be obliterated. Frowning, Shino questioned, Doesn't that render this devouring ability useless unless we find a way to gauge the strength of the enemy soul? After all, I don't want to lose my ability by accident. Ying shook her head slightly, her fingers gracefully maintaining the flow of conversation. No. In fact, it matters not if we are obliterated. Because. Ying then planted a kiss to emphasize his dominance before locking her gaze with Shino. Though her eyes remained hidden behind her mask, her fervor shone through. As long as Master exists, even if we are obliterated, we will recover and be reborn within Master. The same applies to all souls assimilated into the army. We are not afraid of being broken, not afraid of sacrificing ourselves, for we are Master's eternal army, forever bound to Master, loyally guarding Master's side for all eternity. Shino's eyes glimmered with excitement. His own immortal army. He could already envision the possibilities of this army. Though they would merely be ordinary humans with limited combat prowess, the fact that they had the quality of immortality added an immense weight to their value. If he could further equip them with his other abilities. A multitude of ideas danced through Shino's mind, and he couldn't contain his excitement as he pressed his hand down, unleashing his exhilaration. Perhaps the player army will not stay as mere imagination and may become a reality in the future. However, that dream remained distant for now. After all, Yakumo had yet to consume her first human soul outside of Ying. Additionally, despite not requiring his essence, which had no apparent upper limit to assimilation except for his supply, it remained unclear if there was a maximum number of souls Yakumo's new ability could assimilate. So, careful selection was crucial as the chosen humans would retain their personalities and memories. Shino didn't want a rabble that couldn't even understand his instructions, lest they be counterproductive. After all, he could force intelligent ones to comply to his demands, but his instructions might not get through to the airheads. Not only that, if Yakumo devoured the wrong soul and was obliterated, the growth of the army would stall until she recovered. So, procedures must be established for stable development. Furthermore, were there any risks associated with bringing souls under Shino's control through Yakumo? Is there a possibility for the masses to rebel? Can the souls leak his intel to enemies? And, are the souls truly immortal and to what extent? Can they be sealed away? All of these questions must be resolved before he could use this ability without worrying about repercussions. And to solve this requires time, lots of time, both to understand the intricacies and risks of this newfound ability and to accumulate souls to nurture its growth. So, the rise of the immortal army would be a long-term business. As Shino's excitement gradually subsided, he was suddenly struck by another intriguing piece of news that rekindled his attention. Shino, are you finished there? You may want to join me so I can discuss my new discovery with you. What is it, Karina? Curious, Shino inquired calmly while patting Ying's head in praise, gesturing towards the mess she had inadvertently caused. Understanding his command, like a demoness catering to his dark thoughts, Ying silently licked her lips before relinquishing her dignity, getting on all fours to wipe away the mess. Observing this, Shino's excitement surged further as he took the plunge from behind as he awaited Karina's revelation. Shino, I believe I have found the key to the system space. Chapter 145, System Space Discovery. As Shino made his way into Karina's lab, she cast a quick glance at him before turning her head away, a slight pout forming on her lips. Chuckling softly, Shino approached her with purposeful steps, wrapping his arm around her waist and pulling her close. Resting his chin on her shoulder, he whispered in a soft voice, "My little goblin is feeling jealous again? I thought you were so satisfied with your new doll that you forgot all about me," Karina grumbled as she pinched his waist. Shino chuckled, his hand snaking upwards towards Karina's chin, tilting her head gently towards him. He planted a warm, inviting kiss on her lips before pulling back slightly. However, before he could say anything, Karina swiftly twirled around in his embrace, pushing him down onto a nearby chair. Leaning in towards him, her hot breath caressing his neck, she began to snake downwards. In a hoarse yet composed voice, Shino reminded her, "Karina, we still have important matters to discuss." Karina glanced up at him, her eyes filled with desire, and declared, "We can always discuss them the old-fashioned way. In the meantime, I'll make sure my dear understands that Karina is far superior to that little demoness." As Karina's words resonated in his mind, Shino's body trembled slightly, succumbing to the enchanting allure of the beauty that had led him into the depths of the wild as she flourished her tongue to communicate with him in a graceful language. At this moment, Shino noticed that her words conveyed her dominance more effectively than ever before. It seemed that even Karina had honed her skills through her accumulation of data. As expected of a self-improving guy. No wonder humans fear them so much. Ahem. As Shino endured the passionate process, he didn't allow himself to be fully distracted as he brought his focus back to the matters at hand. "So, what did you want to tell me about the system space? My dear, do you believe in coincidences?" Hearing Karina's question, Shino harbored some doubts, but he shook his head subtly, his tone firm. "No, there are no coincidences. Coincidences are merely a feeble attempt by the weak to explain phenomena they cannot comprehend. Every event has a cause, whether it is man-made, natural, or even the result of an indescribable existence or laws." "Exactly. Just like my dear, Karina also rejects the notion of coincidences. We couldn't believe that White Zetsa stumbled upon our base in such an unexpected manner. We were certain that there must have been a leak from our side. So, I ran a system diff to analyze our activities in our previous base and this one. And after a lot of data crunching, So far, I have locked onto one discrepancy. Shino's interest was piqued. Oh? And what cause did you uncover? There is only one thing we have not done in our new base, the usage of shadow clones. Perhaps the shadow clones may have leaked our location, acting as a beacon or a locator. Shino's eyes narrowed slightly. As expected. There must be more to the shadow clones than meets the eye. How could such a convenient clone exist without a catch? There are no free lunches in this world. No wonder the system filtered them out. Perhaps it is the system's way of evading the detection of powerful beings or even the world itself. If the world itself was behind the existence of shadow clones, it would offer a plausible explanation for several plot holes in the original Naruto series. One such example is Naruto's ability to summon an overwhelming number of shadow clones without succumbing to mental instability. While other Jinchuriki possessed similar chakra capacities, none of them displayed the same level of usage of shadow clones, or their variations, as Naruto did. Clearly, they knew the risks of shadow clones, and wasn't able to bear the burden of wantonly using them. This suggests that some other existence or the world itself may have shouldered some of the burden for Naruto, allowing him to utilize this technique without suffering the same mental strain as others. In fact, it's possible that the shadow clones served a dual purpose. Not only did they assist Naruto in his growth and development, but they could also serve as a means for the world to monitor his progress, locate him, and present challenges tailored to his abilities. The shadow clone technique, while a cheat in some ways, could also be seen as a chain, tying Naruto to the world's expectations and demands. This could explain why Naruto's usage of shadow clones significantly diminished in Boruto, when he was no longer the favored protagonist. Of course, these were only mere theories. However, these speculations provided another reason for Shino to avoid using the shadow clone technique. It was a technique that carried both advantages and potential risks, and given the mysterious involvement of the world, Shino deemed it prudent to abstain from its use. So, this revelation resolves one of our doubts and reinforces the belief that there are no coincidences, Shino pondered aloud. But how does this relate to the system space? Shino, just as there are no coincidences in other events, Karina believes that there are no coincidences in certain aspects of your Genjutsu domain as well. Hasn't my dear noticed any abnormalities? Have you not found it strange that every time your Genjutsu domain instinctively activates, it projects a world infested with creep? Shino contemplated his established conclusion, attributing the creep-infested world to his innate Zerg factor. Isn't it simply a result of my innate Zerg origin? He suggested. That was our initial conclusion as well. However, after recent events, we may need to reconsider. When Karina witnessed the reappearance of the same creep-infested world during your Genjutsu domain upgrade, Karina had doubts and knew it may not be a mere coincidence. Consequently, Karina delved deeper into the matter, meticulously analyzing the process. And this is what Karina has discovered. With Karina's words, holographic interfaces materialized before Shino, playing back the moments when he comprehended the depths of his Genjutsu domain. The videos jolted his memory, eliciting a surge of excitement, momentarily destabilizing his composure and causing him to lose control. Karina, with a mischievous smile, met his gaze, suggesting that these videos were intentionally shown to provoke him. Nevertheless, she swallowed her tears of success as she continued with her explanation, delving into the true significance behind her display of these videos. Shino, take note of Yakumo's new ability to devour souls. While we can confirm that this is linked to the Zerg factor, what interests me most is the fact that this ability allows the souls to reside within your Genjutsu domain. This is far from ordinary. Karina's reminder prompted Shino to contemplate the matter, recognizing the glaring inconsistency. It dawned on him that housing the souls within his physical body was implausible. In such a scenario, the souls could easily escape or be reclaimed by the world, undergoing reincarnation. His body lacked the means to contain and retain these souls securely. Therefore, if the souls were truly housed within his Genjutsu domain, it meant that his Genjutsu domain must manifest as a tangible space somewhere. Otherwise, where did all the souls go? And this space must be special because it must be able to safely retain the souls and hide the assimilated souls from the eyes of the world, preventing them from escaping into reincarnation and forcing them to be his eternal slaves. So, where might this space be? Shino could only think of one possibility, his system space. The same space where their biomass had remained hidden, eluding discovery for so long. If his hidden space could conceal biomass, it was conceivable that it could also safely harbor souls, shielding them from the world's gaze and preventing their escape into the cycle of reincarnation. This implied that the space in question must be deeply concealed, serving as a sanctuary for the assimilated souls who would become his eternal slaves. Of course, while this discovery suggests that the souls may be stored within the system's storage, it doesn't help us locate the system's space itself. However, Karina has observed another key factor that might prove to be our breakthrough. What is it? Shino's eyes gleamed with renewed interest, his excitement and vigor rekindled as he stood up, ready to explore this newfound lead. Yakumo. Her new ability to freely dwell within your Genjutsu domain is interesting, isn't it? With Karina's subtle hint, Shino immediately understood. How had he overlooked such a glaring loophole until now? If the physical body of Yakumo could seamlessly enter and exit his Genjutsu domain, which was most likely located within his system space, it meant that she was essentially entering and exiting his system space itself. It all makes sense, Shino muttered, his thoughts aligning seamlessly. Her physical body must be stored somewhere, and it certainly can't be within my own body. When she disappeared, I didn't sense her body and the distinct essence she had accumulated merging back into me. Instead, it felt similar to absorbing biomass, vanishing into thin air after being assimilated into my being. Shino couldn't help but feel a sense of pleasure coursing through him. Of course, this was because he found solace in the fact that he was now closer to uncovering the entrance to the system space. It wasn't because he was glad that the essence he had given away didn't go back into his own body. Ahem, let's stop thinking in this direction. Yes, my dear. So, Yakumo is the key to assisting us in discovering the entrance of the system space. By closely monitoring her ability, we may be able to discover the connection we seek. Upon hearing this, Shino's movements came to a halt, his eyes burning with desire as he called out in a husky voice, Yakumo. In response to his summons, a phantom emerged from Shino's body, swiftly materializing into the masked Yakumo with her fair complexion, kneeling obediently beside him. Shortly after, another phantom separated from Yakumo's form, solidifying into Ying, who knelt before them with her melodic voice reverberating in the room. Yakumo and Ying greet the master and mistress. How may we be of service? Shino, his touch gentle upon Karina's fair face, traced his fingers around her full lips as he addressed Karina, his voice laced with anticipation. Karina, is everything prepared? Affirmative, Shino. Karina has made all the necessary preparations before my dear's arrival. With Karina's assurance, an array of bugs and sensors delicately drilled themselves into Yakumo's body. Good. Ying, have Yakumo enter and exit my domain, Shino commanded. As you wish, master, Ying responded before merging back into Yakumo's being. Gradually, Yakumo faded away as she drew closer to Shino's form. Moments later, Yakumo reappeared. Receiving no further instruction, she vanished once more, the cycle of entry and exit commencing. Shino, too, put forth his own effort, going in and out, urging Karina to fulfill her duties, his anticipation mounting with each passing moment. And then, Shino's fervent anticipation reached its crescendo as Karina's enticing voice reached his ears. Shino, I've locked onto the entrance umph. Karina's eyes widened, a clear sign of her astonishment over her discovery. Jugo's abilities and natural energy. Yakumo's enhanced Genjutsu domain and soul-devouring capability. And now, his newly acquired system space had been added to the equation. As Shino observed Karina present her discovery to him, his gaze shifted to Ying, who gracefully sat beside him, her legs neatly tucked beneath her body, awaiting further orders. As a sense of excitement tingled within him once more, Shino remarked, it seems that the next period of time would be one filled with interesting developments. Chapter 146, Development Period Natsuiboshi, Naizakai? Yubkanashai Yumi wo Mita. As the beautiful melody played in the background, the beach came alive with warm sunlight casting glimmering reflections upon the crystal-clear water as it pushed in and receded from the sandy landscape, where Shino stood proudly as he inspected the fruits of his labor during this period of intense development. On the sandy beach nearby, Karina lounged in her smooth purple bikini, while Kiranai rested with a red flowery bikini, both of them chaotically sprawled on the sand. Their bikinis were disheveled, revealing their alluring curves and fair assets. Their bodies were also sticky with sweat, their chests rising and falling as they caught their breath, exhausted from their previous beach activities. In stark contrast, Yakumo and Ying, adorned in white banda bikinis with kimonos loosely draping their backs, continued to serve Shino tirelessly. Their stamina seemed boundless, one's movements precise and mechanical while the other graceful and enticing. However, Yakumo's actions soon came to a halt, sitting on the ground like a motionless doll. Beside her, Ying gracefully completed a final sweep alone before turning to Shino and reporting, Master, it's clean and ready. Are you ready to try the new doll? Shino grunted, his gaze shifting towards a mature woman in her 30s, with long violet hair and striking facial features. Her jade green eyes stared vacantly ahead, while her lips hummed a beautiful melody. An into forehead protector adorned her head, bearing the star symbol that revealed her ninja origins, but she now wore a light purple kimono that accentuated her voluptuous, mature curves. Shino's eyes flickered with recognition as he realized the beauty before him was none other than Natsui from the Hidden Star Village. How had she ended up here? It was a long and intricate story, one that unfolded during this intense period of development. It all started with Karina's breakthrough, utilizing the invaluable cursed seal data left behind by Uncle Snake. After digesting Uncle Snake's research data, this brilliant little genius managed to develop a groundbreaking prototype that merged the cursed seal with their vast database of sealing techniques, such as the Thunder God technique. The result was a completely novel technique that seamlessly integrated with Shino's newly acquired powers from Jugo. Unlike the original cursed seal, Karina's prototype couldn't bestow extreme powers or enable rebirth through the seal. It couldn't even be transplanted onto others. Instead, this seal was designed with a single compatibility in mind, to harmonize with Shino's Zergs, or more accurately, his ninjutsu clones. By embedding the seal within the core of his clones, the Zerg battery, Shino could project his main body's power to the clones, regardless of the distance separating them. This cursed seal enabled him to unleash his unique abilities, such as his powerful Genjutsu domain, his chakra sealing chains, and even the newly acquired Sage transformation, through his clones. Needless to say, this ability was overpowered not. It was crucial to acknowledge that this ability was still a work in progress, far from perfect. Undeniably, there were downsides to consider. Firstly, the farther the transmission distance, the more power would be lost in transit. As a result, his abilities could only reach about half their full potential despite being fully activated. Moreover, even with numerous cursed seals at his disposal, Shino could only channel each of his powers to one cursed seal at a time. This meant that he couldn't have multiple clones simultaneously utilizing the same ability. If one clone were utilizing his Genjutsu domain ability, for example, no other clone, including his main body, could access it. This limitation prevented him from deploying an army of clones all wielding the same ability. Furthermore, if a clone channeled the power of the Genjutsu domain, it couldn't simultaneously utilize other abilities like Sage transformation or chakra chains, and vice versa. The cursed seal prototype was limited and could only channel one of his abilities at a time. Fortunately, this constraint wasn't a significant concern given the abundance of clones at his disposal. Of course, Shino possessed a multitude of other abilities in his repository, including chakra transfer and absorption, as well as various passive skills. However, none of these could be effectively transmitted through the seal. Even if they could, the power reduction incurred during the transfer rendered them largely ineffective. As it stood, the prototype demonstrated its greatest efficacy when using spiritual power-related abilities. Even the Sage transformation proved suboptimal without the presence of natural energy on the clone's body. Nonetheless, this achievement held significant value in Shino's eyes, and Karina rightfully earned praise for her remarkable contributions. And of course, it was normal praise, not the other type. Ahem. Naturally, during this period of exploration, Karina achieved numerous other breakthroughs while analyzing Shino's diverse abilities. However, it seemed that Yakumo's development progress had hit a wall, whether intentionally or not. If there was one person who didn't want the demoness to advance, it was the jealous little goblin. Yet, despite her jealousy, Karina had always remained determined to forge ahead, as long as it ultimately benefited Shino. As a result, they encountered no obstacles in further developing the utilization of his Genjutsu domain. However, when it came to Yakumo's soul-devouring abilities, they struck a barrier, letting them realize that Ying's words were too good to be true. Of course, it wasn't due to any moral reservations on Shino's part, as he had no qualms about consuming human souls. Rather, the issue was the definition of a normal human. Even when they kidnapped weak, ordinary individuals specifically for Yakumo to devour, she still struggled to consume their souls. In some cases, the feeble, instinctive counterattacks launched by these seemingly insignificant humans resulted in Yakumo's own obliteration, leaving them baffled. After exhaustive testing, they finally unraveled the reason behind this perplexing predicament. Despite being average humans, human souls remain deeply intertwined with their living bodies. Thus, Yakumo was unable to extract and devour them. Surprisingly, it was these living humans whose souls mounted the strongest retaliatory response. Bound to their physical forms, their soul's strength was seemingly amplified manifold. On the other hand, when they killed the human, the detached soul weakened considerably. However, without a physical vessel to bind it, the liberated soul would swiftly escape, dissolving into the ethereal unknown. However, they concluded that it was the world itself that reclaimed the soul, sending it on its journey of reincarnation or to the Pure Land. This was a natural law, and even their most sophisticated sealing methods proved futile in halting this natural process. At best, they could only delay it, but never long enough for Yakumo to complete the devouring process. Even if the underworld of this world could be considered to be rather loose, death still held immeasurable power. So, Shino's hopes of building an immortal army were dashed by this realization. However, their endeavors did yield valuable knowledge, and Karina made a conjecture Detached souls without physical bodies were in their most vulnerable state, exhibiting minimal resistance that generally diminished the longer they remained detached. And this weakened state was perfect for devouring. To test this conjecture, they turned their attention to a long-standing victim on Shino's watch list. This beauty, however, had been placed lower on the assimilation queue due to the availability of more iconic and desirable candidates. So, the Star Guard mission unfolded. And Shino dispatched upgraded clones to shadow Naruto and Team Guy, monitoring their every move in secret. Simultaneously, he tested the limits of his new cursed seal, pushing the boundaries of his nerfed Genjutsu domain, utilizing it to hide from the weak ninjas of the Hidden Star Village and the group of 4 Hidden Leaf Village Genin's. Then, with cold detachment, Shino observed the tragedy unfold before his eyes, allowing a potential queen to meet her demise. It wasn't until he witnessed Natsui materialize in her soul form that he decided to intervene. Unleashing the full might of his Genjutsu domain, Shino summoned Yakumo. While the rest of the ninjas remained blindsided by his Genjutsu domain, his clones swiftly moved to subdue Natsui, who displayed an extraordinary ability to deflect attacks. Alas, despite her impressive powers, Natsui proved defenseless against the weakened adamantine sealing chains employed by Shino. Although she could deflect attacks, she couldn't ward off Shino's sealing. In the world of Naruto, sealing techniques were truly overpowered. Capturing a soul in such a weakened state was a rare opportunity, and Shino knew it wouldn't last long. Thus, he allowed Yakumo to devour Natsui's soul. Despite being a powerful Jonin ninja, once detached from her body and sealed, she became the perfect feast for Yakumo, akin to the original Ying, who Karina had rendered dormant through her complete control over assimilated queens. Thus, poor Natsui lost her husband, her son, her life, and now even her freedom after death. Yet, fear not, Asuka Hoshi, in his characteristic low-intelligence villainous manner, still revealed his crimes in public instead of lying to ensure the Hidden Leaf Village ninjas couldn't intervene. And after setting up his villain role, he finally embedded the Star Core onto his own body, ready to sweep away even his own village. However, this time, the Star Core was just an illusion. So naturally, Naruto emerged victorious, even without Natsui making an appearance. And with the end of the Star Guard mission, Shino acquired a new source of power, and his immortal army finally gained an additional member. And this incident confirmed that Yakumo could devour any human soul, as long as proper procedures were followed to weaken their state. Nevertheless, it remained uncertain when another rare opportunity like this would arise. Perhaps, Yakumo would be able to directly devour human souls in the future, but for now, Karina concluded that Yakumo could only devour weakened detached souls, dormant souls, or remnant souls. With this restriction, the growth of his immortal army may be hindered, but at least it didn't require his limited supply of essence. But despite this method not requiring his essence, perhaps directly assimilating ninjas would be a better alternative because the assimilated would be connected to their system, allowing ease of access to their memories and abilities. On the other hand, with Natsui under Yakumo's control, Karina could only invest extra time to extract her memories to bolster their database. Karina also needed to explore the potential applications of Natsui's unique reincarnation Fuinjutsu, a soul detachment technique which allowed Natsui's departed soul to temporarily return after being activated through the bodily fluid of her kin. Leaving Natsui aside, Karina diligently delved into researching the strange star power and natural energy. Immersed in her research, burdened by heavy workloads, and focused on Shino's growth, she even left Shino to dry. However, Shino couldn't blame her, as they were truly severely understaffed. Yakumo and Ying tirelessly transported resources, zergs, and bugs into the safety of Shino's system space, barely taking a moment's rest. Ying also assumed the responsibility of manipulating Natsui, cooperating with Karina in her research on the new power source and integrating her abilities into their system. Kurenai was entrusted with studying the energy sources of the Spear of Heaven Tower and the Mirage technique. She also explored potential applications for Shino's Genjutsu domain, establishing counter-Genjutsu and defenses for their system. In her spare time, she also mentored Ying in Genjutsu and sought methods for Shino to store objects without relying solely on Yakumo's abilities. And the list goes on. Like Karina, the list of her tasks seemed never-ending. So, for once, even Shino himself dedicated his time to rigorous training, honing his skills and integrating his newfound abilities into actual combat. Additionally, he had to master the control of his natural energy, as he couldn't always rely on his bugs to extract it. It was akin to returning to his old days, with Alina supervising his workout, now by Karina. And this craze had been set in motion by Karina, the one who usually indulges Shino, just because she had discovered a worrying fact. Chapter 147, Darkness grows as Shino's consciousness delved into his system space for the first time, a vague connection solidified, establishing a firm link that allowed him to extend his senses into his small hidden realm. Though referred to as small, The dimensions of his system space were vast relative to a human size, stretching approximately 3 by 2 by 2 acres, with a total storage volume of around 14 acres, a volume that was representative of Shino's maximum spiritual power capacity, including the units of power not calculated within his normally available computation units, such as those reserved for system functionality, their main bodies, and other necessities. Nevertheless, number crunching wasn't too important in the long run. Instead, the intriguing part was that this storage space was not empty. When he first permeated his senses into this small world, a focal point drew Shino's attention, an imposing golden orb with stakes of bioluminescent green sheen, occupying a significant portion at the core of the world, boasting a spherical volume equivalent to 2 acres. A mesmerizing rainbow-colored fog permeated the core's interior, a mystical haze that congealed into mysterious objects with iridescent hues that scattered within. And within the fog, Shino also discovered the dormant phantoms of his beauties, their souls preserved within this ethereal realm, with the exception of Karen. Soon, it became evident that these phantoms represented the souls of those he assimilated, while the objects embodied the data, modules, and Zerg strains integrated into the system. And a glaring truth revealed itself: the core represented Karina herself, the origin of his system, an existence intricately interwoven with his world. Zooming out, wrapped around the core, a floating landmass occupied the space. Composed entirely of Shino's collected biomass, the surface was coated with a layer of creep, while the interior brimmed with densely packed biomass surrounding the golden core. The landmass appeared vast, stretching towards the horizon from the center point, but it only occupied less than 7 acres of the storage's volume. However, Shino knew his available biomass points far exceeds this amount, but after a brief calculation, it was determined that this landmass only represented the biomass points stored on his body, not the biomass he had kept stored in the many external storage around the world. Despite the biomass occupying a large volume, the remaining space within the cuboid remained largely empty, save for an ominous black mist that congregated into a sphere, hovering and occupying approximately 1 acre in the skies of the space. Within the depths of this black fog, Shino discovered the wandering souls of Natsui and Ying, seemingly forever trapped within the black fog's ethereal grasp. And at its core resided the physical body of the masked demoness, Yakumo, and this location also marked the entrance they had discovered. Through numerous tests, Shino realized that with Yakumo's aid, he could bring objects and creatures under his dominion into the system space. These entities would manifest within the black fog, hovering within and awaiting entry into Shino's realm. However, Shino possessed the choice to retain these stored subjects within Yakumo's ethereal fog, resulting in an intriguing effect. When he activated his Ganjutsu domain in reality, he could project these stored objects into existence. These projections served as mere reflections, connected to their counterparts within the black fog through a link formed by Shino's ability. Dispelling his domain in reality would cause these projections to vanish. Furthermore, any damage inflicted on them in reality would not be applied when transferred through the link into their cores, but will only result in a spiritual burden to the soul, similar to the application of the shadow clone of the Naruto world. And as long as they don't perish, they can stay dormant within the black fog, where they can recover. This understanding illuminated the true nature of their semblance of immortality in reality. However, if these souls or Yakumo herself was damaged within his system space, they will truly be hurt. So, if any existence breaks into his system space, Shino risks losing the souls he collected. Fortunately, Shino possessed the ability to expel or evict any entity from within, except for the cores of Karina and Yakumo. And through the system module devised by Karina, Shino was able to permanently permeate his senses within his space with the investment of a single clone unit of computation power. This system module generated a 3D model within the system interface, allowing them to observe the world from various perspectives, from bird's eye view to first-person view. Shino could also interact with the model, performing actions through the authority he already possessed, but now in a more intuitive manner. This simulation granted Shino a godlike sense of control, akin to playing a game, where he could manipulate his units, give commands for constructions, drop objects and creatures from the sky, summoning items and creatures to his side in reality, and indulge in the exhilarating sensation of accumulating items, knowing they were securely stored and protected. And through this system module, Karina was also granted the role of moderator, wielding the same authority as Shino himself, whereas beforehand, she couldn't even sense the system space beyond her core. This newfound power certainly enthralled Shino for a while. Alas, a disheartening truth soon emerged, one that doused some of Shino's enthusiasm. Despite his connection with the space, with the exception of biomass, they concluded that Shino could not store other things within this space on his own, requiring Yakumo as the freighter. Even worse, unlike his other creatures, Shino could not enter it with his main body, the most probable reason behind this phenomenon being the fact that the space was a part of Shino himself. Thus, the system space could provide protection for everyone else, but it couldn't shield Shino himself. However, this fact didn't bother him much. It doesn't matter because the real world was better anyways. At least, that is what Shino wanted to get across to Karina, but Karina was having none of it. She insisted that the very purpose of their existences was to protect Shino, not the other way around. So, driven by her frantic determination, Karina went to great lengths to enhance Shino's abilities and demanded that he dedicate himself to rigorous practice. In her words, Shino's safety equated to their own security. It was a reason Shino couldn't refute, but he understood that Karina feared he would become inflated with pride, believing he could bear all burdens alone now that he possessed the means to protect them. Indeed, with the assurance of his system space safeguarding his beloved partners, Shino did entertain the notion of venturing into the vast world beyond, no longer confined to their base. After all, who doesn't want to explore the world freely? However, Shino still remained level-headed, aware that his strength alone still fell short of what was necessary to avoid all danger. Thus, he obediently agreed to Karina's terms. And perhaps, he also vaguely noticed another reason that led him to make this decision. So, time passed, and they reached a steady point of development after a period of rapid growth, coinciding with Naruto's departure from Hidden Leaf Village. Their comprehensive achievements finally brought them a sense of satisfaction, marking a milestone in their journey and finally granting them a chance to relax. And with the beauties returning to his embrace, Shino finally found himself rewarded, succumbing to his desires and unleashing the hungry beast, resulting in the captivating scene on the beach. As the others lay exhausted, Shino's gaze fell upon Natsui, the mother who had yet to be welcomed by him. Her kimono clung tightly to her well-defined curves, enticing him to unwrap the hidden treasures within. Before, despite being under Ying's control, Natsui retained her original personality and memories, causing Shino to hold back out of fear of breaking her. But now, after her secrets had been dug out and her value drained, under Ying's manipulation, the obedient Natsui gradually lowered herself on all fours, her body trembling subtly, as if she was struggling against Ying's control after realizing her impending fate. Alas, her resistance was futile. Natsui's subtle struggles only served to emphasize her bountiful assets as they presented a mesmerizing lesson on physics while she approached. Coming before Shino, her well-defined, heart-shaped face lifted, and her vacant jade-green eyes fixated upon him. Shino observed with interest as Natsui's lips slowly parted before silently waiting in place, her violet hair gently swaying from the sea breeze. Shino's hand caressed her soft purple hair, relishing the sensation for a moment. Then, his eyes burned with a fiery intensity, and with a forceful motion, he indulged in his bounty, a darkness stirring within him. However, as he continued, observing her vacant eyes, Shino couldn't help but mutter, his voice tinged with a mix of curiosity and dark desire, it would be nice to see some reaction. Ying, standing faithfully by Shino's side, responded with grace in her voice, her words filled with compliance, as you wish, master. In an enthralling turn of events, Natsui appeared to be infused with life as her once vacant jade-green eyes became filled with vitality. But, panic soon gripped her features, her voice muffled yet echoing on the beach, betraying her inner turmoil. NGGH yet, despite her distress, her body remained firmly in place, seemingly beyond her control, while Shino could still sense the dance of her tongue as he observed the two bangs framing her face swaying in a mesmerizing motion. Shino observed the transformation, a peculiar satisfaction swelling within him, as his darkness reached a new pinnacle. He muttered under his breath, a mixture of intrigue and pleasure lacing his words, "Oh, what a good reaction." Soon after, Shino's gaze narrowed as he witnessed Natsui's eyes growing wider in shock, tears cascading down her face as the symbol of her status as a ninja, the forehead protector, slipped from her head and fell to the sand below. The depth of her anguish was laid bare before him. Whispering into Shino's ear with an air of seductive allure, Ying assumed the role of a demoness, her words dripping with a wicked satisfaction. "Did you enjoy this, master?" Shino's voice, heavy and rough, carried an air of dark satisfaction as he observed Natsui's intense coughing, her feeble attempts at regaining control staining the sand. "Very good," he uttered, his tone tinged with a twisted delight. "But it's a waste like this, isn't it?" Ying, ever the seductive accomplice, responded with a sly suggestion. Her voice laced with intrigue, she gestured towards Natsui, enticingly stating, "Oh, then master can put it somewhere where she can't waste it." With Ying's gesture, Natsui's body convulsed violently as she arranged her posture, as if there were strings of control pulling her limbs into position like a marionette, regardless of her desperate cries. The tremors running through her body were in stark contrast to the pleading in her voice, her frantic pleas echoed across the beach, yet, they were quickly drowned out by the devilish whisper that escaped Ying's lips, taking away any trace of compassion or mercy. "Master, ravage her." Nearby, the cries stirred the sleeping beauties from their slumbers as Karina cast a disapproving gaze towards the scene, pouting unhappily as she muttered, This demon fox is leading my dear astray. Kurenai's red eyes also surveyed the scene, a hint of hesitation lacing her voice as she whispered, "Should we intervene and stop them?" Rolling her eyes, Karina stretched her limbs and licked her lips, her eyes glinting with a touch of madness as she declared, "No, this is also a pleasure for my dear, a release for the pinned-up frustration after intense training. And you should become accustomed to it sooner. Such scenes will occur sooner or later. After all, my dear will engage in no less plundering in the countless realms that await him in the future." Kurenai's eyes flickered briefly before she closed them, allowing her body to rest in the warm embrace of the sand. Turning her attention to the resting Kurenai, Karina inquired, "So, how is the research on the tower progressing?" "Good. Once you developed the Zergs to harvest its energy and store it, I was able to unlock the full potential of the Mirage technique. Through extensive testing and using the Mirage technique as a reference, I created models in the system database to facilitate the deployment of Shino's Genjutsu domain. You can utilize these preset models to decorate the scene, ensuring that it renders while conserving at least 25% of the previous computation power," Kurenai responded in a soft voice. As expected of a Genjutsu genius, Karina praised, raising her hand to summon two Beatrocliners, causing them to rise from the sandy ground beneath herself and Kurenai. "Not bad at all. Now we can exert some control over Shino's Genjutsu domain and assist him in dynamically altering the scene." Kurenai adjusted her position, settling into a more comfortable stance before she inquired, "And what about you? Have you unraveled the secrets of the tower?" Karina fell into a momentary silence, her voice soft as she replied, "Perhaps. But it's not confirmed. If the short excerpt in the console is accurate, then..." Opening her eyes, Kurenai cast a glance in Karina's direction. "Is it truly something shocking?" "Yes. It signifies an entirely different civilization. If it aligns with the novels in the database, we will undoubtedly have a handful to deal with. The Six Paths and Otsutsuki will be the least of our concerns." Karina let out a sigh, her gaze shifting to Shino. "But this is all in the future, and it remains unconfirmed for now. There's no need to worry Shino. We simply need to ensure that he is strong enough and happy." Kurenai's gaze also shifted to Shino, and the sound of another man's name being called seemed to trigger memories, causing her to release a sigh as a cup of sake materialized in her hand. "Still unable to forget him?" Karina teased playfully. "It hasn't even been a year, but it feels like a lifetime ago. I'm afraid that soon, I won't even care about the agreement with Shino," Kurenai murmured with a tinge of melancholy in her voice. "Do not worry, Shino will fulfill the deal eventually. After all, he even allowed that Jugo fellow to go free. Speaking of him, he is still camping in the woods near the biosphere. Stubborn as a bull, he claims to be waiting for Lord Kano to use him," Karina said in an exasperated tone, conjuring a holographic screen to display Jugo chopping wood next to a wooden cabin. Kurenai's eyes flickered, her mind processing the information. "Perhaps we should send him to Hidden Leaf Village?" Karina raised an eyebrow, her gaze fixed on Kurenai. Remaining composed, Kurenai calmly stated, "Although he harbors secrets, it may be better for this to fall into Hidden Leaf Village's hands rather than someone else's. Lately, I've sensed that my clone in Tanaka Village is under surveillance." Karina furrowed her brows lightly. "The bug monitors haven't detected anything." "Intuition," Kurenai responded calmly. "Have they discovered our location again?" Karina sat up, multiple holographic interfaces appearing as she scanned through the Zergs serving as their early warning system. "No, they may have only found the clone due to our activation of the tower. As our clones never returned to the base, they shouldn't have traced us," Kurenai speculated, sighing as she took another sip from the sake cup she had summoned. "Still, it's not a good sign for them to be so close. Who knows if there will be another coincidence," Karina muttered, activating safe mode and reconfiguring the bugs and Zergs to stop returning to the base. No. Not inside." "Nuu." Natsui's song of lament reached their ears, causing Kurenai to murmur softly, "I also hope they don't come inside. Otherwise, we'll have to be on the run once again." Karina's eyes gleamed with a dangerous glint as she spoke with a sly smile, "Then let's give them something to keep them occupied so they won't have time to search for us." Kurenai turned her calm eyes towards Karina, a question lingering in her gaze. "Akatsuki is their running dog. But if this dog were to run wild, would they have the time to bother us?" Karina said, her lips curling into a sly smile as she summoned an image of a mature, beautiful woman with short, straight blue hair. And what better way to drive a dog mad than to take away its most precious treasure? Chapter 148, New Target. As Shino relaxed on his beach chair, his attention was captured by the sound of swallowing coming from the vicinity of his legs. Opening his eyes, he directed his gaze towards the untidy violet hair that partially covered Natsui's face as she pressed her ample assets against the popsicle she enjoyed under the warm sun. Eating popsicle under the warm sun at the beach. Clearly, just a normal situation. But after removing her lips from the popsicle, Natsui lowered her head with humiliation, avoiding eye contact as she spoke with determination. "I did as you asked. Don't hurt Samaru." Without waiting for Shino to respond, Ying, who stood behind him massaging his shoulders, issued a cold command. "That's not the tone a slave should use to speak to her master. And you have forgotten a step. Another training session is required." Natsui's body trembled slightly, her fists clenched as she glared fiercely at Ying with her jade green eyes. However, after a moment of silence, she lowered her gaze towards the melting popsicle covered in a glistening sheen of liquid. Biting her lips in humiliation, she reluctantly brought her mouth back towards the popsicle. Enjoying the reluctant yet skilled technique, Shino continued to recline on his chair calmly. He then shifted his gaze towards Karina, who rubbed herself against his chest like a pet cat, her body pressed against his right arm as she lay on her recliner beside him. After stroking Karina's hair, Shino couldn't resist asking, "What scheme was my little goblin plotting while I was busy?" Karina lifted her head, resting her chin on Shino's chest as she replied, "Guess." Shino rolled his eyes, activating the system interface. Karina pouted cutely and brushed away the interface, causing Shino to raise an eyebrow. Lying face up, Karina slithered closer, leaning towards Shino's ear. Her warm breath tickled his ear as she whispered, "I was planning how to acquire another beauty for my dear. The blue-haired angel in the Hidden Rain village. Is my dear interested?" Raising an eyebrow, Shino let his hand wander, slipping under Karina's red bikini top as he delved into deep thought. "Conan? Is that truly possible?" Karina's lips curved into a mischievous smile as she responded, "It's a bit tricky, but it should be feasible." Shino's excitement surged upon hearing this. Ying further stoked his anticipation as she appeared beside Natsui, placing her hands on Natsui's head to help her throat achieve more in-depth training. Letting out a slight groan, Shino narrowed his eyes as his finger trailed up Karina's thighs. "But it can't be that simple. You know it's impossible to snatch her away under Nagato's watchful eye. So, what plan have you devised to lure her out?" Karina moaned softly before answering in a sultry voice, "Shino, you can read the finer details of the plan in the database. However, rest assured that you don't have to worry about it. Just consider me the author who will push the plot forward with vague descriptions, and enjoy the outcome when it is achieved through plot armor." "Ha. Ha. But, there is one aspect that requires my dear's assistance." "Oh?" Curiosity sparked within Shino as he dug deeper into the details. "Which part?" "Ha. Ha. I'll need my dear to store us in your system space. Then, we'll require my dear to summon us using your clone," Karina responded amidst her gasps, and evident in her voice was her enthusiasm regarding one of her accomplishments during the development period. It was a mystery whether it was due to the plot or Karina's innate genius, or perhaps a combination of both, but the growth spurt they experienced resulted in the development of a myriad of new abilities, with some that even went beyond personal combat power, supplementing the fields of auxiliary and life. One such ability was the summoning technique. For a long time, contracting and summoning had been on their research list, but they couldn't find a way around the fact that the contractor had to be Shino himself. However, with the unlocking of the system space, Karina had a whimsical idea. She wanted to see if she could establish a contract with the system space itself. Shino was initially skeptical, but the results astounded him as Karina brought him a pleasurable surprise. Now, in addition to evicting any creature from his system space to his side, Shino's clones could use the summoning technique to bring any Zerg from the system space to their sides. Not only that, Karina even crafted contract scrolls, allowing them to establish contracts and connections with other humans, enabling them to also summon Zergs to their side through the summoning technique. What's more, the summoned Zergs could cancel the summoning during dangerous situations and retreat to the safety of the system space in an instant. This significantly reduced the risk of death, making Shino more willing to deploy his queen's main bodies in battle, as long as it was safe to do so. The most remarkable aspect was that the blood sacrificed for the summoning technique would be transferred directly to the system space. The creep within the space would then devour the blood, adding its genes to the Zerg's gene pool while also storing some for research purposes. Essentially, Shino's clones could now become one-man armies. And by distributing the contract scrolls, he also had a stable method of collecting human blood by sending his Zergs out as employees. At the same time, he could infiltrate great villages, scouting and gathering their intel while providing services, akin to unscrupulous modern-day social media companies. However, there were other restrictions. And benefits still worthy of mention, some they chose to implement while others were naturally a part of the rules of summoning and his system space. Firstly, reverse summoning was blocked for obvious reasons. This was a permission he inherently owned as the contractor, along with the choice to cancel contracts. Despite the notion that summoned creatures were the subordinate of the summoners, the hidden reality was that the authority was secretly skewed in the contractors' favor because the contractors were the service providers. The servile attitude was just a part of the job, akin to waiters at a restaurant or hotel staff. Secondly, in order for Shino's Zergs to be summoned, they had to be within his system space. Thirdly, the summoning of stronger creatures required more chakra, and summoning a queen like Karina was beyond the capabilities of the human ninjas they had tested with so far. Fortunately, the chakra supply of Shino's clones could be supplemented by attaching battery Zergs. Of course, even if a contractor could summon a queen, Shino would never allow his queens to become lackeys of someone else. They were exclusively reserved for him. Finally, it was important to note that Shino himself couldn't be summoned through this technique. He existed above the system space, and even the system space couldn't be summoned, let alone him. Thus, Shino's system space had transformed into something resembling a holy land, housing the Zergs that could be sent out as valuable employees, and in return, gathering the blood of contractors for nefarious, unknown purposes. And this new development opened up a plethora of combat tactics that they could utilize to capture their desired targets. Now, Karina, fueled by her desire to go into battle personally, sought permission from Shino himself, knowing that his queen should not face risks without his knowledge. Shino regarded her request with a serious expression. Indeed, it may require your combat prowess and sealing powers to capture high-end targets. But it is also risky. Are you absolutely certain, Karina? Ha. Yes, my dear. Besides, you would be there as a clone to assist. We both know when to cancel the summoning if we find ourselves in danger. So, a little risk to collect another beauty for my dear is worth it. Karina's voice dripped with allure as she rubbed against Shino, her lips locking with his to stifle his response. As Shino savored the deep exchange, he weighed the risks in his mind. And as the exchange lengthened, unable to contain his urge any longer, he succumbed to his lust, indulging in the blissful release. So, when Karina's tongue finally parted from his, Shino's voice emerged huskily. Good. Proceed as planned. Karina seductively licked her lips, her fiery eyes locked onto Shino. As you wish, my dear. Of course, there are preparations we must make and another target we must acquire first. Oh? With a groan, Shino's tension dissipated, his attention shifting to Natsui, who gazed provocatively at him with jade-green eyes. However, her change in technique allowed Shino to guess that the real controller was Ying. So, who is the first target? Feeling Shino's lapse of attention, Karina pouted slightly as she gently refocused his gaze back to her. Someone you have been planning to acquire for a while now. We have set our sights on her due to her potential as a perfect breeding tool with her vast chakra supply. Oh? Could it be her? Shino's glasses glinted as he turned his gaze towards Natsui, who lifted her head to showcase her efforts. Ying, standing beside her, bowed slightly as she reported, Master, it's clean. Are you satisfied, Master? Good, Shino praised before issuing a command. Then, send her back. Ying nodded and with a wave of her hand, Natsui gradually faded away, her face reflecting a sense of humiliation as she swallowed her complaints. Remaining beside the recliner, Ying felt Shino's gaze upon her, causing her to hesitate momentarily. Finally, she pleaded in a soft voice, Master, could you please not send Ying back? It's dark and lonely where Yakumo keeps us. Shino's eyebrow arched in surprise, yet a mischievous idea sparked in his mind as he pulled Karina closer, her body resting atop his, and he gently gripped her smooth thighs, urging her to part them slowly while he addressed Ying with a commanding tone. Ying, if you wish to stay, you must obtain your mistress's consent. I trust you understand what needs to be done. Shino. A blush tinted Karina's cheeks as she hissed Shino's name, her voice filled with a mix of desire and protest. Yes, Master. With a sly smile, Ying joined them, positioning herself at the end of the recliner, a subtle bow preceding her response. Ying shall ensure that the mistress is properly prepared for the main event. As Karina's alluring voice echoed across the beach, Shino's gaze shifted towards Kurenai, who lay nearby with flushed cheeks and closed eyes, her eyelids trembling ever so slightly, a clear sign of her inner turmoil. Observing her thighs subtly rubbing together, Shino's grin widened as he issued a command, his voice dripping with anticipation. Prepare yourself, Kurenai. Returning his attention to Karina, who was gasping for breath, he whispered into her ear, let me know when you're ready, Karina. We mustn't make any mistakes when capturing the Nanabi. Chapter 149, Capture Nanabi. In the depths of the forest near the hidden waterfall village, a vibrant and spirited teenage girl with layered mint green hair cheerfully wandered through the serene trees. Her orange pupils darted around, eagerly searching for something that would catch her interest and alleviate her boredom. As she moved gracefully, her short white apron skirt fluttered about, revealing glimpses of fishnet shorts underneath. Completing her unique outfit was a sleeveless white midriff shirt, adorned with a fishnet armor layer, along with long white armlets. A cylindrical red object was strapped to her back, and her forehead guard was worn on her right arm. Her name was Fu, a Kunoichi hailing from Hidden Waterfall Village. Despite her village's emphasis on caution and secrecy, Fu's carefree nature led her to disregard the warnings of her fellow villagers, often sneaking out whenever she grew bored. Even for ordinary ninjas, venturing outside the village presented risks, but for Fu, the stakes were higher. For she was the Jinchuriki of the Seven Tails, Nanabi, a power coveted by many ninjas. Though she should have been kept well protected and hidden, it seemed that Hidden Waterfall Village's leader did not adopt a strict approach to confining a young girl. Thus, Fu roamed freely, her happy-go-lucky outlook on life often leading her into trouble. And this time was no exception. Sporting a mischievous grin, Fu cast her eyes towards the shadows of the trees, her excitement evident as she called out, "You've been following me for days, haven't you? Don't be scared and come out, Su." Emerging from the shadows was a ninja with an average, unfamiliar face, yet his forehead guard signifying his affiliation with Hidden Waterfall Village. Fu tilted her head, observing her fellow ninja, but confusion lingered in her eyes. "I don't recall seeing you around the village. Miss Fu, it is dangerous out here. Shibuki-sama has ordered me to watch over you and bring you back to the village," the ninja stated, retrieving a scroll and presenting it to Fu. Upon hearing this, Fu pouted, her hand reaching out to accept the scroll without a hint of caution. "Is this your order? Or could it be a mission, Su?" However, as Fu unfurled the scroll, a cloud of smoke billowed forth, causing her to instinctively toss the scroll aside and cough. "What is this, Su?" As the smoke dissipated, Fu fixed her gaze upon a man donning a black trench coat with peculiar giant insects clinging to his body, his hand swiftly completing a seal, summoning jutsu. With a poof, a thick cloud of smoke engulfed the forest. Yet, Fu's eyes sparkled with curiosity as she remained rooted in place. "Nani? Nani? What game is this, Su?" Step. 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 With each deliberate step, the dissipating smoke revealed the arrival of two alluring figures. Their petite frames were adorned in tight, black leather bikini armor, accentuating their curves. Demonic masks concealed the top half of their faces, while a flowing black cloak draped over their backs, completing their assassin outfit, a style much less conservative than those of normal ninjas. Fu tilted her head, her eyes alight with a glimmer of happiness as she addressed the twins before her. "Did you come to be my friend, Su?" However, in an instant, Fu seemed to have been warned of danger looming, causing insect wings to sprout from her back. Flapping rapidly, she swiftly shifted her body sideways, narrowly evading a set of chains that burst forth from the ground. Twirling around as she rushed into the air, Fu swept her gaze towards another figure, a clone of the man clad in a trench coat, who had arrived at an unknown time, clearly responsible for the attack. "Who are all of you, Su?" With a grin on her face, Fu's voice carried a tinge of defiance as she hovered in the air, her gaze fixed upon the assailants. It seemed the realization finally dawned upon her that they were not here with friendly intentions. But it was too late. A female voice came from behind her, responding with cold determination. "There's no need for you to know." As the words echoed in Fu's ears, an overwhelming force ensnared her body, akin to a binding rope. Her chakra abruptly stagnated, causing the wings on her back to fade away. Falling to the ground, Fu's vision distorted, and soon she found herself immobilized by strange chains encircling her body. Despite her futile struggles, she couldn't break free. She pouted unhappily as her eyes followed the chains, ultimately fixing upon a striking woman with long red hair who had seemingly appeared out of nowhere like a ghost. "Where did you come from?"